HOENN is arguably the best region in Pokemon. We're rating them all, and up first is my favorite HOENN starter, Treecko. Its use in battle is unique for a grass-type starter up to this point, most being more supportive and bulky, where Treecko is the opposite with much better speed and special attack. In Gen 3, its move pool is lacking, only getting Absorb and Quick Attack, but in Gen 6 they rectify that with Mega Drain at least. Remember, we judge these Pokemon based on when you would be using them, and we also have the luxury of being specific with the starters, since it's only usable in HOENN, where Treecko is obviously gonna crush the first gym. 4 stars in battle prowess. Its availability, as we've explained with the previous starters, is 4.5 stars since it's available for the entire game, but only if you choose it, because otherwise it's gone. And Treecko is pretty obviously a gecko, but more specifically it's based on a leaf-tailed gecko, which is a pretty funny play on words for a grass-type gecko starter, and it's a pretty good concept. 3.5 stars. And its design, as I said at the start, has always been my favorite of the three, but I think that was probably heavily influenced by the anime as a kid, because when you take a really good look at it, it's nothing special. It's just a green gecko with a leaf tail. Granted, it does mix both cute and cool together pretty well, but I think 3.5 stars is fair. I'm so excited for HOENN. Treecko gets the final score of 3.875 stars overall. I think Grovyle might just be the best middle evolution of all time. Not even just starters, I mean in total. We're rating them all, and its battle prowess isn't exactly what I meant, but it is good. 95 speed and 85 special attack is pretty awesome for middle evolution. But man, they did our boy dirty in Gen 3, not giving him a grass move outside of Absorb until level 29. But thankfully they do give it Mega Drain in Gen 6 and the move Leaf Blade up to level 23. You'd think, oh, it's HOENN, big water, Grovyle is great. Well, yes, other than in the gyms, where it has pretty awful matchups into 3 of the 5 that you'd probably have it for. So I think with that, 3 stars is the highest that I can give it for battle prowess. And its availability is of course 4.5 stars, while its concept going from green little gecko into more of a dinosaur-like creature, specifically feathered dinosaurs like raptors, but with sharp leaves replacing the feathers, which is actually really awesome for a grass starter. 4 stars. And its design, in my opinion, is absolute peak middle stage design. And no, I've never played Mystery Dungeon. But for real, look at this guy. You've got an agile little grass dinosaur that looks like it's gonna leap or glide between trees, slicing through its opponents, while still looking like a great progression from Treecko. It's by far the most popular of the HOENN middle stages, and I agree. This might be one of the easier 5 stars in HOENN, which lands Grovyle the final score of 4.125 stars overall, and I'm sure it'll be in the top 5 for a while. Is Sceptile better than Venusaur and Meganium? Well, we're rating them all, so let's find out. Venusaur got 3.875 stars and Meganium 3.5. And in battle, Sceptile's stats at least are really awesome, with it being much faster and stronger than the other two with 120 speed, 105 special attack, and a respectable 85 attack. Though it does give up some bulk and support. Even in Gen 3, though, with Leaf Blade, Giga Drain, and some awesome coverage moves, it can be good, but especially in Gen 6, gaining moves like Dual Chop, X Scissor, Acrobatics, Power Up Punch, and even Swords Dance, Sceptile can be amazing. Its performance in the 2 gyms you'll likely have it for is incredible, but its Elite 4 usage is okay. It is of course much better against Emerald's champ. I think 4 stars is fair for battle prowess. Its availability is once again 4.5 stars, just like the rest of the starters, and its concept is a nice conclusion to the Treecko line, taking inspiration from both of its pre-evolutions, with the leaf-tailed gecko of Treecko and the more dinosaur aspects of Grovyle. 4 stars. I'll admit I've always loved Sceptile's design. I'm a sucker for offensive grass starters, but at the end of the day, it's a pretty awkward and bottom-heavy design. The idea of turning the leaf tail into a tree tail makes sense, sure, but it doesn't look good and gives this very fast Pokemon the appearance of being sluggish and slow, being weighed down by that tail. But I do still like the whole picture, with the leaf blade arms, the smugness carried through its line, the nutrient bulbs. It's still really cool. 4 stars, which actually lands Sceptile the final score of 4.125 stars, beating the previous grass starters by quite a bit. I'm so glad the HOENN starters got Megas, but could one of them be the next perfect 5-star Pokemon? We're rating them all, and Mega Sceptile in battle is of course awesome, as most Megas are, with crazy special attack and speed while adding the Dragon typing, which is cool but might actually hurt it a bit with those weaknesses. And its ability, Lightning Rod, absorbs electric moves and gains +1 special attack, which sure, I could see having some uses in competitive maybe, but in terms of playthrough it does basically nothing, considering electric moves are quad resistant anyway. As we went over with Sceptile, its Learn Set and TM capabilities are pretty amazing, so that plus the crazy Mega stats will get it 5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability, similarly to the Kanto starters Megas, are compared to other Megas, and in these starters cases, the Mega Stone is just handed to you for free much earlier than the other Megas, so that will bump it up to 5 stars. Then Sceptile's concept was good, being a leaf tree dinosaur creature, but then you Mega Evolve it and it gains the ability to launch its stupid Christmas tree tail at opponents, which is not only hilarious, but also also has a nice reference to some reptiles shedding their tails as a defense mechanism. That's amazing. 5 stars. And with that being said, that leaves it all up to design, which... it's cool for sure. I like the edgy red eyeshadow, the spikes on the head, the extra spikes on the back, and the red on the arms, and even the cool color-changing nutrient bulbs on its back. But did we really have to go full-on Christmas tree tail? Sure, maybe the red tip is actually more like a warhead on a missile with the whole launcher tail thing, but dude, that's a Christmas tree. And that takes what would be a really cool, edgy, monstrous mega into a slightly less cool, edgy, monstrous mega, 4.5 stars, which lands Mega Sceptile the final score of 4.875 stars and ties for the top spot on the Mega's top 5. Torchic is so simple yet so cute. We're rating them all, and in battle, it's kinda weird. It has probably my least favorite type of stat spread, just everything into attack and special attack, leaving both its defenses and its speed lacking. Its move pool is fine, pretty typical for an early gen starter, and sure, it's good against the early game trainers through Petalburg Woods, but it's pretty much useless into the first gym in Hoenn. I know you could have a Combuskin by then, but that doesn't help Torchic's rating at all, and we usually go by the gym leader's levels to make these more fair. 3 stars. Its availability will be a 4.5 like the rest of the starters, since if you don't choose it, it's gone. Its concept, you'd think it's just a chick, a hot chick, but it's actually based on the tradition of painted chicks from festivals, and what becomes more apparent with its evolutions is that it takes inspiration from the Basan, a fire-breathing chicken from Japanese folklore, which is cool. 4 stars. And its design is really cute. Apparently it's the only starter Pokemon that's literally just a head and legs, which is hilariously adorable. I do like how its feathers on its head and chest resembles little flames, but at the end of the day, this is quite literally just a baby chicken. It's cute, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really do much to separate it in design. 3.5 stars, which will give Torchic the final score of 3.75 stars overall. Combuskin is, well, you know. And if you don't, save yourself and avoid the comments. We're rating them all, and in battle at least, it's actually pretty awesome. Its main downside is its speed, but with okay enough bulk and great offenses for a mixed attacker to take advantage of its fire and fighting type, before they ran that typing into the ground. In Gen 3, you're really just going to be rocking with Ember and Double Kick until it evolves, but it does learn Bulk Up and you can get it pretty early from Brawly, which is great. In Gen 6 though, it gets a massive upgrade with Flame Charge, which not only is a strong physical fire move, but also patches up its weak speed. Combuskin does pretty well in the gyms too. If you evolve it early, it crushes Roxanne, does great against Watson, and once again crushes Norman. Considering its uses in both generations, I think 4 stars is about right for battle prowess. It also gets the normal starter 4.5 stars for availability, and its concept is pretty clearly based on cockfighting chickens. Do I have to bleep that? Either way, it also has the whole Basan inspiration as well, 4 stars. But its design, oh my god, they took fighting a little too literally here. I mean, come on, man, look at this thing. But if you try to ignore that, I do like the sharper, more aggressive looking feet and claws, but its head and neck have always felt misproportioned and off to me. Even without the obvious jokes about it, I think they really missed the spot on this one, 2.5 stars, which actually gives it the same score as Torchic, 3.75 stars overall. Blaziken really was a trailblazer. It started the awesome yet annoying trend of the firefighting starters, and the awful trend of humanoid starters. But we're rating them all, and as for its battle prowess, it's really solid. I'm really not a fan of its stat spread, just focused on mixed attacking and leaving speed and bulk to be desired, but it is still very strong, even in Gen 3, which is Bulk Up, Blaze Kick, and plenty of great TMs, which of course in Gen 6 just gets so much better with moves like Swords Dance, Power Up Punch, and Acrobatics. It does have a pretty bad matchup into the last 3 gyms in Hoenn, and is pretty good in the Elite Four, obviously with the better matchup in Ruby and Sapphire versus Steven, but regardless of matchups, it's just always reliable, hard-hitting, and gets the job done, 4.5 stars. Its availability is of course the starters, 4.5 stars, and its concept similarly to Combuskin is based off of cockfighting chickens, but also has some ties to the Karura, a legendary fire-breathing chicken, the Phoenix, some Egyptian gods, even Muay Thai fighters. This is an awesome idea for a firefighting starter. 5 stars. And its design I was never really a fan of at all growing up, but in my adult life it has really grown on me. I like its raptor-like bird of prey face, the strong claws, and the color scheme, but the design as a whole was just kind of awkward. It looks like it stole its fashion straight from the women in the 90s with the flared jeans and bleach blonde hair. I don't know if that's why it feels off, but it does. It is still awesome though, don't get me wrong. 4 stars. Which lands Blaziken the final score of 4.5 stars and actually the highest starter score yet. Mega Blaziken is a prime example example of a Mega not doing too much and it working perfectly. We're rating them all, and in battle, this thing is an absolute monster. It has 160 attack, 130 special attack, 100 speed, and it gets speed boost, which of course raises its speed every turn. Oh my god. Then you throw on the awesome learn set and TM list from Blaziken, and this thing is just ridiculous. Easy 5 stars. Its availability, as we went over with Mega Sceptile, is compared to other Megas, and in these starters cases, they hand it to you for free and are usually the first stone you get, so that is once again 5 stars. And its concept, as we went over with Blaziken, is a cockfighting chicken with a bunch of mythological references, and its Mega doesn't really seem to add or take away from that at all. All I can find is that its temperature, power, and speed get higher, which is fine and doesn't really constitute a change. 5 stars. But its design is an absolute upgrade, turning the slicked back blonde hair into an almost fire blast pattern crest, the fire wisps coming from the wrist, which just look awesome, and having its legs turn black due to the hair or feathers getting burnt from the speed and power of its kicks. That is so awesome. This is a 5-star design, which gives Mega Blaziken the second ever perfect 5-star rating, and of course the top spot on the Mega's top 5. Saying Mudkip is a fan favorite is a bit of an understatement. We're rating them all, and wish me luck on this one. Mudkip is pretty good in battle. 70 attack is nice for a first stage starter, but it really doesn't get any moves at all to take advantage of that other than Mud Slap in Gen 3, which is of course special in Gen 6. Its matchup against Roxanne though is clearly great, with even its weaker water guns being more than enough to sweep her team, but it's fairly average otherwise. 3.5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability will of course be 4.5 stars like the rest of the starters, since if you don't pick it, it's gone, and thankfully we won't have to say that for much longer. And its concept is simple, but it works. It's based on a few different swampy fish and amphibians, like mud skippers, axolotls, and catfish, which isn't very exciting at all, but it makes sense for a future water ground starter. 3.5 stars. But its design really is incredible. All memes aside, it is really cute with the big fins, the orange axolotl external gill looking things, which give it some nice flair and contrast, and the cute little legs and beady little eyes. If you don't like Mudkip, you're just a hater. 5 stars. And that gives Mudkip the final score of 4.125 stars, which is one of the higher scores for a starter. Marshtomp was done so dirty with the switch to 3D. We're rating them all, and regardless of that, it's pretty amazing for a HOENN playthrough. Its stats are nice with 85 attack, decent special attack, and pretty solid bulk. If you love it early, it obviously crushes the first gym, does fine in the second, and then completely trivializes Watson, Flannery, and even Norman thanks to Dig. Its move pool is admittedly not great, but with the help of a few TMs, it's more than enough. And the more important thing here is just the fact that the water ground typing completely sweeps through HOENN. There is not a single major trainer with even a single grass type or even a grass type move other than the rival, meaning it effectively has no weaknesses in HOENN while still being a really strong Pokemon. I don't know how that isn't 5 stars. Its availability is once again 4.5 stars, and its concept, as we went over with Mudkip, is simple but it's fine. It's a mashup of different swampy animals, it works. 3.5 stars. But its design is a really tough one to judge. Back in the 2D games, it was so lively and full of character, it just looked like a little swamp guy that was happy to be there. But oh my god, what did they do to our boy? They drained not only all of its color, but its soul too. This thing is terrifying. It's just standing there, menacingly. No, for real though, it's a crime how lifeless and colorless a lot of these 3D sprites are. But I'll be honest here, Marshtomp's design was just pretty good before all of that anyway. 3 stars, which still lands Marshtomp a respectable 4 stars overall and a spot on the starter's top 5. No starter crushes their home region the way that Swampert does, other than maybe Infernape. We're rating them all, and Swampert is just amazing in battle. Its only stat that isn't awesome is its speed. Even its special attack is decent. Really all you need is to slap Surf and Earthquake on it, maybe Ice Beam for flavor, and Swampert just sweeps through HOENN. Mostly thanks to its incredible water ground typing with only one weakness, Grass, which is basically non-existent in HOENN. There's only 2 major trainers that even have a single grass type Pokemon. I could go on, but I really don't think I need to. This is clearly 5 stars. But Swampert won't be a perfect 5 stars since every starter gets 4.5 stars in availability for being available for the whole game or not at all. Its concept is really the main question mark. Like its Prevos, it's based on a few different swampy animals, but it does get a slight leg up on them for having some aspects from the pretty popular swamp monster idea, which will be enough for 4 stars. And its design is awesome, with its general look being powerful or maybe even aggressive with the stance, and with its large fins making it appear agile enough to be a terrifying swamp predator. Then you throw on the orange contrasting axolotl gills and what appears to be arm and leg armor. It's definitely one of the best looking water starters. 5 stars, which does land Swampert with the final score of 4.65 stars overall and the new starter high score. Will Mega Swampert match both Mega Sceptile and Blaziken's incredible scores? A lot of you seem to think so. We're rating them all, and in battle, I don't think it's really close, with 150 attack, a really solid bulk, and Swift Swim doubling its speed in the rain, along with its incredible typing, which thanks to Hoenn being afraid of grass types, effectively gives this behemoth 0 weaknesses, which is just ridiculous. Clear 5 stars in battle prowess. And as we went over with the other Mega starters, their Mega Stones being handed to you for free much earlier than the other Mega Stones is enough to bump its availability up to 5 stars. Its concept just kinda takes Swampert and makes it a Giga Chad Jimbro, or at least that's what I thought until I read this. And you guys can decide for yourselves, but it seems like Mega Swampert isn't actually that buff. It just bought some anchor arms from Bikini Bottom, which I think is actually a pretty hilarious idea for a Mega. 4 stars. But its design, I really don't know how to feel about it. On one hand, it's Swampert, which is awesome, and they just make it bigger and stronger, which is awesome, but on the other, it's almost to the level of too big to the point where it just looks dumb, with its Wreck-It Ralph or Sock'em Bopper hands. I don't know, I like it a lot, but it is pretty goofy. 4.5 stars, which gives Mega Swampert the final score of 4.625 stars, falling short of its counterparts, but still a great score. Dark-type being special and Ghost being physical before the physical special split never made any sense. We're rating them all, and Poochyena is a great example of why. Its 55 attack is decent, but its special attack is only 30, so now its main move, Bite, is so much worse than it should have been. Granted, that's only an issue in Gen 3, and Gen 6 is fairly decent for the early game with strong-ish stab bites, but its stats really aren't very good regardless, so it'll get 2.5 stars for battle prowess. Poochyena is obviously available right away in Hoenn, but it is actually available fairly late in Kalos as a version exclusive, which will drag its average down to 3.75, but just barely makes the cut to round up to 4 stars. Now its concept, I know this sounds crazy, but it's a mix of a pooch and a hyena. Shocking, I know. But no, for real, that's about it. Which is fine, I guess. It's a kind of interesting concept for a dark type, 2 stars. And its design is similarly fine. It's an angry little pup. I do like the details of the scruffy fur and snarled teeth, giving it that mischievous little rascal energy. It's a nice touch. 3 stars. So that gives Poochyena the final score of 2.875 stars overall. Mightyena desperately needs an evolution or a regional form or something. We're rating them all, and in battle it can be really good in the early game considering it evolves at level 18 and has the incredible ability Intimidate. But its stats are the problem. Sure, 90 attack and 70 speed are awesome in the early game, but that doesn't cut it towards the end. And its other stats like its defense hold it back even further, especially when you consider that in Gen 3 its dark type moves were all special, which is so much worse for Mightyena. They really did this thing dirty, but in Gen 6 it does get a little better, and it's still not great. 3 stars. Its availability will be the same as Poochyena at 4 stars, only not a 5 because of Kalos, as well as its concept being pretty much just a mix of a hyena and a dog, which works, I guess, for your run-of-the-mill grunts dark-type Pokemon, but isn't all that exciting. 2 stars. As for its design, I actually think I prefer Poochyena. Mightyena has never really done anything for me. I do like the contrast of the dark black hyena dorsal mane with the lighter gray body, but outside of that, this is a pretty plain dog design. The only reason it even looks dark-type is the eyeliner and darker colors, but there's nothing inherently bad about it. Even if it is boring, it looks fairly cool. 3 stars, which gives Mightyena an even 3 stars overall. Making the raccoon Pokemon normal type and the dog Pokemon dark type was definitely an interesting flip of expectations, but we're rating them all, and Zigzagoon is sadly just not very good. It has the odd stat spread of being really fast and somewhat bulky, but with poor offenses. So you'd think, oh, it's a support Pokemon, except no, not really. Unless you're one of those people that just spams Sand Attack, then I guess. At least Headbutt is a strong stab move early on, so that kind of makes up for its lack of offenses, and does save it from being just awful. Its battle prowess is still 2 stars though. As for availability, you can get it pretty much immediately in Hoenn and Kalos, and that's actually it, not including post-game, so 5 stars. Its concept is pretty clearly a raccoon. Granted, you could point to a few different kinds of raccoons and such, but still. The only reason it's not 1 star is because normal types being normal animals makes sense. 2 stars. And its design is similarly pretty boring. I get the idea of the zigzag pattern down its body, but it just ended up looking oddly spiky for some reason. I don't think it's a bad design by any means. It is very plain and not that interesting, but at least it pulls off the scraggy little scavenger look pretty well and is mildly cute. 2.5 stars. So Zigzagoon picks up the final score of 2.875 stars overall. I'm glad Lanoon got a regional variant with an evolution, but they really left the original behind. We're rating them all, and its stats would be pretty good for a middle stage, but 70 attack and 60s and defenses are just not good enough for a final evolution. Sure, it can be pretty good early on, evolving at level 20, but it falls off hard and fast. Oh, but look at all the awesome TMs that it gets! Oh, okay, cool. Have fun firing off your Thunderbolts with 50 special attack, 2 stars in battle prowess. Its availability is clearly once again 5 stars, just like Zigzagoon, and Linoon's concept evolving from the zigzags of Zigzagoon into the lines of Linoon is fairly interesting. It takes more from weasels and ferrets now rather than a raccoon, but it's still just a pretty plain normal animal, which is super boring, but at the very least makes sense for a normal type. 2 stars. And its design, I mean, come on guys, it's actually comical how many of you still voted 5 stars. This is why I stopped using the polls. Whereas Zigzagoon is at least cute and kind of unique looking, this is just an actual animal. Like, there's nothing unique or fantastical or anything about it. Its only saving grace is that even though it's completely boring, it is a convincingly fast and agile predator, which works for an early route normal type. 2 stars at best for design, which lines up the final score of 2.75 stars for Linoon. Oh look, it's the slightly cooler Caterpie of Hoenn. We're rating them all, and Wurmple is obviously not great in battle. Though I do have to admit that 45 attack and HP is better than I thought, considering you only have to use it until level 7, but with how slow it is and the fact that its only moves are String Shot, Tackle, and Poison Sting, I don't think it can be any higher than 1.5 stars in battle prowess. But as is the case with most regional bugs, it's available super early. You can get it before the first or second gym in both Hoenn and Sinnoh, which are surprisingly the only regions where it's available before the post-game, but still 5 stars. The whole idea of Wurmple was to literally be the Caterpie of Hoenn. Ken Sugimori himself outright said it, so yeah, it's based on a caterpillar, obviously, which to be fair, the real-life transformation of caterpillars is a cool way to show new players how evolution works in Pokemon, but 2 stars. Though oddly enough, I do actually like its design quite a bit. It meets that perfect middle ground between the cute Caterpie and the more dangerous-looking Weedle with the big eyes, the literal butt face, and then everything else about it being some variant of Spikes. The legs, the back, the tail, I don't know, sorry, I don't know caterpillar anatomy, but I think that as a whole it looks really good. It's a fairly cool looking little bug. It works. 3 stars. Which, oh god, actually gives it 2.875 stars. The same score as both Zigzagoon and Poochyena. We're doing something crazy here on Rate 'em All today. We're in the early parts of the Ho Index, and Silcoon and Cascoon offer up some interesting issues. The first of which being that on one hand, they're of course separate Pokemon, but on the other, I mean, are they? They're clearly super similar, and I'll be honest here, it would be really hard to make 2 interesting videos about these things. So thanks to you guys who voted in the polls, we're just gonna do it in one video. As for their battle prowess, they're obviously not good. They're physically bulky, sure, but they aren't gonna do much at all, if anything offensively. Yeah, you only have to use it until level 10, but its moves are of course lackluster. Do I really need to convince you guys that this is 1 star at best in battle? No? Okay, cool. The other issue they create is their availability. They start at Wurmple's 5 stars, but a few people have asked the question of the seemingly random evolution method, which is fair. But in this series, I've always gone by the rule of it may be annoying, but that doesn't make it any less available, other than a few extreme examples. So it'll stay 5 stars. Their concepts are technically different, but not really. Silcoon is based on a silkworm cocoon, and Cascoon is based on a moth cocoon. But fun fact, those both after metamorphosis become moths, which leaves me with questions for Beautifly, but we'll get there. Either way, it's fine. Clearly not all that interesting, but it serves its purpose. 2 stars. Design is where we find the only real notable differences, with Cascoon looking harder and more aggressive somehow, while Silcoon looks softer and more wary, which gets really interesting after they evolve. But anyway, I actually really prefer the look of Silcoon. It's just more interesting and unique to me. That silky exterior gives it a bit more character than a plain cocoon. But hilariously enough, as I'm sure most of you have heard, there was a survey that tested that every Pokemon is someone's favorite idea, and Silcoon was only one of 4 Pokemon who didn't get a single vote, while Cascoon actually got 2, which is pretty interesting, and they both had series lows in design, which I agree with, 1.5 stars. So that gives both Silcoon and Cascoon 2.375 stars overall. Beautifly is shockingly really cool and underrated. We're rating them all, and one of the smaller reasons why is its use in battle. Did you know this thing has 100 special attack? I'll admit, I sure didn't. I think mostly because whenever I would use it early on in Gen 3, it had support, sure, but its 2 attacking moves were the super weak Absorb and the physical Gust, so I never really gave it much of a chance at all. However, in Gen 6 and 8, it is so much better, getting early support, survivability, much better offensive moves, and of course, Quiver Dance. Now, I'm not saying this makes Beautifly amazing or anything, but nothing that gets Quiver Dance is bad. 3 stars in battle prowess, that's carried by later gens. Its availability, as we went over with its pre-evolutions, is 5 stars. Despite its appearance as the pretty and peaceful looking evolution, it's aggressive. It attacks jabbing with its proboscis, which by the way is a real thing that real-life vampire moths do, and as I hinted at in Silcoon's video, by all accounts other than its appearance and category, Beautifly is a moth, not a butterfly. But either way, the duality of this thing with the fact that its appearance is a facade for an aggressive predator is honestly incredible. 4 stars. stars. And its design portrays it well. It's pretty. It's clearly supposed to be the pretty side of the split evolution. Even by itself, it's a fairly appealing, colorful butterfly with a little fairy body, but then you take in everything about its concept, and I'll admit, doing this video made Beautifly so much cooler to me. 3.5 stars, which lands Beautifly a shocking 3.875 stars overall. Dustox is such a disappointment compared to Beautifly. We're rating them all, and in battle, look at these stats. Really, its only redeeming quality is its special defense, especially with Beautifly's shockingly good stats in comparison. It's really disappointing. Sure, Bug Poison is the better typing of the two, and maybe its moves early on in Gen 3 are better, but not only does it not get Stun Spore or any support, but it also has 50 less special attack, so it doesn't really matter. But to be fair, both Beautifly and Dustox got huge buffs in Gen 6 and 8, mainly because of Quiver Dance. I know I literally just said that nothing that gets Quiver Dance is bad, but I might have been wrong. Dustox just doesn't have the stats or moves that take advantage of it. 2 stars in battle prowess. Its availability is of course the same though, with 5 stars. And its concept isn't a disappointing part either. It plays on the same duality idea of Beautifly, which becomes this beautiful looking nice butterfly, except no, it's an aggressive predator, and Dustox, the poison type scary looking moth, is actually a peaceful nocturnal herbivore that only uses its poison for defense, which is once again awesome. 4 stars. And its design you could also say is a disappointment. You get the cute little wormhole and expect it to become this beautiful butterfly, but instead emerges this hideous moth. So yes, it's a disappointment, but that is the entire point of the design. And it does it really well while also stretching the limits of a Pokemon looking bug. I don't personally like it much at all, but it is a good design. 3.5 stars, which gives Dustox the respectable final score of 3.625 stars overall. Lotad and its evolutions have always been curiously popular. We're rating them all, and as for its battle prowess, its stats are genuinely pretty bad. But its special defense and attack are good enough, especially considering it evolves at the early level 14. And at least in Sapphire, its usage is incredible against Roxanne, even if its only useful move is Absorb. Then over in Gen 8, its moves are for sure better, but its matchup is far worse. So I think with everything being considered, 3 stars is fair for battle prowess. And as it is hinted at, this is actually only available in 2 regions, Hoenn and Galar, both of which being super early, but as a version exclusive. So its score averages out to 4.5 stars. And the concept behind Lotad is pretty unique. It's a lily pad that gives Pokemon rides and seeks out fresh water, but it's also heavily inspired by the Japanese yokai, the Kappa, which has a water-filled dish on its head and a turtle-like beak. Sound familiar? 4 stars. But I honestly don't know what to think about its design. It's fairly cute, and it's clearly very unique, yet simple, which isn't a bad thing. I just can't get a grip on it. It's just a little blue blob with a leaf head and those thoughtless eyes that you guys seem to love, but I honestly can't stand unless your name is Slowbro. 3 stars. But that still gets Lotad a decent 3.625 stars overall. Lombre is definitely unique. We're rating them all, and I do really like its pretty unique water grass typing, which definitely has its uses. And its stats are decent with 60 and 70 in special attack and defense, but its moves are just horrible. In Gen 3, you're stuck with just Absorb and Fake Out pretty much all the way until you get Surf halfway through the game. I'm sorry, that's actually atrocious. And sure, it gets kind of better in Gen 6 with Bubble and Bubble Beam, and then all the way in Gen 8, it finally gets Mega and Giga Drain, but holy crap, this thing is awful for the majority of the time you'll be using it. 2 stars in battle prowess. Its availability would be the same as Lotad at 4.5 stars, and its concept is also pretty much the same. It has the lily pad and Kappa aspects, but also adds on some mischievous behavior and all sorts of very stereotypical Mexican motifs, which whether you think that's a good thing or not, it is at least more interesting. 4.5 stars. But I have to be honest here, I do not like this thing's design at all. I get most middle stages are in some way an awkward in-between idea, but Lombre just feels so out of place, while also just not being very appealing. It all of a sudden has sharp red claws and a red beak or mustache depending on who you ask, and yeah, it is very unique, sure, but it really just looks like a mess. 1.5 stars, which even still gives Lombre an okay 3.125 stars, but a spot on our new Hoenn bottom 5 for now. Ludicolo, for better or worse, is such an iconic Pokemon. We're rating them all, and it is absolutely great in battle. Its stats are well balanced, but good across the board with a bit extra in special attack and defense, but then you take its awesome water grass typing on top of its 2 really solid abilities. With one of them, you become a bulky issue with extra recovery in the rain, and with the other, you become a terrifying sweeper with the double speed in the rain. You really can't go wrong there. Its move pool, as we will know with Lombre, is horrible in Gen 3, but with Ludicolo, by the time it's evolved, you'll probably have the TMs to really nullify that issue, like Giga Drain, Ice Beam, and Surf, which along with Rain Dance is really all you'll need for Ludicolo to be an absolutely incredible member of your team. 4.5 stars. Its availability, I could see getting a dock for how late you get the water Stone and Hoenn, but at the end of the day, you'll get that around the time your other Pokemon are getting their last evolution anyway, so I don't think that's enough of a big issue. 4.5 stars. And its concept takes direct inspiration from the Japanese yokai, the Kappa, as well as quite a few very stereotypical Mexican motifs taken to the extreme, as well as its almost manic level of non-stop dance, which honestly is so hilarious and iconic that is enough to bump it up to 5 stars. But its design, I have always had very mixed feelings about. It is absolutely unique and original. I always thought it was a big dancing pineapple growing up, but apparently the yellow fur-like stuff is actually supposed to be more like a poncho, riding on the Mexican theme, with the lily pad obviously resembling a sombrero and the hands even being somewhat maraca-like. Even if I personally have mixed feelings about it, I can't deny how iconic, hilarious, and interesting this design is. 5 stars. Which actually lands Ludicolo 4.75 stars overall, which is the highest Hoenn score yet, not including Megas. C-Dot was done just monumentally dirty by Game Freak. We're rating them all, and in battle, just listen to this. In Gen 3, its only attacking move it gets is Bide. That's it. Sure, you can get the Bullet Seed TM, but in Gen 3, all grass moves were special, and C-Dot's special attack is 30. The rest of its stats other than defense don't really do it any favors either. Oh, but wait, it doesn't even get any better in Gen 6. Then finally, in Gen 8, they gave this poor thing Absorb at least. But holy crap, what did C-Dot do to deserve this? The only reason this isn't a 0 in battle prowess is because of its still pretty decent matchup into Roxanne. 1 star. And its availability is actually the same as Lotad's, being found super early in Hoenn and Galar, but as version exclusive. 4.5 stars. As for its concept, well, it's pretty much just a little acorn guy. I do like how it has fun in camouflaging itself and scaring other Pokemon in the trees, but other than that, it's a cute but not very interesting idea. 2 stars. And for its design, I don't know what you could exactly expect from an acorn Pokemon. I like the little cap helmet and the little stubby feet, but they could have at least given it actual eyes instead of just black rings. I don't know, I don't dislike this design at all. It serves its purpose. It's fine, I suppose. 2.5 stars, which does land C-Dot the final score of 2.5 stars and a spot on the Hoenn bottom 5. The namesake of the best way to play a Pokemon game is up next as we rate them all, and in battle it's actually fairly decent, or at least it would be if it wasn't for its embarrassment of a move pool in Gen 3. Thankfully in the Gen 6 remakes it actually does get some pretty solid moves, but then in Gen 8 it just gets worse again, which is really a shame because its stats are solid with 70s in HP and attack, then 60s in special attack and speed. Along with its pretty fun grass dark typing, it could have been really awesome, but with its abundance of weaknesses and inconsistent moves, they just really hold it back. 2 stars. Its availability will be the same as C-Dot at 4.5 stars, but its concept takes a massive leap forward. Sprouting from an acorn into the Japanese yokai Tengu, or maybe more specifically, excuse me here, but Shiba Tengu? I don't know. And you add on the fact that it uses its leap as a flute to strike fear in forest visitors, and that's a really awesome 5-star concept. Oh, and its design. I have mixed feelings. On one hand, it's very clearly a childlike little forest creature that looks like it's up to no good. But why did they choose to give this thing nipples? I mean, just why? It is a fairly unique and interesting design, but otherwise it's just odd to look at. 2 stars. But still, that gives Nuzleaf a respectable 3.375 stars overall. Shiftry was a huge missed opportunity for an awesome Pokemon. We're rating them all, and I just don't get what they were going for here. It's really hurt by the early gen mixed attacker curse. Most Pokemon with this affliction have a dual typing, one being physical and the other special, but not Shiftry. Back in Gen 3, both grass and dark were special, so why did they give it 100 base attack and only 90 special attack with that typing? Especially with its poor defenses and plentiful weaknesses. Though it does have chlorophyll, which is amazing and doubles its speed in the sun, but with it already having 80 base speed, that's just kind of ridiculous. Then you pair that with Solar Beam, Giga Drain, and Feint Attack, I guess? Man, Gen 3 was rough. Thankfully in the newer gens it can really take advantage of those stats with a plethora of really strong moves, but I think 3.5 stars in battle prowess is the highest it can be. Its availability will once again be 4.5 stars. I explained why the Stone Evo doesn't dock it in Ludicolo's video, but its concept is really awesome. It's pretty directly based on the Tengu, a Japanese yokai that protects forests, plays cruel tricks on people, and has magical fans that stir great winds. Incredible idea for a grass dark type. 5 stars. stars. And its design just really takes the whole Tengu thing literally, maybe too much so. Taking the long nose, flowing white hair, Gita sandals, wind controlling fans, I mean, come on. So you could obviously argue that it absolutely nails the concept, but it does leave you with this very odd looking creature. On one hand, it feels very out of place in its line, kind of coming out of nowhere, but on the other, it looks so unique and awesome in the most unorthodox and ridiculous way. It's such a weird design, but I like it. 4 stars. And that surprisingly lands Shiftry 4.25 stars overall and a spot on the top 5. Tailo was the first truly dominant regional bird. We're rating them all, and in battle, this thing is an absolute monster in the early game. Sure, it doesn't have great defenses, but with a whopping 85 speed, 55 attack, and guts? I mean, come on. Now, obviously, it isn't gonna do well against Roxanne, but it absolutely wipes the floor with all of the trainers you'll face up until it evolves, as well as dominating Brawly. I can't find the comment anymore, but someone asked me the really good question of what would it take for an early game Pokemon to get 5 stars in battle prowess, and if it wasn't for its gym matchups and poor defenses, this just might have done it. 4.5 stars. Its availability is of course great being a regional bird. You can get it super early in Hoenn and even before the second gym in Kalos, so that's 5 stars. But its concept, I know you guys don't like this line, but this is literally just a bird. It's a swallow. Oh, but it's a super gutsy bird. Come on. That's sadly 2 stars. And its design is hard carried by the anime, let's be honest. Don't get me wrong, it isn't a bad design by any means. It is a somewhat cute, somewhat aggressive looking little government spy drone. I personally like Tailo a lot, but its design is just good. 3 stars, which still lands Tailo a nice 3.625 stars overall. Swellow is arguably the most dominant Pokemon for a Hoenn playthrough. We're rating them all, and in battle, it's actually ridiculous what you can do with this little bird. I'm sure you're all fully aware of this, but in case you're not, Guts, Facade, Swellow. With 125 speed, you're going to move first against pretty much everything, then with its already good 85 attack being boosted by 50% thanks to its ability Guts, then the 70 base power move Facade not only doubling in power due to status, but also getting yet another 50% same type attack bonus. You can check my math here, but I'm pretty sure that is effectively a 210 base power move. Just keep clicking A, and you win your Hoenn playthrough. 5 stars. Its availability will of course be 5 stars, as it's available super early in both Hoenn and Kalos, and its concept is at least a step up from Talos. Where Swellow at least isn't just a bird, it does have some inspiration from sword techniques, like the Japanese name for aerial ace being Swallow Return, and Swellow's tail feathers do resemble a pair of swords, which is actually pretty cool. 3 stars. As for its design, I actually don't know if I've ever mentioned this in this series before, but its back sprite specifically is honestly the highlight of its design. It looks so sleek, determined, and confident. Even as a whole, I do think that this is just about as cool of a design as you can give a normal bird. It's nothing special, but it looks pretty awesome for what it is. 4 stars. Landing Swellow the final score, 4.25 stars overall, and a spot on the top 5 for now. Hoenn's attempt at the Zubat of the Sea, Wingull, is up next, so we rate them all. In battle, it is actually pretty solid. 85 speed and 55 special attack to fire off water guns in the early game is really nice. Now obviously its attack and defenses are pretty rough, but water flying is a great typing, and having both water gun and wing attack gives you an advantage over most of the trainers you'll face early on, from the bug catchers to the hikers, you name it. Wingull may not ever wow you, but it is consistently good. 3.5 stars. It's also ridiculously available, of course. You can find it pretty much immediately in Hoenn, Kalos, Alola, and Galar, but not until the 5th gym in Sinnoh and until the 7th in Unova, so that will bring its average down to 4.5 stars. But its concept, well, it's pretty clearly based on the seagull, which yeah, I guess it does make perfect sense for a water flying type, and it does have the slight nod to the simple V-shaped birds in paintings and the V-shaped formations that birds fly in, but that's a bit of a stretch. 2.5 stars. I do like its design quite a bit though. It's simple, but with enough distinguishable features to make it stand out, like its tiny little body in comparison to its huge beak and wings, the cat ears as a nod to the Japanese name for seagulls, the blue stripes on the wings signifying nautical flags, but sadly, even with all of that, it just feels kind of insignificant and unimpressive. For some reason, it just doesn't leave any impression. 3 stars. And that will land Wingull with the final score of 3.375 stars overall. Pelipper, between its first and most recent appearances, are basically 2 completely different Pokemon. We're rating them all, and its battle prowess is the perfect way to show it. In Gen 3, not only was its special attack only 85, with the rest of its stats being mediocre, but it also didn't have its best ability, Drizzle. Its moves were fine back then with just Surf, Fly, and Ice Beam, but it always felt really underwhelming. Then in the Gen 6 remakes, it does get better moves with Tailwind, Roost, and Scald, but otherwise it remains unchanged. But then, in the most underrated region, Alola, they gave Pelipper the boost in special attack attack and the rain setting ability Drizzle, which just makes it so much better across the board. So for 4 generations, Pelipper was pretty bad, and then for 3 generations since then, it's been pretty darn good. That does make this tough, but I think that 3.5 stars is the highest that I can give it in battle prowess. Its availability is obviously 5 stars like Wingull, so I do want to quick mention that with this platform probably going bye-bye, all of these videos will continue to be on there until that happens, but then will otherwise be on these 2 after. I did also make a Patreon for those of you who have the desire and the ability to support this series, but anyway, Pelipper's concept is similarly simple to Wingull's, but now instead being a pelican with little fishing boat aspects, which is at least pretty funny. 2.5 stars. And Pelipper's design is so goofy in such a great way. Wingull's too big for its body beak has now evolved into this bigger than its body beak for Pelipper, which is not only awesome but fitting for a pelican. Then the way its silhouette is that of a little boat is just so cool. The beak forming the bow and the hull, the head making the deck house with the little porthole eyeballs. I love this goofy pelican. Shout out to Big Milk. You gotta leave a comment if you get that reference. 4 stars. So that gives Pelipper the final score of 3.65 stars overall. The Ralts line might just contain our next perfect 5-star Pokemon, but we're rating them all, and Ralts probably won't be it. Though in battle, it is interesting. It isn't nearly as bad as people make it out to be. Now, of course, with its abysmal physical defense, you do have to be careful, but its special stats are decent for the early game, and Psychic is just a great typing. Even more so once it adds the Fairy type in Gen 6. Confusion may be the only move you really get in Gen 3, but that's good enough to do the job. And in Gen 6, it of course adds Disarming Voice for those pesky Poochyenas. It's clearly not amazing, it's very frail and doesn't evolve until level 20, but it's not horrible. 2.5 stars. In case you weren't around for the Abra and Alakazam controversies, in this series, encounter rate or ease of access has nothing to do with availability. It's just a measure of how much of the game it's available for. And in that case, Ralts is great. You can get it right away in both Hoenn and Galar, then before the 3rd gym in Platinum, before the 2nd in Kalos, and as soon as you get to Akala and Lola, which just barely manages to average out to 5 stars. And Ralts' concept seems to be an entirely original idea. It's basically empathy embodied and made into a little humanoid pocket monster that uses its horns to sense the emotions of people around it, which is so awesome, especially with that little extra bit of drawing inspiration from the typical shy children of media. This is clearly 5 stars. And I think that its design is genuinely incredible. At first glance, it almost looks like a little creature with no eyes, using its psychic ability to search through the area, or maybe even wearing a little Jedi training helmet, but actually it does have eyes, and it's more likely a nod to the hair over the eyes looks of the shy kids I mentioned before. Then you add the heart-shaped horns on its heads to sense emotion, and honestly, you've got a peak first stage design. 5 stars. Which not only lands Ralts the final score of 4.375 stars overall, but also knocks a few starters from the top 5. Ralts shocked everybody by making it into the top 5, so do you think Kirlia will follow suit? We're rating them all, and in battle, it has a very similar story to Ralts. It's incredibly frail physically, especially considering it doesn't evolve until level 30, but its special attack is pretty solid at 65, but with its low speed and lack of defenses, it's really gonna get outclassed in the time that you would use it. It does still really pack a punch, but it struggles to get the chance to do so. 2 stars. And its availability, as we went over with Ralts, will once again be 5 stars for being in the early game in most regions. Then Kirlia takes the whole empathy physically embodied into a childlike creature idea and just ramps it up, while also gaining the ability to rip dimensions and see into the future. Once again, 5 stars. But its design, I'm really not a fan of, and no, I don't dislike all girly designs. I've just always felt that it stuck out like a sore thumb in its line, especially with the addition of Gallade. This line as a whole is incredible, starting at Ralts as this ambiguous little child, then its evolutions really representing either the feminine or masculine side of emotion, and then there's Kirlia, a ballet dancer. It isn't as cute or interesting as Ralts, nor is it as impressive or cool as its evolutions. This is honestly really a disappointment. 2.5 stars. But that still lands Kirlia a decent 3.65 stars overall. Can Gardevoir become our next perfect 5-star Pokemon? A lot of you seem to think so, but there's only been one so far, not including Megas. We're rating them all, and at least in battle, Gardevoir is arguably the most dominant Pokemon in a Hoenn playthrough, other than maybe Guts of Sod Swallow. With its whopping 125 special attack, 115 special defense, and decent 80 speed, it's going to be one of your strongest Pokemon. Even in Gen 3, all you really need is Calm Mind and Psychic, then for good measure slap on Thunderbolt and have fun. Not even to mention that in Gen 6, it somehow gets infinitely better with the Fairy typing, way better moves like Moonblast, Draining Kiss, Psyshock, and Shadow Ball. It's actually broken in every game that it's in. 5 stars. As for availability, remember that we don't factor in encounter rate at all, so Ralts being available early in most regions did result in 5 stars. And its concept is so unique and incredible, it follows the Ralts idea of being a physical embodiment of empathy and evolves into the great representation of femininity, taking the duality of guardian angels or mothers being both loving or nurturing as well as being fiercely protective. Once again, easily 5 stars. Which means it all comes down to design. Obviously, the Pokemon community has been, well, frankly gross about Gardevoir, but that doesn't take away from how incredible the design is. It does a fantastic job of showing the two sides of femininity, with the long flowing dress and the heart-shaped horns now going straight through its heart, while also showing the protective side by shaping its hair to resemble medieval helmets and giving it the "don't f with my babies" look in its eyes. Definitive 5 stars. Which means that Gardevoir has done it. It's the second ever perfect 5-star Pokemon, third if you count Megas, but still it takes the throne over the HOENN top 5. There's only been one perfect 5-star Mega, so can Mega Gardevoir become the second? We're rating them all, and obviously in battle, it's just utterly broken. With 165 special attack, 135 special defense, and 100 speed, along with its incredible Psychic Fairy typing, there's really nothing this monster can't handle. Not to mention its ability Pixelate, turning all normal type moves into Fairy type and giving them a 20% boost. On top of Gardevoir's already really impressive move pool, I mean, come on, this is clearly 5 stars. Its availability starts off at Gardevoir's 5 stars, but it is compared to other Megas, and you don't get its Mega Stone in HOENN until after you face Kyogre or Groudon, which is fairly late for a Mega, so that'll drop it down to 4 stars. And its concept is more or less the same as Gardevoir, being a physical embodiment of empathy and femininity. I don't think the Mega really added onto that at all, but it didn't take away from it either, so it'll stay 5 stars. But its design just once again kind of takes Gardevoir and makes it look a little bit more mature, I guess, really not doing much at all to make it look Mega. They just took the sleek and petite looking dress and turned it into more of a ball gown, but otherwise it's more or less the same. For some reason, I've really just never been a fan. Don't get me wrong, it still has all the positives with the duality of femininity, with the nurturing look coupled with the protective look, but it just falls short of expectations. It's just Gardevoir again, but worse. 4 stars, which still gives it a great 4.5 stars overall,
and a spot on the Mega's top 5.
Surskit had so much wasted potential. We're rating them all, and its stats are honestly a lot better than I thought. Besides its physical attack and defense, this thing is actually pretty solid otherwise. But sadly, as is the story with so many Pokemon before it, its move pool in its first game leaves a lot to be desired. Having Bubble and Quick Attack be your only real moves until after you evolve at level 22 is not a good look. They kind of fixed it in the remakes, at least moving up Bubble Beam, but still, holy bad. They really just ruined this thing's potential. 2 stars in battle prowess. Though it is available right away in HOENN, after the 3rd gym in Kalos, and on the 2nd island in Alola, so that averages out to 4.5 stars for availability. Then Surskit is pretty obviously based on a Water Strider bug, which is just a bug, but at least it's a unique bug and does make for a pretty cool first entry into the water and bug typing. 2.5 stars. Its design, though, kind of feels unfinished. The little blob body and beady eyes are cute at least, and I get what they're going for with the long skinny legs and all, but that's it. That's the whole design. It doesn't even really look like a bug at all, which leaves it feeling really disappointing for such a cool typing. 1.5 stars, which gives Surskit 2.625 stars overall, and hey, that frees Might Yenna from the bottom 5. Masquerain has an insane zero to hero story. We're rating them all, and I'll straight up admit that I've never actually used one of these, but look at its stats. 100 special attack, 80s in special defense and speed is awesome for how early this thing evolves. And it gets one of the best abilities in the game, Intimidate. But wait, you said this was a 0. Well, in Gen 3, it really relies on these TMs because it only learns 4 attacking moves by level up, and only one of them being special, the 20 base power bubble. Why do they do this? I don't get it. But then you fast forward to the 3D regions and oh my god, talk about upgrades, people. Bug Buzz, Quiver Dance, Air Slash, Giga Drain, Scald, Shadow Ball, this thing is a monster in the modern generations. But to be fair and balanced, its battle prowess will end up 3.5 stars. Its availability will be the same 4.5 stars as Surskit, and its concept seems to be kind of all over the place, taking bits and pieces from all sorts of different real-life insects. I really do wish they would have let this thing keep its at the time unique water bug typing, though that doesn't really matter here, it's still 2.5 stars. Its design though is definitely an upgrade from Surskit, but it does have the same main issue: it feels incomplete. It feels much more like a middle stage evolution with its little body that seems like it's still in metamorphosis, though the false eyes are by design the main focus, and they are really cool for sure, with the real eyes on the red face making it look like an open mouth with teeth. That is really cool, I just want more from this thing. 3 stars. So that gives Masquerain the final score of 3.375 stars overall. Shroomish when I was a kid was for some reason one of my most sought after HOENN Pokemon. We're rating them all, and it plays the stereotypical supporting grass type role with its honestly really solid bulk for the early game, along with its annoyance of an ability Effect Spore and its great utility and recovery moves Stun Spore, Leech Seed, and Mega Drain, which does all come together together for a really good early game support Pokemon, especially in Hoenn against Roxanne. 4 stars. And it may sound crazy, but it's actually only available in Hoenn, not including post-game appearances or Paldea's open world, and in Hoenn it's available before the first gym, so that's 5 stars. And Shroomish at first glance is of course based on a mushroom, but interestingly enough, it's also a nod to dinosaur eggs as a hint at its evolution, which is honestly a really creative and unexpected combination for such a little grass type. 4 stars. And I've always personally loved this little guy's design. The grouchy little face is hilarious, and the spots resembling Pokemon eggs are such an awesome touch that once you notice them, they really bring the whole design together and make it so much cooler than its face value of a bland little Mario mushroom enemy. It's not amazing by any means, at the end of the day it is pretty bland, but it is good. 3.5 stars. So that gives Shroomish 4.125 stars overall, which is just shy of the top 5. Breloom is honestly one of Hoenn's best Pokemon. We're rating them all, and in battle this thing is awesome. Its 130 attack obviously jumps out at you as it's incredible, but its pretty mid defenses and speed do hold it back. Granted, Mach Punch does a great job of patching up its speed, and it's not like it lost all of those great support moves from Shroomish, and man, you couple those with Bulk Up from Brawly and oh, I smell a nasty setup coming. You do obviously have to be careful about matchups, but it can be an absolute menace. 4.5 stars. And its availability will once again be 5 stars like Shroomish, but its concept takes a massive step forward, evolving from the little dinosaur egg mushroom Shroomish into the actual dinosaur mushroom Breloom, while taking inspiration from Japanese wide brim hats and even boxing kangaroos, makes for an incredible idea for a grass and fighting type. 5 stars. And its design is honestly so incredible. Between the kangaroo-esque legs and body, the Ankylosaurus club tail, dinosaur claws, and maybe even the head doubling as both the mushroom and that one dinosaur who has that smooth ramming helmet head. I don't know what it's called. I love Breloom. I'm not sure if I'm alone in this one or not, but I think that this is easily a 5-star design. And that actually lands Breloom the final score of 4.875 stars, which is the second highest score in Hoenn. The Slackoth line as a whole is surprisingly really interesting. We're rating them all and starting off at Slackoth, whose battle prowess is, well, pretty obviously bad. 60s in HP, attack, and defense are actually really good for the early game, but then 30s otherwise, coupled with Truant, which is arguably the worst ability in the game. It can hit decently hard with Headbutt and stay alive with Slackoth if you can play around Truant, but good luck. 2 stars in battle prowess. And we've surprisingly found another Hoenn Pokemon that's only available in Hoenn, not including post-game or Paldea, which is honestly really surprising for such a popular line, but either way, it is available before the first gym in Hoenn, so that's 5 stars. However, to understand its concept, we have to kind of look past Slackoth and look at its evolution line as a whole. Sure, at base value, Slackoth is just a sloth, but it is pretty directly based on the Sphinx's riddle, which is really interesting and tells us the story of our energy and ability through the stages of life, and is about as cool of an idea as you can get for a normal type sloth Pokemon. 5 stars. But its design, I feel, is definitely the worst in its line. It's pretty much just an actual sloth. Its cartoon eyes are really the only thing that separates it from being the actual animal. And I get that it's probably really difficult to do with a stationary, lazy sloth Pokemon. It does show the concept well, but it's just not nearly as appealing at its evolutions. 3 stars. So that ends up giving Slackoth a decent 3.75 stars overall. Vigoroth is absolutely a top-tier middle stage evolution. We're rating them all, and it's actually busted in battle. 90 speed with 80s in HP, attack, and defense is kind of ridiculously strong considering it evolves as early as level 18. Then if you kept Headbutt and Slackoth from Slackoth and pair it with Bulk Up from Brawly, then teach it Slash or Return or plenty of awesome TM options, and this thing is actually broken and just sweeps the entire mid-game until it evolves. I think this is actually a first for a middle stage evolution, but that's 5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability will also be 5 stars, just like Slackoth, and its concept is incredible. As we already went over with Slackoth, it's a really good representation of the Sphinx's riddle. This evolution line tells us the story of life, going from an incapable baby to an energetic young adult to a tired or lazy elder adult. Then the shift from sloth to more baboon is also a really nice touch since they are stereotypically more energetic and aggressive, just like Vigoroth. 5 stars. And wait, there's no way that Vigoroth actually gets a perfect 5-star rating, right? I mean, its design does do a fantastic job of portraying the concept, especially in the way that its sprites are animated with its spastic and vigorous motions, and the red accents on the white coat of fur do help with that as well, but the red nose has always made this thing look more like a clown to me, and as much as I love Vigoroth, it's actually my favorite in its line, it is a really goofy looking design that seems oddly proportioned, but regardless, it is still awesome. 4 stars, which shockingly lands Vigoroth 4.75 stars overall and a firm placement on the top 5. Slacking might just be the best non-legendary Pokemon ever, if it wasn't for the gorilla in the room. Also, So wow, Hoenn really just hands you the best team possible before the second gym. But in battle, Slacking is outrageously strong, its stats rivaling even the box art legends. 150 HP, 160 attack, and even 100 speed and defense. That's a terrifyingly fast Gorilla Sloth. Between utility with Yawn, recovery with Slack Off, and a plethora of strong offensive options, what's not to love? How is this not the best early game Pokemon ever? Well, because of its very crippling ability Truant. I'll admit I was really on the fence about how much of, or if at all, a penalty that this should get, so I asked you guys that exact question and got a lot of great comments in response. On one hand, it should be a penalty for sure, since it's arguably the worst ability in the game and makes Slacking completely useless on every other turn, which is at best an inconvenience and at worst just loses you the battle outright. But on the other hand, Slacking has access to both Hyper Beam in early gens and Giga Impact in the later gens, both of which will probably one-shot your opponent, and then the turn you're supposed to be recharging kind of doesn't really matter since you're loafing around anyway. It is a really hard decision because it's by far the strongest Pokemon that you can get that early, but this comment put it perfectly. If it didn't have Truant, everybody would use it on every single playthrough. And I agree, I think the negatives are enough to constitute a little bit of a penalty, so 4.5 stars in battle prowess. It does, however, get 5 stars in availability thanks to Slack Off, and the concept, as we went over pretty extensively in Vigoroth's video, is amazing. This whole line is a great representation of the Sphinx's riddle, with the additional inspiration from an interesting sloth-ape mix, eventually landing in the gorilla-esque giant sloth-like Slacking. That's about as good as it gets for a normal type concept. 5 stars. And its design is really well done. I think that they did the most that they could with that concept without losing touch of it, with the silvery mane showing its maturity, the hulking body, and the "if you make me get out of bed, you're going to regret it" look in its eye. It is a really successfully imposing gorilla monster, but I don't think it's quite top tier Pokemon design. 4.5 stars, which will give Slacking 4.75 stars overall and a spot on the Hoenn top 5. I don't know if it's Nincada or Nincada, but either way, this is a nothing burger of a Pokemon, but boy, they went hard with its evolutions. We're rating them all, and in battle, this thing is just kinda there. Its stats are really bad other than its shockingly good defense, but between its offenses, which are awful, and its only attacking move being Leech Life, which prior to Gen 7 was 20 base power, along with it not having any good support moves, I don't know what you're actually gonna do with this thing. Sure, Bug Ground is a really cool and unique typing, but this thing's only redeeming quality is defense. 1.5 stars. But at least it is really available. You can get it before the first or second gym in Hoenn, Kalos, and Galar, so that's 5 stars. Its concept is also really awesome. I was confused when I initially saw it was the trainee Pokemon. At face value, this is just a cicada, but as Ninjask shows better, it takes a lot of inspiration from ninjas, specifically quite a few fabled ninja techniques surrounding actual cicadas, which is a really cool idea for sure. 4 stars. But its design, I don't get what they were going for here. It's not appealing in the slightest. Oh, but it's a bug Pokemon. Bugs aren't supposed to be cool. Shut it. Bugs are the best looking Pokemon out there. It's my favorite type, but this thing looks awful. It just looks like an actual cicada nin, which, okay, sure, but it doesn't even look like a Pokemon at all. I think it's awful, honestly. 1 star, which will land Nincada 2.875 stars overall and a spot on the bottom 5. Ninjask is such an interesting twist on the glass cannon trope. We're rating them all, and its stats only tell half the story. It is one of the fastest Pokemon ever with pretty solid attack and paper-thin defenses. But what makes it really interesting is that it's actually a much better support Pokemon than a sweeper. Its ability Speed Boost, giving it +1 speed on every turn, along with the 2 very important moves, Swords Dance and Baton Pass, make this thing a genuinely really good support Pokemon. Granted, its aforementioned defenses can make that really hard to do, especially later in the game when you would get Baton Pass, but up until that point in the game, it can still be a fairly solid attacker. Well, at least in the new gens with better moves, it was pretty bad in Gen 3. I think altogether, 3.5 stars in battle prowess feels about right. Its availability will stay 5 stars like Nincada, and I do really like how they took the fabled techniques of ninjas, which took inspiration from cicadas, and turned them into a cicada that's a ninja. That's a really good and interesting concept. 4 stars. Its design then honestly does an incredible job of portraying that. This 100% looks like a little ninja cicada, but unlike Nincada, it does manage to still look like a Pokemon, and a convincingly really fast and agile one. I don't think that it's quite top tier amazing Pokemon, but it is really cool. 4 stars. So that gives Ninjask a really nice 4.125 stars overall. I'm really excited for this one. Shedinja is one of the most unique Pokemon, well, ever, in a lot of ways. We're rating them all in its very odd stats. Its 1 HP specifically, paired with its ability Wonder Guard, is one of the main reasons why. It is 100% immune to any and every attack that isn't super effective. But again, it has 1 HP, so you could argue that if you know your opponent's moves and use it correctly, it is completely invincible for those specific battles. Even Even with its pretty bad move pool in Gen 3, in that specific situation, it's just a free win button. But on the other hand, in literally any other scenario, it's pretty much useless. It's too slow to even reliably get one attack off before getting taken out, and even if it does, it's not all that strong. This was admittedly really hard to narrow down a solid score, so I did ask you guys, and the results were pretty balanced actually, which didn't really help, but I think that 3.5 stars feels about right. Its evolution method is also completely unique, requiring an empty spot in your party when you evolve Nincada into Ninjask, leaving behind a surprise, Shedinja. And some of you suggested that that should hurt its availability, but I disagree, it's still 5 stars. It's also the only bug ghost Pokemon to date, which plays directly into its incredible concept. As I'm sure most of you know, when cicadas emerge from their years underground, they undergo a metamorphosis and leave behind a shed husk. And oh my god, those things are everywhere in the American South. But using that phenomenon as the inspiration for an evolutionary line for a Pokemon is amazing. The cicada evolves not only into its mature form, Ninjask, but also leaves behind the dead empty shell, Shedinja, which gains the ghost typing. Even without mentioning the parallels it has from fabled ninja techniques, and this is still about as easy of a 5-star concept as I've seen, then Shedinja just looks special. The way that they make the broken open back show its empty husk left behind also appear as a set of wings is so awesome. Then the halo floating above it to show it's a ghostly entity and the super unique eyes. Honestly, this is absolutely incredible and peak Pokemon design. Easily 5 stars. Which means Shedinja's final score is 4.65 stars overall, emerging into the top 5. What is Hoenn's obsession with slow, frail, mixed attackers? We're reading them all, and Whismur is a painful example of that. 64 HP and 51 in both attacks is pretty good for first stage evolution, but holy bad look at its speed and defenses. This thing is not gonna last very long. If it somehow does, it can hit fairly hard even in Gen 3 with just Uproar, which actually got buffed to 90 base power in Kalos, yet in that same generation for the Hoenn remakes, they just took Uproar away from Whismur, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that was his signature move, but they gave it Echoed Voice instead, and like, really guys, we needed to nerf Whismur? That was just rude. 2 stars. But it is available before the first or second gym in both Hoenn and Kalos, so that's 5 stars in availability. But I have no idea what Whismur or anything in its line is supposed to be. They all really confuse me, but Whismur, I guess, is some sort of rabbit or stuffed animal creature with its behavior being similar to human infants, and I guess taking inspiration from amplifiers? I don't know, it is for sure very unique, but it seems to be lacking direction. Now, if they made a sound type, this thing would be perfect. But alas, 3 stars. It does still manage to be fairly cute though, in a very uncomfortable and uneasy kind of way. Its general timid posture and shaky mouth do portray the scared little creature pretty well, and you can at least tell there's some connection to electrical or speaker ideas with the earmuff or headphone style ears, the plug receptacle, but yeah, that's really weird, and so are its eyes, but I guess it's fine overall, 2.5 stars. So that lands Whismur 3.125 stars overall. Loudred is such a weird Pokemon, we're rating them all, and it has the unfortunate slow, frail, mixed attacker build. It can hit pretty hard with 71 in both attacks, but its speed and defenses really hold it back big time, especially when you consider this thing doesn't evolve until level 40? That's insanely high for such a mid Pokemon. In Gen 3, its move pool is awful. The only good move it gets is Stomp, other than some TMs which it could get before evolving, but even with those, it's just not fast or bulky enough to reliably do much at all. It does get better in Gen 6, but barely. 2 stars in battle prowess. It is saved by availability though, keeping the 5 stars from Whismur, and its concept is once again kind of odd. A lot of Pokemon are conglomerations of different animals, but Loudred seems to be a mix of different types of sound equipment, which is at least unique, I suppose. 3 stars. And its design, holy crap, not only is this thing super ugly, but it also looks nothing like Whismur or Exploud. Excluding the weird hippo mouth and stubby teeth, which are the exact same as the toenails, not to mention its plug butt. What were they thinking there? But to be fair, Loudred's design does absolutely portray very loud. But other than that, it is just unappealing, odd, and busy. 2 stars, which gives Loudred an even 3 stars overall, barely avoiding the bottom 5. Exploud is unnecessarily cool for such a bad Pokemon. We're rating them all, and I do like Exploud, but I can't stand its stat spread. It has pretty solid HP and both attacks, but its defenses and speed are so bad for Pokemon that you don't get until level 40. It can end up having a pretty well-rounded moveset with diverse coverage, but its best moves like Boom Burst, Hyper Voice, and TMs like Earthquake, you aren't going to get until you're at the point in the game where Exploud just gets outsped and squashed by most opponents. It sadly just falls short of expectations for such a late evolution. 3 stars. And about that evolution, you have to drag your mid at best Loudred all the way until level 40 to get Exploud. So it does start at the 5 stars from Whismur, but it definitely deserves a dock down to 4.5. Though I do think that its concept is a little bit more cohesive than its prevos, sticking with the musical instrument idea but now leaning more heavily into the pipe organ specifically, while also becoming more kaiju-esque instead of just a weird little troll creature. 3.5 stars. And its design I do think is pretty cool. It's a very unique looking Pokemon for sure, with the various pipe organ holes around its body, with both its head and crest tail things becoming organ pipes, while doubling as an almost dinosaur-like armor plating and tail. It's super weird and pretty ugly, but in a kind of cool way. It's a big, ugly, earth-shattering, loud hippo monster. Horrible 3D sprites, but successful design. 4 stars, which does give Exploud 3.75 stars overall. Makuhita apparently has the lowest defenses and speed of any fighting type. I never would have guessed that. But we're rating them all, and this little doughboy packs a punch. Its stats are admittedly a lot worse than I thought, especially its aforementioned awful defenses and speed, but 72 HP is great in the early game, and 60 attack paired with its ability Guts is also really great. It is helped by the fact that the fighting type also just has really favorable matchups early on, with so many normal rock and dark types running around. Its move pool is good too, even with just Fake Out, Vital Throw, and Bulk Up in Gen 3, then you add on Force Palm and Knockoff in Gen 7, and Makuhita is actually pretty good despite its not great stats. 3.5 stars. It is available before the second gym in both Hoenn and Alola, and even before the third in Kalos, so that still averages out to 5 stars. And Makuhita is really interesting. It takes different references from a few martial arts and squeezes them into a Pokemon, while taking inspiration from tenacious little kids first discovering said martial arts, and I think that's pretty cool and wholesome. 3.5 stars. Its design then does a really good job of representing that. Its plump little body and top knot resemble a punching bag, but also double down with its traditional sumo hairstyle and body composition. Then you throw on boxing gloves and even a little bib to sell the novice or baby idea, and this is a really good design. It's one of those that doesn't look amazing, but absolutely nails the concept. 4 stars, which comes together to give Makuhita a surprising 4 stars overall. Hariyama is a weird one, but in a good way, I think. We're rating them all, and fun fact, its stats are all actually exactly double that of Makuhita's, which is pretty cool, and its attack and HP are awesome, but it's otherwise not that great. But its ability Guts, doubling its already awesome attack stat when inflicted with a status, coupled with its great move pool, like Fake Out and Knockoff, plenty of offensive options, Bulk Up, and even Belly Drum if you're feeling spicy, come together to make a really solid fighting type option that can be great, albeit pretty risky. 4 stars for battle prowess, but I could see 4.5. And if it didn't already get 5-star availability from Makuhita, it probably would have gotten a bump from being such an early game evolution. And I do like how it evolved from the ambitious and excited little trainee Makuhita into the grizzled veteran who is a master of his craft and spends more time training the young ones. Once again, really wholesome. It may also take inspiration from a few specific sumo wrestlers, but I'm not too sure on that one. 4 stars. But I really have mixed feelings on its design if we're being honest. The details are great, once again with the toes resembling the Zori sandals, the Mawashi midsection, and the most obvious being the massive hands in reference to the open hand striking in sumo. Yet for some reason, the big picture just ends up looking a bit odd for some reason. I'm not denying that it's a good design though, it still is for sure. 3.5 stars. And still, that ends up giving Hariyama a respectable 4.125 stars. Wait, Azurill is a Hoenn Pokemon? That still doesn't sound right. But we're rating them all, and it has been a while since we went over Marill and Azumarill, and surprisingly, Azurill actually has the same attack stat as Marill, but just worse in every other category. And Azurill also loses the water type for some reason, so back in Gen 3 it was just a normal type, and sure it had huge power, which is amazing, but it doesn't really make a difference coming from Azurill's 20 base attack. Its moves are barely worth mentioning in Gen 3, then in Gen 6 they're a bit better, but the main improvement is the fairy typing. Though even with that, you really just shouldn't ever send this thing into battle. 1.5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability is super weird though, since it's not in Johto like Marill, and it's actually not even in Hoenn other than through breeding. But we've counted that so far, and Marill is actually available before the first gym in Emerald, but not until the third in the rest of Hoenn, the mid-game in Sinnoh, then again super early in Unova and Kalos, and then on Akala in Alola, so that averages out to 4.5 stars. Looking back at Marill, who got 3.5 stars for being kind of a water mouse with beach ball and water molecule inspirations, and then at Azurill, who is just a baby Marill, who I'm assuming loses its water type from not being able to swim yet. Either way, it'll stay 3.5 stars. Its design is fine, it's absolutely a convincing baby Marill, and honestly Marill already nailed that almost mascot level of cute and cool mix, but I think they leaned a little too far into the crybaby thing for Azurill. Poor little guy is just so pitiful that it makes me actively not want to use it. 3 stars. So that all gives Azurill 3.125 stars overall. Nosepass serves the same role as Onyx, being that first gym road would block. We're rating them all, and similarly to Onix, if you aren't prepared, it can be a real issue. The main difference being that Nosepass actually hits back fairly hard with Rock Tomb. But that's just at the first gym. If you actually want to use this thing, well, its defensive stats are great, of course, but everything else is awful for a Pokemon that at one point didn't even evolve. Sturdy was also a useless ability back in Gen 3, only defending against Oko moves like Fissure, and its moveset was decent in Gen 3 with some utility and coverage, but Nosepass as a whole was a lot better in the Gen 6 remakes. With Sturdy actually working now, it having much better moves, and actually getting to evolve, so with both being considered, I think 3 stars for Battle Prowess is fair. I do always forget that this thing is actually available before the second gym in Hoenn, and then before the third in Platinum, but not until after the 6th in Diamond and Pearl, then fairly early in Kalos and Alola, which will average out to a surprising 4 stars. Nosepass is a pretty interesting Pokemon, being modeled off of Moai statues on Easter Island, but making the nose into a sort of compass, which is pretty funny considering the cardinal directions spell out nose. It feels a bit odd for a Pokemon, but it's pretty good, 3.5 stars. And its design is definitely unique and oddly charming. I think the Gen 3 sprites are actually its worst look, giving it more of a rounded and desaturated feel, where in every generation after that, it's much more geometric and colorful. I don't think I have anything negative to say about this design, but I don't think there's much positive either. It's just fine, 3 stars, which will land Nosepass 3.375 stars overall. Skitty was definitely made with contests in mind, but we're rating them all, and that's not gonna help it in this series because in battle, it's so bad. All of its stats are only between 35 and 50, and in Gen 3 it doesn't even have any good moves worth mentioning, but in Gen 6 it does get the much better ability Normalize and some better moves, but it's at best 2 stars in Battle Prowess. Though you can get it before the first or second gym in Hoenn and Kalos, then before the third as a version exclusive in Unova, so that averages out to 4.5 stars. And I could easily give you guys the famous "it's just a cat" line here for concept because, well, it kind of is, but with a bit of a cute idea in there, playing on the pun for toy kitten for miniature cats, and making this miniature cat into a toy. So it's better than nothing, but not by much. 2.5 stars. Its design does lean more towards the toy part of Toy Kitten, and I actually think that it's really cute. The tiniest legs you could possibly put on a cat, with the nice crescent moon pattern to reference its evolution method, and the main part being the cat toy for a tail. I actually think they nailed the cute Toy Kitten idea. This is a really good design, and it's adorable. 4 stars. Which actually gives Skitty a surprising 3.25 stars overall. Delcatty might be the biggest disappointment of any evolution yet. We're rating them all, and in battle, it's better than Skitty, of course, but barely. It has decent speed, but otherwise its stats are awful for a fully evolved Pokemon. With it being a stone evolution in the early gens, it doesn't learn any moves after evolving, so you're stuck with the pretty awful Skitty moveset other than TMs. Which, to be fair, it does get good ones, but have fun chucking out 55 special attack T-bolts and Ice Beams, even with Normalize in the newer gens. This might actually be worse than Skitty relative to when you would use it, 1.5 stars. Though its availability will stay at Skitty's 4.5 stars, since you can get the Moonstone at a reasonable time to evolve. And its concept goes from the fun pun toy kitten of Skitty to a regular cat that likes to sleep. I have to admit the normal types being normal animals buff is getting kind of annoying, 2 stars. Yet its design is by far the biggest downgrade we talked about in a while. Skitty at least had some moon elements to its design with the whole cat toy tail thing going for it, and it was just adorable. Then Delcatty is just not. Now I may be a dog person, but cats as a rule are pretty darn cute, but Delcatty isn't. I don't think there's a single aspect of this design that's appealing in the slightest or even better than Skitty's in any way. 2 stars. Landing Delcatty the final score of 2.5 stars overall and a spot on the bottom 5. The story behind Sableye is so incredible, but we'll get there. We're rating them all, and this was the first of the Zero Weaknesses Pokemon, at least until Fairy type came out. I'll admit I've never actually used Sableye, but its stats are pretty bad for a Pokemon that doesn't evolve, and would lead you to think that, oh, maybe it's a support Pokemon, except no, not really, nor does it get any good moves until quite a ways into the game in Gen 3. In the later gens at least, it does get much better moves, like Knock Off and Foul Play, but I'm not sure why you would use this other than for flavor or immunity. 2.5 stars in Battle Prowess. As for availability, you can actually get it before the second gym in Hoenn, Kalos, and Alola, but as a version exclusive in Hoenn, and in the remakes, it's locked behind the Mach Bike, so it will average out to a surprising 4.5 stars. The story and basis of Sableye is, however, hilariously incredible. In 1955, in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, a mining family claimed to have an over 4-hour shootout with small alien-like creatures that were goblin-looking with glowing eyes and pointy ears, which fast forward a few decades, and this story becomes the inspiration for media worldwide surrounding aliens and hobgoblins. So you take that story and then make a little goblin Pokemon with stolen gemstones being like its whole shtick? That's amazing. 5 stars. Though its design may be a bit simplistic and maybe even empty, but I think that that's the point. It's the darkness Pokemon. It does do a great job of portraying that concept too. This is a really good design, but I just feel like it's missing something. 4 stars, which beams up Sableye to 4 stars overall. Mega Sableye has really grown on me lately. I thought it was so stupid at first. We're rating them all, and in battle it's pretty odd for a Mega. It's very clearly meant to be a defensive wall, though its attack stats are decent, but that's really nailed home with its ability Magic Bounce, which reflects back status moves at the opponent, and to be fair, it is very niche and requires some knowledge of the opposing team, but it can be great for sure. Its move pool is pretty good too, with support moves like Fake Out, Confuse Ray, and Knock Off, and some more offense coming from Shadow Ball, Shadow Sneak, Foul Play, and some really useful TMs. It's definitely not the best Mega, but it is good. 4 stars in battle prowess. We do compare availability compared to other Megas, and Sableye's Mega Stone is like right before the 8th gym, which is fairly late for a Mega and will drop its score down to 3.5 stars. Sableye already had one of the best concepts in the series if you missed it, and Mega Sableye keeps all of that of course, but now due to the Mega Ring's energy, the gem in its chest expands and bursts out of its chest, which now it uses as a magical shield. So that's definitely staying 5 stars. And like I said at the start, I couldn't stand this thing's design at first. I lumped it in as just a Sableye with a giant gem, but after, well, paying attention, the gaping hole in its chest left from its gem, the definitively evil grin, sharper and more dangerous design, especially with the eyes now being red, I think that this was a definite step up from Sableye. 4.5 stars, which will land Mega Sableye 4.25 stars overall, but not in the Mega Top 5. Mawile might actually be the most underwhelming Steel type. We're rating them all, and its performance in battle is night and day between generations. Its 85s in attack and defense are really nice for how early you can catch it, but the rest of its stats are awful for a Pokemon that doesn't evolve, and is gonna fall off quickly. It does get Intimidate, which is great, but its move pool in Gen 3 is insultingly bad. Thankfully it got a massive buff in Gen 6, becoming the best typing in the game by adding the Fairy type. But wait, there's more. It also got way better moves, like its Dark type moves becoming physical, along with Sucker Punch, Iron Head, and Play Rough. However, you aren't gonna get these better moves until you're at the point in the game where Mawile is totally outclassed anyway, so it's at best 3 stars in battle prowess. Its availability is almost exactly the same as Sableye's, but with the addition of Galar, where Sableye was locked behind the postgame and therefore didn't count here, Mawile is available after the 4th gym, which does still just barely average out to 4.5 stars. And I totally agree with this comment. What even is Mawile, and why is it a Steel type? Well, apparently its typing is because its jaws are actually steel horns that have transformed. Alright, cool, but what is Mawile? From what I can find, it's loosely based on 2 different Japanese yokai, one being a woman with a mouth on the back of her head, and the other being a Yeti-like creature with a torn mouth. I mean, I guess I can see it, but it still seems to be lacking a strong idea. 3.5 stars. Its design is definitely unique and eye-catching, if not a bit deceiving. I remember as a kid being so confused about why I couldn't hurt this thing playing Ruby, but in my defense, battling Steel types was like brand new since Johto barely featured them, and this thing doesn't look like one at all. So I suppose it does pull off the concept well, and it doesn't look bad by any means, but it doesn't look great either. It's always been a bit odd and jarring. 3 stars, landing Mawile the final score of 3.5 stars overall. Mega Mawile is outrageous in the best ways. We're rating them all, and the first thing that stands out is its ridiculous performance in battle. Not only is this thing decently bulky, but it also has 105 attack. Except just kidding, thanks to its ability Huge Power, this thing effectively has 210 base attack, which by the way would make it the strongest physical attacker in Pokemon, period. Then you throw on the fact that it does have the best type combo in the game, along with its really good move pool, and do I really need to convince you guys this is 5 stars? Its availability starts off at Mawile's 4.5, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is this not like the first Megastone you'd find in HOENN? You can get it before the 3rd gym. So yeah, compared to other Megas, that's also 5 stars. And Mawile's concept is pretty good, being based on a couple yokai, but upon Mega Evolution, it just becomes extremely vicious, violent, and unpredictable. Honestly, I'm surprised this thing got the Fairy type and not Dark, but either way, it doesn't do much much to warrant a change in score, so 3.5 stars. Its design, though, I do think is a huge improvement. Obviously, the massive and terrifying gnashing jaws are the main reason, but I do think that turning the skirt pink does a lot for this design a bit subtly. It gives it a much better contrast visually and plays much more into the deceiver idea, the cute little girlish thing hiding monstrous jaws behind her. Really well done. I think it patches up most of my issues with Mawile, 4.5 stars, which, wow, gives Mega Mawile 4.5 stars overall, a whole star improvement, and a spot on the Mega Top 5. Oh, the Aggron line, the pseudo-legends we always thought we had. We're rating them all, and Aggron is actually pretty solid. 70 attack and 100 defense is amazing in the early game, though with its poor special defenses and speed, you do obviously have to be choosy about when you use it. And its rock and steel typing then doubles down on that by being amazing defensively while having a few glaring weaknesses that you need to avoid. It had a decent move pool in Gen 3 and a much better one in Gen 6, along with its sturdy ability actually working and being good now, so I think that overall, Aggron is a really solid physical tank, but it's held back by its weak points and its somewhat later evolution. 3.5 stars in battle prowess. And it is available surprisingly early in Hoenn, mid-game in Unova, and that's actually it, not including post-game or DLC, so that will average out to 4 stars. Aggron then seems to be based on a Korean legend of a monster that eats iron called the Bulgasari, and Aggron eats iron in the mountains or occasionally from cities and uses said iron to create its steel-plated armor. While visually it may take inspiration from some armor-plated dinosaurs, it's not the deepest of concepts, but it is really cool. 4 stars. And as for its design, all of you guys' comments about it's just a little guy and all these little Pokemon's videos is making me really want to do a little guy only stream, but anyway, yeah, this is a cute little guy. It's a little armor-plated dino baby. I really don't know how you could make this better, but that doesn't mean it's some incredible design either. It's good, for sure. 3.5 stars. Which digs up Aggron 3.75 stars overall. Well, Aggron is a super underrated middle evolution. We're rating them all, and it can be an absolute tank in battle with its 90 attack and 140 defense. Now, for the same reasons as Aggron or even Geodude, you do have to be selective with your matchups with its poor special defense and 2 quad weaknesses. But its host of other resistances on top of its already pretty solid move pool in Gen 3, which gets even better in Gen 6, absolutely can lead to a physical tank for the mid-game until it evolves. 4 stars. Availability starts off at Aggron's 4 stars, and I could see the reasoning for giving it a penalty for being a pretty late middle stage evolution, but I think that Aggron can hold its own well enough until 32, so it's not much of an issue, and it'll stay 4 stars. And it similarly is based on the iron-eating Bulgasari legend, as well as armor-plated dinosaurs and Triassic mammals, which is really cool. Another 4 stars. Then, as I said at the start, I think Lairon is super underrated as a middle evolution. On its own, it looks amazing as a sturdy little metal-plated dinosaur creature that looks fierce enough, but also believably juvenile. It also is just a great bridge between Aggron and Aggron. 4 stars. And boy, I'm gonna have to do the math for this one, but I think that means it's 4 stars overall. Aggron absolutely could have or should have been a pseudo-legend. We're rating them all, and as most of us learned at one point or another, it's not, because its base stats aren't high enough. But that doesn't mean this thing is anywhere near bad. It of course has a similar story as its Prevos. Its stats and typing are a double-edged sword. It has great attack and incredible defense, but awful special defense and speed. Then its typing offers many great resistances, but with a few massive holes in the armor. So as long as you're smart about your matchups, it absolutely can take advantage of its really strong move pool and to become a physical tank that's capable of outputting loads of damage. Sturdy is also a great ability that is of course way better in the later gens and will help its survivability, so I'm on the fence with this one with either a 4 or 4.5 in battle prowess, but I'm gonna land on 4.5 stars. Its availability will also stay 4 stars like its Prevos because it's really not hard to go from 32 to 42. Then Aggron is more or less a full metal-plated Triceratops kaiju monster, taking inspiration from the Korean legend of the Bulgasari, and this monstrosity claims an entire mountain, then protects it against its rivals and restores its environment? I love it. 5 stars. And Aggron's design is one of the more popular designs in all of Hoenn, which is saying a lot. I know that everything pulls 5 stars and they don't actually mean anything, but this one was overwhelmingly 5 stars. And I can see why. It looks absolutely incredible. The steer Triceratops helmet, the overlapping armor. This may be a basic opinion, but kaiju Pokemon just go so hard. 5 stars. Which does land Aggron 4.625 stars overall and a spot on the top 5. Mega Aggron is such a simple yet effective take on Mega Evolution. We're rating them all, and the wall itself here is just ridiculous. 140 attack, 230 defense on a pure steel type with filter? Then you throw on this thing's great move pool with Heavy Slam or Iron Head, Rock Slide, Iron Defense, Autotomize, and way more coverage than it realistically should have, and you have yourself an outrageous Pokemon in battle. Another easy 5-star Mega Pokemon. And it's also insanely available compared to other Megas. You can get its Mega Stone right after the 3rd gym in Hoenn, long before you'll have either Aggron or the Mega Ring, but still enough to raise its availability up to 5 stars. And Aggron's concept, simply put, is a steel-plated Triceratops Kaiju, which is amazing in and of itself, but it also has some Korean legend inspirations. Then you have the Mega, which just takes that to its pinnacle, shedding the rock type due to all of its consumption of iron and donning a full suit of steel-plated armor. 5 stars yet again. Are we really gonna get our second perfect 5-star Mega from Hoenn? Man, this region is so stacked. But I mean, to be fair, Mega Aggron takes everything great about Aggron and somehow manages to improve it. The intimidatingly sharp face and helmet, the full suit of shining steel plate armor. Honestly, if you told me this was a legendary Pokemon, I would 100% believe you. Kaiju Pokemon are goated and you can't change my mind. 5 stars, which does in fact give Aggron a perfect 5 stars overall, and of course lands it atop the Mega Top 5. Meditite is such a weird little guy, but it's full of surprises. We're rating them all, and in battle it is interesting. At first glance, its stats are pretty bad, not really shining at anything, especially considering you're stuck with this little weakling until level 37. Its fighting psychic typing is really cool though, and okay, yeah, to be fair, it does have pure power, doubling its attack stat, so that does make it actually kind of a monster in the early game. However, thanks to that aforementioned evolution level trying to cosplay as a Univamon, it is gonna be pretty awful by the time it finally evolves, and is really gonna hurt its score. 2.5 stars of battle prowess, and that's probably generous. Though it is surprisingly not as available as I thought, probably thanks to seeing it in the 2nd gym in Hoenn, but yeah, you can't actually get this thing until after the 6th gym in Hoenn, but you can get it before the 3rd in Sinnoh and the 2nd in Kalos, which, alright, yeah, fair enough, that does average out to 4 stars. Now, I do think that taking the meditative side of martial arts or even yoga as the base idea of a fighting and psychic type Pokemon is really fitting. Then you throw in inspiration from Hindu deities like Shiva, and that's a really cool concept. 4 stars. Its design though, oh my god, this little idiot looks so bad. I'm sorry, and I know that its head is supposed to be more like a turban, but that's not what it comes off as at all. It looks like a weird little garlic boy. Such a shame because the concept is so good, but god, they dropped the ball on the design. It does, however, clearly portray its fighting psychic typing, so that will save it from being like bottom of the barrel. 2 stars. And man, even the bad Hoenn Pokemon are doing pretty well. Meditite gets 3.125 stars overall. I recently discovered how crazy underrated Medicham can be. We're rating them all, and you might be saying to yourself, what are you talking about? This thing's stats are awful for a Pokemon that evolves at level 37. And well, I thought so too. Then in my recent Nuzlocke run of Diamond using only fighting types, I just completely ignored Meditite and Medicham pretty much until the end game for that reason. But once I started using it, its incredible move pool of the Elemental Punches, Drain Punch, and High Jump Kick, and of course its ability Pure Power, which doubles its attack, just completely demolishes the trainers throughout the game. Sadly, its stats still just aren't good enough for it to be all that useful in the major battles. It barely saw the field in the Elite Four. So it is a lot better than I originally gave it credit for, but it's not amazing. 3.5 stars. Its availability, I think, has to take a bit of a hit from Meditite's 4 stars for that ridiculously late evolution, and I know that it isn't much of an issue in Hoenn, but in the other games it's in, you get Meditite early, and it's ridiculous. 3.5 stars. Medicham's concept is of course similar as well, being based on the mental and meditative side of martial arts or even yoga, while visually taking inspiration from Hindu gods or maybe even Arabian belly dancers, which once again, really cool idea. 4 stars. Its design, however, has just always had me befuddled. The top half, sure, you got the Shaolin monk idea going with the dot tattoos or Jiba, maybe? I'm sorry. Great, that's really cool, but dude...
Officer, I got one question for you.
We're all thinking it, I don't need to say it, but even when I was a kid and didn't see that, I still thought it looked really stupid and lopsided. 2.5 stars, which will average out Medicham to 3.375 stars overall. Man, Megas really were a broken mechanic. Even something as unassuming as Medicham becomes a monster. We're rating them all, and its stats aren't anything impressive, especially for a Mega, until you factor in Pure Power, which, as many of you informed me on Mawile's video, doesn't just double its base attack to 200, but doubles doubles its actual attack stat. So this thing is outrageously strong, especially when you consider its great move pool with coverage, setup, recovery, and plenty of offense. Even with its pretty mid stats for a Mega, I don't see how this isn't 5 stars in battle prowess. As for availability, it'll start off at Metacham's 3.5 stars, and remember, this is compared to other Megas, and its Mega Stone is found after the 6th gym in Hoenn, which is fairly average for a Mega Stone, so it'll stay 3.5 stars. Now, Metacham already had a really cool concept, being based on the meditative side of martial arts, while taking visual inspiration from Arabian belly dancers, Shaolin monks, and even Shiva, which its Mega doesn't really stray far from, so it'll stay 4 stars. Its design, though, is a vast improvement. Sure, it still has the same negatives as Metacham, but the positives are so much greater. I love the detail of the jewelry on the Bedla-looking hips, the wrists, and what finally actually looks like a turban instead of Metatite's garlic head, as well as the additional disembodied arms, which is a common theme among Hindu deities. I think this design is way better and almost overcomes those awful design choices. 4 stars. So that does give Mega Metacham a much better 4.125 stars overall. This may be a hot take, but Electrike is by far the best in its line. We're rating them all, and its battle prowess obviously is not what I meant, but it is pretty good. 65 special attack and speed is great for the early game, and it doesn't evolve too late for it to really notice a drop off. It does fill the same role as virtually every other fast electric type, Thunder Wave, and whatever strongest electric move you have, and that's about it. It's really good at what it does, but that's about all it's got. However, it arguably should be penalized for its movesets. It doesn't get Spark until level 20 in Gen 3, and in the remakes, it doesn't get any special attacks. Yet, to be fair, you can get Thunderbolt really early in Hoenn, so it kinda balances out with the other regions, 3.5 stars. It is available before the 3rd gym in Hoenn and Kalos, yet oddly as a version exclusive in the latter, then surprisingly before the 1st gym in Galar, so it does average out to 4.5 stars for availability. Electrike's whole line, especially its Mega, is pretty directly based on the yokai Raiju. Electrike is the little electric puppy starting point, which is pretty cool, and the little guy can run faster than the human eye can follow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. 4 stars. Its design is by far my favorite in the line, though I will admit Manectric is arguably my least favorite fully evolved electric type, but we'll get there. For now, Electrike is actually pretty adorable, while also managing to pull off the feisty little pup energy. I like its color scheme and the noticeable but subtle lightning bolt pattern leading to its seemingly required spikes of an early gen electric type, though its back sprites really illustrate the problem. Its head is so bulky and awkward looking, I really don't understand what they were going for here, and it really throws off the whole design. 3.5 stars, which will land Electrike a shockingly high 3.875 stars overall. Manectric is the worst looking electric type in the first handful of generations, other than maybe its own Mega. But we're rating them all, and in battle it is at least pretty good. 105 speed and special attack is at least sufficient for an electric type, though its defenses are pretty poor. Its moveset in Gen 3 is pretty rough, but you can buy Thunderbolt pretty easily, and in the later gens it at least learns Discharge pretty early. It does get some utility and coverage, but it's really nothing too impressive. It's good. It's fine. 3.5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability will be the same 4.5 stars as Electrike, being available consistently early, and Manectric is then pretty much just literally Raiju. Its Mega really is, but Raiju is a yokai that takes the shape of a blue wolf wrapped in lightning bolts, and yeah, that sounds about right. 4 stars. God, like I said at the start, I can't stand this thing, and I never have been able to. I remember as a kid actually benching this thing because it was so ugly, and Gardevoir with Thunderbolt was better anyway. But for real, what even is this design? It has a spiky yellow hoodie mane with an ear hole. Bro's got a weird obtuse boomerang tail and random yellow spiky hip growths. I'm not even trying to be funny or contrarian here, but this is genuinely the ugliest electric type in the first 8 generations, even if it portrays the concept well-ish. 1.5 stars in design, which still gives Manectric a decent 3.375 stars overall. Mega Manectric is laughably ugly. I cannot take this thing seriously, but we're rating them all, and well, in battle, you kinda have to. Upon Mega Evolution, its stats all get quite a bit better, especially its speed and special attack, which hey, makes it a little bit better than Jolteon at least. It does also get Intimidate, which is a much better ability than Manectric's other 2 options, and it does have a pretty decent move pool, but nothing too shocking. It's really not all that special, especially for for a Mega. Hilariously, it's still not even the best Thunderbolt user in Hoenn, but it still is a fast and strong electric type, and all jokes aside, it is still really good. 4.5 stars in battle prowess. You can, however, find its Megastone before you even get the Mega Ring, so that will boost its availability up to 5 stars. The same story for Electric and Manectric, of them being quite literally just the Yokai Raiju, can be said for Mega Manectric as well. This time, like, literally that exact description, but it is still cool. 4 stars. And its design. I know I've been trashing on it quite a bit already, so I'll start with the positives. I like the balance and distribution of the color scheme much better now, and the red claws add a nice touch, but oh my god, this thing is hilariously stupid looking. If this guy falls over, it's done for. It's gonna flail around like a turtle stuck on his back, struggling to get up. I get that a blue wolf wrapped in lightning is the whole idea of its concept, but dude, this is too on the nose and looks absolutely ridiculous. It looks something like 10-year-old me would have drawn as Manectric's evolution 20 years ago. This is the worst Mega and Electric type by far. 1 star at best, which will land Mega Manectric 3.625 stars overall and a spot on the Mega's bottom 5. Thanks for the idea. Plusle and Minun are a pretty cute and fun idea for a Pika clone. We're running them all, and since they're essentially the same Pokemon, we'll look at them both. Their abilities are utterly useless unless they're in a double battle together, so that's basically a non-factor here, but their stats are surprisingly decent for how early you get them. They're physically frail, but their speed and special attack and defense are really solid at that point in the game. Plusle is of course slightly more offensive and Minun more defensive, and as I mentioned with both Electrike and even way back with Pikachu, they really just fill one role, a fast electric type with Thunder Wave. They don't do much else in Gen 3, but in the remakes they get Nasty Plot, Nuzzle, and a Baton Pass, which is actually really awesome. And because of that, I think that they're almost on par with Manectric, but not quite. 3 stars in battle prowess. They are available before the 3rd gym in Hoenn, before the 2nd in Kalos, and that's actually it, not including post-game, so it does just barely average out to 5 stars. Plusle and Minun are the first, like, official Pika clones, but we haven't forgotten about you, Pika Blue. Anyway, this might be a bit of a hot take, but I think that the concept behind Plusle and Minun is actually a step up from Pikachu. They're clearly still the same electric rodent, of course, but adding a little bit extra with that positive and negative charges with electricity, I feel is a pretty easy and obvious extra bit of detail. So they do a little bit better than Pikachu and get 3.5 stars for concept. But design is where Pikachu is obviously better. It's the most recognizable fictional character arguably ever. Though Plusle and Minun aren't a bad rendition of that by any means. They're cute. They feel more like Pichu clones if we're being honest, looking more baby-like with the stubby little arms and legs and the too big for their body ears. I've always seen Plusle in a more positive light for some reason. Maybe I just like its tail better. But either way, these are both pretty good designs. They represent the positive and negative charge thing very literally, and even the versions of its region. They aren't the best looking Pika clones, but they're solid. 3.5 stars. Which this feels wrong, but they actually get the same score as Pikachu, 3.75 stars overall. Am I losing it, or is Volbeat kinda broken? We're rating them all, and Volbeat's stats really aren't all that bad for the early game. It's surprisingly bulky and can deal some decent damage. I didn't even know Tail Glow and Signal Beam were in Gen 3 at all, I'll be totally honest. But it doesn't make any sense. Signal Beam is a bug move, which were all physical back then, and that's great for Volbeat being a physical attacker, yet Tail Glow raises its special attack by 3 stages, which is one of the most broken moves in the game, and it gets it at level 21? Why have I never used this thing before? It can even get Confuse Ray and some really nice coverage with TMs. Then in Gen 6, they even gave this thing recovery and better moves. Thankfully, its awful special attack does bring me back down to earth because it's not really gonna do much even with Tail Glow, and it'll get 3 stars in battle prowess. And its availability I can thankfully rely on the math for. It's actually the exact same as Plusle and Minun. You can get it before the 3rd gym in Hoenn, the 2nd in Kalos, and that's it. 5 stars. Then Volbeat is of course based on fireflies or Latinum bugs, and also 1950s greasers for some reason. I don't see how those two things end up on the same Pokemon, but hey, it's at least a unique idea. 3 stars. Now I'll admit I never saw the greaser thing until doing research for this video. I always thought it was just some weird firefly with a human face. I do see now with the popped collar and leather jacket look, which is admittedly hilarious, but still doesn't make this Pokemon look any good at all. It's very weird and not very appealing. 2 stars, which will land Volbeat 3.25 stars overall. Illumise is somehow worse than Volbeat in every way. We're rating them all, and its stats are once again surprisingly good. It's decently bulky and decently fast, but it's missing the 2 things that make Volbeat actually kind of decent: Tail Glow and Signal Beam. In Gen 3, its only offensive moves are Tackle and Quick Attack. Sure, you have some utility with Charm and Moonlight, and yes, it will make mildly better use of the good TMs. It has stronger base special attack, but it it doesn't have Tail Glow to set up with them, so it's just left being a bulky mon with recovery, which unless it's doing something meaningful in the meantime, isn't all that useful. 2 stars in battle prowess. Its availability is the same 5 stars though, and Illumise is similarly based on fireflies or lightning bugs, but instead of the 50s greaser idea for Volbeat, Illumise takes inspiration from flappers? That feels like something I should not say. But apparently it's just a style for women from 100 years ago, so I mean, I guess it should get the same score, but it feels way more niche. Regardless, 3 stars. But its design is so unappealing, even with this flapper idea, it never has and still doesn't read that way. I always thought it was just some ugly little butler bug, but I'll be honest, I just don't ever think about this thing. I can't even quite narrow down what's bad about it, it just doesn't look good, nor does it even look like a firefly. I'm so proud of you guys, you finally voted a Pokemon low, and I agree. I can't think of any positive aspects at all. I think this is the worst design in Hoenn, 0.5 stars, which does give Illumise 2.625 stars overall and a spot on the bottom 5. Roselia is completely overshadowed by its evolution, but it is a respectable former standalone Pokemon. We're rating them all, and even in battle, it's pretty decent. It has good special attack and decent special defense, but its speed and physical frailty definitely make it risky to use. Grass and Poison is an okay typing. It's much better for Roselia in the later gens with the physical special split making moves like Sludge Bomb and Venoshock special, and of course effectiveness against the Fairy type, but even back in Gen 3, Roselia had a good move pool. Leech Seed, Stun Spore, Magical Leaf, Giga Drain, Toxic. It was a pretty good option into Hoenn's abundant water types, especially with how crazy early you can get it across the regions. 3.5 stars in battle prowess. It's available before the 3rd gym in Hoenn, then thanks to being able to catch its baby form Badoo, you can get it before the 1st or 2nd gym in Sinnoh, Kalos, and Galar, so that easily averages out to 5 stars. And Roselia is a pretty literal representation of roses and their duality. Roses are beautiful flowers but hide sharp thorns, and Roselia has beautiful flowers and a head mounted with 3 sharp poisonous thorns. So that is a pretty direct and simple concept, but it's pretty cool, especially for a grass poison type. 3 stars. And I'll admit, before the addition of arguably my favorite grass type ever, Roserade in Gen 4, you could have convinced me Roselia just didn't exist. But since then, it has grown on me significantly. After giving it a fair shake and really looking, it's a really pretty and well done Pokemon. The roses look great, even the leaf coming down the torso doubling as a dress with shoulder pads is done really well. So though it may be somewhat forgettable, it's quietly a really good design. 4 stars, which gives Roselia 3.875 stars overall. Gulpin is such a weird little thoughtless blob, so I bet you guys just love it, don't you? We're rating them all, and it's not bad in battle. It's fairly bulky, but pure poison just isn't a very good typing, and its move pool leaves a lot to be desired. Especially in Gen 3, it isn't doing much. At least in Gen 6, Acid Spray and Toxic are fairly useful, but it's pretty meh overall. 2.5 stars in battle prowess. Gulpin is also only in a few regions. Hoenn Pokemon are shockingly exclusive, but yeah, you can get it before the 3rd gym in Hoenn and before the 2nd in Kalos, which once again barely gives this thing 5 stars. And it's apparently just a sentient stomach, maybe mixed in with Slug or RPG Slime Monster, and that's a pretty hilarious and creative idea for a poison type. Ha, see, I knew this is one of those it doesn't have any thoughts behind those eyes Pokemon that you guys just seem to love. 4 stars. But if you've been watching these for a while now, you know that those derpy Pokemon do nothing for me. I don't get it. And in Gulpin's case, it's even more apparent. At least Quagsire was kind of cute, but to be fair, there's nothing inherently bad or off-putting about Gulpin, other than its weird kissy face and hands being the exact same. But it's fine, I guess. 2.5 stars. And I can't believe it, but this little weirdo averages out to 3.5 stars overall. Okay, I'm gonna fight the temptation for the puns on this one. We're rating them all, and Swalot is okay in battle. Its stats are decent, it's bulky for sure, but it's not doing much offensively. Toxic and Body Slam are nice, but otherwise its swallowing and spitting up aren't that useful, and neither are its Sticky Hold and Liquid Ooze. I'm sorry, but come on. Okay, all jokes aside, I think it's somewhere between fine and below average. 2.5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability will stay the same as Gulpin's surprising 5 stars, and Swalot is also a sentient slime monster stomach slug thing. It's a little bit less clear than Gulpin, but all of those things are still really cool and interesting for a poison type. 4 stars. Its design, though, is kind of a mess to me. Where Gulpin was at least arguably cute to some people, Swalot is just weird. It's no longer convincingly a stomach, now just being a huge purple blob with a mustache. I don't even know what to say about this one. I don't necessarily hate it, but it's unappealing and very forgettable. 2 stars, which will give Swalot 3.375 stars overall. Carvanha is such a cool first stage Pokemon. We're rating them all, and holy cow, this thing is the epitome of glass cannon. Its offenses and speed are pretty amazing for the early game, but 20 defenses? That's insane. That's the 4th lowest defense stat of any Pokemon. So yes, it's very strong, but you have to be very careful. And what makes it even worse is that in Gen 3, both of its stab types were special, so its best offensive moves were fairly crippled. Thankfully, that gets fixed in later gens with a physical special split, and its moveset is vastly improved. Regardless, I feel like the highest I can give it is 3 stars in battle prowess. And as for availability, it's actually locked behind the Good Rod in Hoenn and Kalos, so after the 5th and 3rd gyms respectively, but then not until Pony Island in Alola, so that will drop its average down to 3 stars, which I'm pretty sure is the lowest availability in Hoenn so far. Though I love Carvanha, its concept isn't all that special. It's pretty much just literally a piranha with the vicious side of them played up a bit for its dark typing, which is at least a really cool and fitting idea for a water dark type. 3 stars. Its design, however, is absolutely incredible. It really pushes the limits of how cool and edgy you can make a first stage evolution without losing that feel. The color scheme is vibrant and eye-catching. The eyes, the teeth, and the fins all play into and portray the aggressive shredder of a fish idea perfectly. I honestly think this is peak design. 5 stars, which lands Carvanha a decent 3.5 stars overall. Sharpedo is awesome, but just feels incomplete. We're rating them all, and its stats are definitely interesting. 120 attack is insane, along with 95 speed and special attack, but those defenses are among the worst for any fully evolved Pokemon. As I went over with Carvanha, it got a lot better after the physical special split. In Gen 3, all water and dark moves were special, which means Sharpedo's 120 attack was basically a non-factor. 95 special attack is good, but still. Thankfully in Gen 6 that changes, and Sharpedo gets a great move pool along with it. Physical Crunch, Ice Fang, Aqua Jet, Waterfall, and TMs like Earthquake, it can absolutely sweep for you, but you have to be careful. 4 stars. Its availability will start at Carvanha's 3 stars, and I considered giving it a buff for its quick evolution, but I don't think that it's quite early enough for that to be fair. 3 stars. Though its concept is for sure a step up. Sharpedo is pretty clearly a shark torpedo, which may be simple, but is really cool. It's also just an easy line to draw that connects well. This thing can swim at 75 miles per hour and can tear through a super tanker. This is honestly one of the coolest water type ideas, especially with how it looks ripping through the water in Alola. 5 stars. And its design is so close to being one of my favorites. It carries over the awesome, edgy, vicious aspects of Carvanha, but now on a shark, which is definitely cooler. But the big issue that many people, including me, have with this thing is the fact that it's just half a shark. I get where they're coming from, it's the warhead of the torpedo, but I don't get why it's just the warhead. Torpedoes are long, sharks are long. If they would have made Sharpedo long with a tail, it probably would have been my favorite Pokemon of all time. But that one pretty major downside holds it back enough to prevent it from being 5 stars. It'll get 4.5 stars in design, which means it also falls short of the top 5 with the final score of 4.125 stars. Mega Sharpedo is both ridiculous and awesome at the same time. We're rating them all, and thankfully in battle is where it's awesome. It still has and improves upon Sharpedo's great attack, special attack, and speed. But more importantly, it patches up what were horrible defenses. It's still no tank by any means, but it is at least much less risky to use, letting you take better advantage of its great move pool like Waterfall, Aqua Jet, Ice Fang, and Crunch. Oh, and the latter two now get buffed even further by its ability Strong Jaw. Those improvements are exactly what Sharpedo needed to push it up to being 5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability though may be compared to other megas, but even in that case, it's locked behind the postgame in both of the Hoenn remake versions, so that will cause it to take a big hit and drop its score down to 1 star. Sharpedo's concept as a shark torpedo was already really awesome, but then upon mega evolution, some of its teeth transform into retractable spines on the side of its face that can pop out upon impact. That's pretty brutal, but it will stay 5 stars. Though as cool as that may sound, it looks really dumb. The mega evolution not only didn't give us what we all wanted, a tail for this poor guy, but instead covered it in yellow finger paint that supposedly scars and gave it a bigger, longer snout. I mean, as a whole, it's still a pretty cool Pokemon, but it's also just ridiculous and silly and a definite downgrade from Sharpedo. I think this is a 3-star design. So that will give Mega Sharpedo 3.5 stars overall and a spot on the Mega's bottom 5. Wailmer is such a fun Pokemon. We're rating them all, and in battle, I'll admit, I struggle to find the balance on what number of HP makes up for paper-thin defenses, though it is also a lot stronger and faster than I was expecting. Its move pool is decent even in Gen 3 with just Surf, Ice Beam, and Rollout shenanigans. Then in the newer gens, you have the great additions of Body Slam and Heavy Slam. And I gotta say, I'm pleasantly surprised with the little guy. I don't think I've ever actually used it other than just grinding it up to evolve, which to be fair is to level 40, so it is gonna struggle towards the end there. I think 3.5 stars in battle prowess is fair. As for availability, it is gonna be locked behind either the Good Rod or Surf in most regions, which does range anywhere from right after the 3rd gym in Kalos all the way to after the 7th in Galar, so it will just barely average out to 3 stars. Then Wailmer is of course based on a whale and mixed a bit with a beach ball, which is at least pretty funny, 3 stars. But its design falls into 2 categories that you guys seem to love but don't do much for me. Wailmer is both just a little guy and is pretty derpy with no thoughts behind its eyes, which like I said, I'm normally not a big fan of, but for some reason with Wailmer it just works. It is absolutely adorable with the big round belly and little fins, as well as turning the bristly whale teeth into a human-like smile is pretty funny. I think Wailmer is hilariously cute, 4 stars, which does average out to give Wailmer 3.375 stars overall. Wailord used to feel so epic and almost like a creature of legend for me for some reason. We're rating them all, and Wailord, oh sorry, let me back it up. Wailord has an interesting stat spread with 170 HP and only 45 in defenses. It does have the same speed as Wailmer, which I think is pretty interesting, but its 90s and its attack stats are also really solid. If you somehow manage to move first with Wailord, it's gonna do some insane damage with Water Spout. But even if not, it has a great move pool with Surf, Ice Beam, Amnesia, and Rest. Not to mention its physical options like Body Slam, Heavy Slam, Earthquake, and Giga Impact. Like I said with Wailmer, I struggled to find the balance of how much HP makes up for low defenses, but Wailord can be pretty awesome. 4 stars in battle prowess. As for availability, we do have to look at its level 40 evolution, but I don't think that it should constitute a penalty here just because usually you're gonna find your Wailmer around level 30 anyway, so it isn't too much of a grind. It'll stay Wailmer's 3 stars. Wailord being based on a massive blue whale as well as a blimp is a nice progression from Wailmer's little beach ball whale, and I think it is a really cool idea, especially with how buoyant it looks in modern games and its dex entries talking about how not only it can leap out of the water, but it can also dive 10,000 feet deep. 3.5 stars. And like I said at the start, for some reason when I was a kid, I saw Wailord as this epic sought-after creature of legend. I don't know why, but that nostalgic feeling has stuck with me. Though even without that, Wailord still has a great design. It's very simple and straightforward, it's clearly a big blimp whale, but those two things go together so well and make the design so seamless that I think it looks great. 4 stars. So that will inflate Wailord's final score up to 3.625 stars. Numel is surprisingly undervalued in a playthrough. We're rating them all, and firstly, its typing is really cool. Fire and ground are both great offensively, and it leaves it with only 2 weaknesses, granted, one being a quad weakness. Its 60s in its attacks and HP are really nice too, but its speed and defenses always make it feel a little bit less reliable. In Gen 3, its move pool may be pretty bad, but being able to buy Flamethrower early makes this little guy a monster. Then in Gen 6, its move pool is just way better on its own. Not to mention its new ability Simple, which along with Amnesia and Curse, makes Numel actually really broken at that point in the game. So in spite of its stats, Numel is awesome. 4 stars in battle prowess. In Hoenn, you can get it before the 4th gym, but in Unova, it isn't available until after the 6th and as a version exclusive. And that's actually it, not including post-game or Paldea's open world, so that averages out to 3 stars. Numel is based on a camel, as well as an active or future volcano. I'm not sure on the verbiage here, but it's a caldera? Is that it? I don't know. It's a volcano baby camel that hasn't erupted yet, okay? And that's an awesome concept. 4 stars. Its design I don't think is all that appealing, but it does a good job of portraying that idea, with the camel's hump almost looking like a grassy mountaintop with an unsuspecting cauldron of magma within. This is another one of the it's just a derpy little guy Pokemon, and this one I don't think looks bad by any means. Numel is fairly cute, but it's not some incredible looking design. It's pretty good. 3.5 stars, landing Numel the final score of 3.625 stars overall. Camerupt has always felt underwhelming to use. We're rating them all, and I do really like its fire and ground typing. It's fun to use offensively and not bad defensively. Its move pool is pretty solid in Gen 3 with Flamethrower, Rock Slide, and Earthquake. Then in Gen 6, it gets quite a few upgrades like Earth Power, Curse, Yawn, Will-O-Wisp, Rock Polish, Flash Cannon, which can make Camerupt pretty dangerous. However, its stats just aren't that great. It's another slow, frail well, HOENN Mixed Attacker. 100 in its attack stats are pretty solid, but not amazing, so you'll probably miss the one-shot on some of the bulkier opponents, which is really dangerous considering its lack of speed and defenses, especially considering it loses Numel's simple ability upon evolution. I think proportionately to when you would use it, Camerupt doesn't have as much success. 3.5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability will stay the same as Numel's though at 3 stars, then Camerupt is similarly based on a camel, but this time the heavier coated and twin humped variant, along with the dormant volcanoes now becoming active and even erupting from its humps when enraged. Once again, really cool. 4 stars. Its design is pretty cool though, if not a bit goofy. It's a lovable round guy with a funny face. Sure, the volcanoes on its back look goofy and clearly stand out, but it works, doubling as the camel's humps. I honestly can't narrow down why I like this design. It's not amazing by any means, but it's good. 4 stars, which gives Camerupt 3.65 stars overall. Camerupt really went from mid to absolutely broken with its mega evolution. We're rating them all, and just look at this thing. 145 special attack, great physical attack, and really solid defenses. Then you look at its ability Sheer Force, boosting its already awesome moves like Flamethrower, Earth Power, and Rock Slide by an additional 30%. I don't care that this thing is slow and has a quad weakness, it's an absolute monster. 5 stars in battle prowess. Yet, sadly, similarly to Sharpedo, its Mega Stone is locked behind the post game, so even compared to other Megas, that's gonna drop its availability pretty considerably down to 1 star. Its concept doesn't change much from Camerupt. If anything, it's the climax of the volcano story, going from the dormant Numel to the active Camerupt and now erupting in its mega form. So it's still awesome and still 4 stars. Its design though is super goofy. Why is it smiling like that? The volcano looks cool for sure, but way too on the nose in my opinion, and not even to mention the literal M for Team Magma on its face. It also just looks nothing like a camel anymore, though I guess Camerupt really didn't either, but now it really looks more like a woolly bovine or a yak or something. It doesn't look bad, but it's very unserious. 2.5 stars, which lands Mega Camerupt 3.125 stars overall, the lowest mega score so far. Torkoal has gained a lot of popularity and prominence lately. We're rating them all, and way back in Gen 3, 23 years ago, it was still really good. It was one of the bulkiest physical tanks in HOENN with 140 defense and a respectable 85 in both attacks. Its move pool was really good with Flamethrower, Body Slam, Toxic, Curse, Amnesia, and Iron Defense. Torkoal had options on how to be a total problem and a solid member of your team. And that was just with White Smoke as its ability, which is nice, but nowhere near as good as its ability in Gen 7 onward, Drought, which immediately makes its offenses and defenses against water types way better. So along with the additions of Solar Beam, Will-O-Wisp, and Bulldoze, I mean, this thing is a monster. I think it's clearly 5 stars in the modern games, but not quite in the older ones, so it'll get 4.5 stars in battle prowess. As for availability, you can get it before the 4th gym in both HOENN and Galar, but not until after the 7th in Kalos and not until Ula Ula on Alola. So that averages out to 3 stars. I do think it's funny that Torkoal, the tortoise who's basically a little coal oven, whose dex entries talk about coal and black smoke constantly, had the ability White Smoke. Not that it matters, but still, it's funny. Either way, it's a really cool idea for a Pokemon. 4 stars. Its design is another case of wholly 3D downgrade. In the 2D games, it had a look of almost anger or menace with the eyes, the pose, and the billowing smoke coming from its nostrils. It was far from one of my favorites, but it looked really good. Then in 3D, look what they did to our boy. He's just kinda standing there, swaying like every other 3D model. But all jokes aside, it is a really good design that nails its simple yet interesting concept. 4 stars. So all of that boils down to 3.875 stars overall for Torkoal. You guys have been doubting Spoink and Grumpig for far too long. We're rating them all, and if you look at this little guy's stats, it's way better than you'd expect. Obviously, don't send it in on a physical attacker, but otherwise it's way stronger, bulkier, and faster than you'd think. Just give a little guy Side Beam, Confuse Ray, maybe Shockwave, and Psychic, and it's actually really good. Not to mention Thick Fat giving it 2 extra resistances for its already good psychic typing. If only you found Spoink a bit earlier in HOENN, it would be so much better. 3.5 stars in battle prowess. And as I just said, it isn't available in HOENN until right before the 4th gym, but then before the 2nd in Kalos, yet sadly not until after the 6th in Unova and as a version exclusive. So that really hurts its score, bringing it down to 3.5 stars for availability. And the ideas behind Spoink are so cool. It seems to get its base inspiration from this Bible verse, which talks about not giving pearls to pigs and it goes way deeper than that, but regardless, even outside of that, a little piglet whose bottom half is a spring that has to keep bouncing to live, and it uses its pearls to amplify its psychic powers. Honestly, even without the biblical reference, that's so unique and creative. That's a 5-star concept. I can't believe it, but the tables have turned. For once, I think you guys undervoted Spoink's design. And here I am defending one of the "it's just a little guy" Pokemon. But I mean, come on, look at it. Spoink is absolutely adorable. The little rosy cheeks and pearl go so well with the darker gray coloring, then its stubby little arms and pig nose, absolutely adorable. Spoink is disrespectfully underrated, but still not quite top tier. 4 stars, which will spring Spoink all the way up to 4 stars overall. Grumpig is both way better than you'd think and also really disappointing. We're rating them all, and in battle is where it is an absolute sleeper of a Pokemon. I never thought much of it. I thought it was just filler, but in my most recent streams I used one and it was awesome. I mean, look at its stats: 90 special attack, 110 special defense, and 80s in both HP and speed. Why is this pick so fast? I don't know, but it's shockingly awesome. In Gen 3 it's solid with just Confuse Ray, Psychic, Calm Mind, and Rest. Then in Gen 6 you had all sorts of coverage and support with Power Gem, Psyshock, Shadow Ball, Energy Ball, Thunder Wave, and more. This pig is so much better than I thought. 4 stars in battle prowess. Its availability will also be 3.5 stars, just like Spoink, though its concept really starts to lose me. Spoink's was 5 stars as it's amazing, but Grumpig loses the whole half pig, half spring thing that made it so unique. Now it's just a psychic pig that dances, which is still cool, I suppose, and to be fair, it still does take inspiration from that Bible verse and even a Japanese proverb, which is still as a whole really cool, but is for sure a downgrade. 4 stars. And its design is also sadly pretty disappointing. Spoink was absolutely adorable and super unique, then Grumpig is a lot. I do really like the whole black pearl thing, along with giving it the black fur, skin, whatever, that looks cool, but the spring tail just seems completely random and misproportioned now, not to mention Grumpig isn't grumpy at all, and its whole face and head area is just weird. I can't put my finger on it, but this whole design really loses me. It's a huge downgrade. 2 stars. So that gives Grumpig the final score of 3.375 stars overall. Spinda is actually crazy good. We're rating them all, and I gotcha, didn't I? That's obviously not true. Spot Panda? Nah, clearly Trash Panda. I mean, sure, its 60s across the board are decent right when you catch it, and its move pool has its uses with Dizzy Punch and Teeter Dance, but considering this thing doesn't evolve at all, it's clearly going to be completely and utterly outclassed later on. There's no reason to keep this thing on your team. 1.5 stars in battle prowess. Though you can get it before the 4th gym in HOENN and on the 1st island in Alola, but then in Kalos they relegated it to after the 8th gym for some reason. But that is before the post game, so that will drop its availability down to 3.5 stars. Then Spinda is kind of vaguely a panda or rabbit stuffed animal creature, though its 2 notable features, its spots and swirls, seem to just be an original idea. I don't see any reference anywhere for the spots other than them all being unique, and the whole dizzy eyes and stumbling seems random. The only tidbit we get is in Sun, where it at least explains that Spinda thinks it's walking straight. I don't know, sure it's original, but it seems to be lacking any identity? I don't know if that's the right word, but either way, it just isn't all that interesting. 2.5 stars. And yes, as we all know, every Spinda has a unique pattern of spots, which is fairly cool, but outside of that little tidbit, its design as a whole is just very blah. It barely even looks like a Pokemon in my opinion. Then you have the Jigglypuff doodles for eyes and ears, and it just looks pretty dumb if we're being honest. Maybe this is harsh, but Spinda just does absolutely nothing for me. I vote Spinda and Jinx are the first 2 Pokemon we kick from the decks if we have to downsize. 1 star. Which means Spinda stumbles all the way down to 2.125 stars overall and is the worst HOENN Pokemon so far. Oh boy, we're finally at one of the best evolution lines in HOENN. We're rating them all, and Trapinch is disappointingly bad in battle. Sure, 100 attack is pretty insane for an unevolved Pokemon, but between its 10 speed and obvious frailty, it's pretty hard to actually use. Ground is a good typing for sure, but back in Gen 3, its move pool was horrible. Sure, you would at least have Dig, but still. In the newer gens, getting Physical Bite, Crunch, and Bulldoze is a huge improvement, but even with those moves, having to deal with these stats all the way until level 35 is just not fun. 2 stars in battle prowess. You can get it before the 5th gym in HOENN, then before the 4th in Unova, Kalos, and Galar, but all the way on Ula Ula in Alola, which just barely rounds it down to 3.5 stars for availability. Trapinch is pretty directly based on the larval stage of real-life antlions, as well as maybe some cartoony bear trap or even chain chomp ideas, but both have big scary jaws, dig traps in the sand, then trap and pinch. I don't understand how this little guy isn't bug ground, but either way, it's a solid concept. 3.5 stars. Now, its design may not be amazing, amazing or anything, but I do think that it's a successfully cartoony and maybe even kind of cute version of the antlion larval stage. Which, Jesus, that is impressive that they made this little guy out of that horror show. 3 stars. So I guess Trapinch is actually pretty mid. It gets an even 3 stars overall. I think Vibrava was honestly unnecessary and kind of forgettable. We're rating them all, and in battle, it's not that good. 70 attack and speed is decent in the early to mid game, but not until level 45 when this thing evolves. Though to be fair, Ground Dragon is an awesome typing with 2 immunities thanks to its ability Levitate, though its move pool even in the newer gens isn't amazing, and it was actually really bad back in Gen 3. Vibrava is fine, but it's definitely outclassed at the levels you would use it. 2.5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability will stay 3.5 stars from Trapinch, though its concept is where I feel like it doesn't make sense in its evolution line. It seems to be based on an adult antlion as well as sand dragons or dragonflies, which so is Flygon, who is just bigger and better in every way. I think they should have just done away with Vibrava and given Trapinch and Flygon the Magikarp to Gyarados arc. But either way, Vibrava's concept is still cool, especially with the addition of the whole vibrations aspect. 4 stars. I don't think it's a hot take to say that Vibrava is clearly the worst design in its line, right? It's really just not all that appealing. This is very much one of the it's just a bug Pokemon. Its one defense is that it does look like a nice progression to Flygon with the polygonal wings and tail, I don't know what the horn things are called, but you know what I'm saying. I don't really have strong feelings either way with this one. It's okay. 2.5 stars, which will give Vibrava 3.125 stars overall. Flygon is one of the biggest what could have been Pokemon ever.
We're rating them all, and Flygon is my special baby boy. For battle prowess, listen. Flygon's going to be useful in any playthrough of your game. Ground type, one of the best in the game. Dragon type, one of the best types in the game. Quad weak to ice, don't worry about it. It can learn fire moves to take care of ice Pokemon. With Levitate and ground type, it's got 2 immunities.
It could have or should have been a pseudo-legend, but its stats just don't quite cut it. It is still awesome though, with 100 speed and attack along with 80 and everything else, on top of its already really strong and diverse move pool.
And fun fact, Sugimori himself said he wanted to give Flygon a Mega Evolution, so hopefully we get one in Legend ZA.
Though even without a Mega, it is going to be consistently great, but not quite dominant. 4.5 stars in battle prowess. Then its availability will start at the same 3.5 stars as its pre-evolutions, but having to drag your pretty weak Vibrava all the way to level 45, which is pushing endgame, will bring it down to 3 stars.
Okay, its concept is undeniably good. It's based on the life cycle of an antlion. These are sometimes given the nickname Sand Dragon, hence its dragon type. Some say it should have been given Bug type, which would be very cool. However, given how important sand is to its Pokedex and its lore, I just couldn't imagine it giving up ground type.
So you couple that with the singing of its winds kicking up sandstorms and folk tales along with it, and yeah, that's a 5-star concept.
And its design, get out of here. I love it when Pokemon evolve and look totally different in each stage. Flygon does this beautifully while still holding true to its real-life inspiration. One really clever aspect of its design that I love is that it has these red goggle-like structures on its eyes, not only to resemble the eyes of an adult sand lion, but also because, hey, if you're flying through a sandstorm, you're gonna want protection for your eyes.
What's even funnier is that those eyes have what's called pseudo-pupils, just to rub in our face even more that Flygon is not a pseudo-legend. But all jokes aside, Flygon is one of the most popular Pokemon ever, and I absolutely see why. It is so unique and interesting, and just looks so awesome, easily a 5-star design. Which, oh no, that only gives Flygon 4.375 stars overall, so it just barely misses out on the top 5.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Oh look, another slow, frail Hoenn mixed attacker. We're rating them all, and Cacnea is yet another example of Hoenn's obsession with that archetype. 85 in both attacks is actually pretty nuts for a first stage Pokemon, but this is what we're talking about. It's so slow and so frail. In the remakes, its move pool is pretty nice with Leech Seed, Needle Arm, and Feint Attack, but in Gen 3, its best grass move is Absorb. So it may not be horrible, but it's definitely not great. 2.5 stars in battle prowess. Then it's actually only available in Hoenn, not including post-game or Paldea's open world, and once again, we don't judge the Pokemon on games they're not in, we just measure how much of the game they're available for the games they are in. And in Hoenn, it's available after the 4th gym, so that's 3.5 stars. And I think Cacnea's concept is actually really cool. It's a fun spin on making a cactus into a jack-o'-lantern who uses its flower to draw in prey and then shoots them with its thorns? That's an awesome idea for a grass dark type. 4 stars. And similarly, I think it's a really good design that clearly portrays its concept as well as being fairly cute and charming. I like how they utilize the spikes to make the little legs, as well as the clubs for arms, and even add to the crown look with the flower. Really, this is a quietly great design. 4 stars, which will give Cacnea 3.5 stars overall. Cacturn is such a downgrade of an evolution. We're rating them all, and in battle it is yet another slow, frail mixed attacker with a whopping 115 in both attack stats, but nothing good at all otherwise. Grass Dark is a really cool and fun type, but it has a lot of weaknesses, and back in Gen 3, both of those types moves were special, which means Cacturn's great attack stat was basically useless and just for show. Now that does improve later on with the physical special split and the addition of moves like Sucker Punch especially, and the fact that Cacturn gets both Leech Seed and Swords Dance is the only reason that it isn't much worse here, but still 3 stars in battle prowess. Availability will stay the same at Cacnea's 3.5 stars, and its concept also doesn't seem to change a whole lot, though I did incorrectly call Cacnea a Grass Dark type last time. I'm gonna be honest, I had no idea it was pure grass, but thankfully upon evolution, Cacturn is indeed a Grass Dark type, which is such a cool typing for a jack-o'-lantern cactus ambush predator. 4 stars. Its design though is absolutely a direct downgrade. Where Cacnea had quite a bit of charm and character, Cacturn is just a humanoid cactus with a hat. To be fair, the head and face actually look really awesome, but everything else neck down is just a guy in a cactus. No detail or anything remotely interesting. So overall, it isn't a bad design. It has some positives, but it's really not great. 2.5 stars. So that does land Cacturn 3.25 stars overall. Swablu was done so unnecessarily dirty. We're rating them all, and it could have been pretty decent in battle with its solid defenses for a first stage Pokemon if they didn't do like everything they could to make it bad. Not only is this little guy a mid-game encounter, but also they gave it a fairly late evolution and just slapped on a basically useless move pool even in the remakes. Poor guy had some potential, but was just thrown into the dirt. You're gonna struggle to do pretty much anything with Swablu. 1 star in battle prowess. And as I said, it is a mid-game encounter, but you can technically get it before the 4th gym in Hoenn, though not until after the 5th in Sinnoh, so that'll average out to 3.5 stars. Its concept goes way deeper than I was expecting though. I thought it was just a dumb little cloud bird, but no, it's actually a really cool iteration of the Chinese folktale, the Cowherd and the Weaver Girl, where a flock of magpies forms a bridge to reunite forbidden lovers, which is so adorable. 4.5 stars. Its design though really isn't all that special. It's a fairly cute little bird, and the cloud wings are at least a nice touch. It may be a bit plain, but it's pretty good. 3 stars. So that will land Swablu an even 3 stars overall. Underestimate Altaria at your own risk. We're rating them all, and its stats are fairly unassuming. It's decently bulky, but its attack and speed are pretty mediocre. But I think we've all been crushed by Winona's dragon dancing earthquake menace of a fluffy bird. Altaria is awesome in spite of its stats, thanks not only to it gaining the dragon typing upon evolution with the resistances, but mainly due to its move pool. Getting Dragon Dance at level 40 in Gen 3, then even earlier in Gen 6, then just throw on Aerial Ace and Earthquake, and as you'll see in my next Nuzlocke video, this thing sweeps. 4.5 stars in battle prowess. Availability will be the same 3.5 stars as Swablu, and its concept takes the same awesome inspiration from it as well with the Chinese folktale of the Cowherd and the Weaver Girl, but it also adds on additional layers of other Chinese legends of giant birds and dragons. Easily 5 stars. And its design is pretty wonderful. It is sadly another chapter in the story of 3D downgrades. In Gen 3 and 5, it looks so majestic and powerful floating around in its little cloud. But in 3D, I know that this is what the wings have always been, and I don't dislike it, but it just takes all of the life and character away. But either way, amazing design, just not quite in that upper echelon. 4.5 stars, which lands Altaria 4.375 stars overall, just barely not in the top 5. Mega Altaria is a perfect example of what a Mega should be. We're rating them all, and what I mean is that Altaria was already a popular Pokemon, but it wasn't super weak, and it also wasn't already broken. So then you give it that Mega Evolution to finally give it that power it deserves. And Dragon Fairy is not only an awesome typing stylistically, but it's also just really great in game. Its stats aren't even that crazy, especially for a Mega. They're just really good across the board. But you couple that with its incredible ability as well as its amazing move pool, and you have yourself 5 stars battle round. As for availability, its Megastone isn't available until after the 6th gym, which is a little late for a Mega, but I think 3.5 stars is still fair. Its concept, though, is great. It starts from the already awesome ideas of Altaria being based off of Chinese dragon deities that float on clouds, as well as giant birds and other really adorable folktales. Then upon Mega Evolution, it seems to lean more heavily into the deity or even fae side of things that has always made more sense for this line anyway, and I'm glad they finally gave it the fairy type to match that. 5 stars. Its design is really good for sure. It capitalizes on the whole it's a being that's floating in the clouds idea, and the tail makes it look powerful, though I do think that it just looks worse than Altaria. It loses that majestic feeling and just feels a bit more silly with the grandma hat and the cotton candy clouds. It's still awesome, don't get me wrong, but not quite as good. 4 stars, which actually gives it 4.375 stars overall, the same score as Altaria, and not quite in the Mega Top 5. Okay, I won't lie, Zangoose is a lot better than I thought. We're rating them all, and its speed and attack are surprisingly high, though it is fairly frail, but still. Its ability is interesting, but it isn't realistically gonna do much, and hold on, this thing gets Swords Dance at level 10 in Gen 3? Excuse me? Even with just Slash, that's insane. In Gen 6, they did give it Hone Claws instead, and then pushed its plethora of broken moves into the later game, but it was still pretty awesome. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think Zangoose is 4 stars in battle prowess. You can get Zangoose before the 4th gym in Hoenn, but as a version exclusive, then before the 6th in Unova, and before the 2nd in Kalos, and not as a version exclusive thanks to Hordes. So its availability will actually average out to 4 stars. Then Zangoose is the cat ferret Pokemon, which is funny since it's quite literally based off of a mongoose, which is best known for its ability to hunt and take down venomous snakes, which may not be a super interesting concept on its own, but considering how it's implemented within the game with the rivalry between it and Seviper, with details all the way down to its ability, makes it a lot better than surface value. 4 stars. And its design has always been awesome, that one is not a surprise. It and Absol were the absolute kings of the edgelords back in the day, but all jokes aside, it does look really good. The plain white coat along with the red slashing scars across its body and face to match the color of Seviper's fangs is an incredible detail. So that along with its huge sharp claws really nails the intimidating and unbothered hunter look. 4.5 stars. So that does give Zangoose a nice 4.125 stars overall. The Seviper-Zangoose rivalry has always felt a bit one-sided. We're rating them all, and to be fair, Seviper is still really cool in its own right, though sadly it is yet another slow, frail Hoenn mixed attacker. I really don't get why they did this to so many Pokemon, but in Seviper's case, at least I can see why. I'm sure they were trying to let it make use of its biting moves since they were all dark type moves back then, which were all special in Gen 3. And to be fair, even back then, it did have a decent move pool with Glare for support, which then of course gets much better in Gen 6, where it's actually pretty awesome. But I think its stat spread just holds it back from being really good. 3.5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability though is of course the exact same as Zangoose at 4 stars, and you can't talk about Seviper's concept without Zangoose. Sure, on the surface it's just a snake, but it is the equal and opposite side of the rivalry coin with Zangoose. And the way that they were designed and implemented alongside of each other within the games is great. 4 stars. Its design is also really cool. It looks like the cunning snake that is pitted against the anti-hero mongoose. The gold patterns are a bit confusing and seem out of place, but they still look cool, and the same goes for its knife tail. It looks awesome, but I don't really see why it's there. The purple scars, however, are amazing. In case you didn't notice, at least back in the Gen 3 sprites, Zangoose and Seviper's scars matched the colors of its rival's fangs or claws, which is an amazing detail. So as a whole, Seviper is still a really cool design, but not quite as good. 4 stars, which will land Seviper 3.875 stars overall, a bit lower than Zangoose. Lunatone and Solrock are so unique, yet so underwhelming. We're rating them all, and you'd think that the Pokemon based off of the Moon and the Sun would be legendary, or at least mythical, but no. You get a 460 base stat total, take it or leave it. Its HP and special attack are pretty good, but were actually worse before Gen 7, and otherwise it's just mid. Rock Psychic is similarly a really interesting typing, but also just not great and has too many weaknesses. And its move pool sadly isn't anything special either, though at least it can take advantage of Calm Mind and Psychic, unlike Solrock. 3 stars in battle prowess. Its availability ranges from as early as the 2nd gym in Kalos to after the 6th in Galar, and it's a version exclusive in a few of them, so it averages out to 3.5 stars. Then Lunatone and Solrock as a pair are clearly the Sun and Moon, but put into play as more of a possible meteorite creature with psychic powers. And other than that, there is a shockingly small amount of anything about these guys. They had such a fun starting point, and even had the game's Pokemon Sun and Moon that they did nothing with. Though at the very least, some cultures have seen the Moon as a source of mystical or psychic powers, so it works. 3.5 stars. And its design isn't bad by any means, though yes, it is simple, but that's not always a bad thing. The red eyes are a really nice touch that play into the mystical, creepy being thing, and I do like the smooth contrast to Solrock's rough design, but it's nothing too special. 3.5 stars, which will end up giving Lunatone 3.25 stars overall. Solrock is pretty cool, but disappointing. We're rating them all, and as we mentioned with Lunatone, its rock psychic typing is interesting stylistically, but just isn't great. And sadly, neither are Solrock's stats. It's just the physical inverse of Lunatone, which is just worse because it can't take advantage of Calm Mind and Psychic. It does get some fun TMs, but you really can't do much with them, as we painfully learned in our last Nuzlocke. Sadly, it's just pretty mid. 2.5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability, though, is of course the exact same as Lunatone, so 3.5 stars. And it is also very similar in terms of concept, where Lunatone was a moon-like meteorite creature, Solrock is the sun version of the same. Though this time I do feel like they drew some inspiration from, I believe it was the Mayans or Aztecs who believed staring into the sun granted you these powers, which is cool. 3. 3.5 stars, which they do make a really nice nod to in the design with the squinting eyes on Solrock, but otherwise it's just once again a fairly plain and simple rock stylized as a sun creature. It's not bad by any means, but it's nothing special either. 3.5 stars, which will end up giving Solrock 3.25 stars overall. Barboach and Whiscash are so unassuming, but are surprisingly interesting. We're rating them all, and sadly, in battle is not where this little guy shines. Its stats are just mid across the board, really not good, especially considering it doesn't evolve until level 30. Though Water Ground is an incredible typing with only one weakness, its move pool leaves a lot to be desired in Gen 3, but is pretty solid in the remakes with Mud Bomb and Water Pulse. But let's be honest, you're not really going to use this much at all before it evolves. 2 stars in battle prowess. And it's actually in a shocking amount of regions, and its availability ranges from before in the first gym in Galar till being locked behind either Surf or a certain rod in most other games, but it actually averages out to 4 stars. Though its concept is where this line really shines. On the surface, it may just be a little loach catfish, but its main inspiration is the dragon-like catfish in Japanese mythology, Namazu, which causes earthquakes. And it learning moves like Future Sight and Dragon Dance, as well as the ability Anticipation, just alludes to it even further. It may be a fairly direct translation, but I love mythology concepts. 5 stars. But its design just really drops the ball. Obviously, it portrays that concept better once it evolves, but for now, this is literally just a loach. Granted, it's a fairly cute little guy in its own little way with its little eyes and mouth. Simple isn't always a bad thing, but boring is. 2.5 stars, which will land Barboach 3.375 stars overall. Whiscash needs an evolution or something. It's so awesome, but not very good. We're rating them all, and sure, its water ground typing is incredible, albeit outshined by the goat of Hoenn, and its move pool is really good, even back in Gen 3, with just Surf, Earthquake, Ice Beam, and Amnesia or Rest. But its stats just don't hold up. Yes, it has good HP, but otherwise it's just mid across the board, hence why I say it needs an evolution. This would be a great middle evolution. It has the ingredients to be awesome, just not the numbers. 3.5 stars battle prowess. It is once again available in a surprising amount of games with varying points that you can find it, but it averages out to 4 stars in availability. And its concept is so cool. Its inspiration is pretty directly taken from the Japanese dragon-like catfish of legend, Namazu, who is most known for predicting or even causing earthquakes, which is even more evident when you look at Whiscash's ability, Anticipation, as well as its moves Dragon Dance and Future Sight. I love it. Give our boy an evolution. 5 stars. Its design is yet another reason why I say that. This would be an incredible looking middle stage evolution, but it is fairly underwhelming as a fully evolved Pokemon. As most of you know, I'm usually not a fan of the dopey looking Pokemon, but that's not the case here. I think it fits Whiscash really well. I just wish there was more to it. I love the color scheme and the W for Wumbo, but as a whole, I think it just needs more. 3.5 stars. But still, that gives Whiscash the final score of 4 stars overall. Corphish really pushes the boundary on how simple a Pokemon can be while still looking good. We're rating them all, and in battle it has 2 very different stories, similar to Krabby if you've been around for that long. In Gen 3 itself, Corphish is awful. Sure, its physical attack and defense are pretty solid actually, but before the physical special split, all water moves were special, so Corphish's only attack even really worth using was Vice Grip, so yeah, that sucks. It is notably better in the newer generations, but surprisingly still not that great. 2 stars in battle prowess. Though like most water Pokemon, it is in a bunch of regions, with its availability ranging from before the first gym in Galar all the way to basically endgame in Alola, but that will average out to 3.5 stars. And its concept is so much cooler than you'd think. I'm just kidding. This is literally just an anime crayfish, guys. That's 1 star. Its design, though, may be very simple, but is absolutely adorable and packs so much personality. This one may be heavily carried by the anime, I'll admit, but I've always loved Corphish. I mean, it's the ruffian Pokemon. You can just tell it's a feisty little guy. It even has the why I oughta pose and everything. Corphish is great, but we do have to be fair. 3.5 stars. Which, oh no, that gives Corphish 2.5 stars overall and a spot on the bottom 5. Crawdaunt may have the biggest glow up from its first appearance to its most recent, other than maybe Azumarill. We're rating them all, and in battle, Crawdaunt is yet another slow Hoenn mixed attacker. Kinda, its physical attack is much better, and at least it does have decent defense, but still. But its main talking point is how actually bad it was in Gen 3, since all of both of its type's moves were special, and it didn't even get great physical options either. But then in the newer gens, this thing is an absolute monster. Look at its move pool. Great offensive options like Knockoff, Night Slash, Swords Dance, Crab Hammer, let alone its coverage with TMs, oh, and Dragon Dance. It couldn't be more different between the generations, but the fact that it's only actually bad in one of the 4 regions it's in will save it from dropping too far. 4 stars in battle prowess. And its availability will stay the same as Corphish at 3.5 stars, though its concept, I know I made this joke with Corphish, but this time I mean it, it is actually a lot more interesting. It's still obviously a crayfish, but with the nod to the Chinese name for lobster by giving it Dragon Dance, as well as adding some pretty clear military inspirations, which we'll get into in the design, but it is definitely a big step up from Corphish. 3.5 stars. And Crawdaunt looks incredible. incredible. It is indeed a very daunting crawdad. With the deep black eye sockets, the
Big, meaty claws!
and they even throw on some kaiju-esque legs for flavor. But my favorite part is the military inspiration with the star on its head and the pretty direct chevrons on its mouth, which along with Core Fish's name brings me back to my own time in the Marines, and it's all just a really nice touch. 4.5 stars, which will land Crawdon 3.875 stars overall. Baltoy is somehow unique and boring at the same time. We're rating them all, and on paper, its ground psychic typing is really cool, but sadly it just isn't very good in practice, and its stats would be really nice for a support Pokemon with decent defenses and okay speed, except Baltoy really isn't a support Pokemon. Sure, it can learn the screens, but otherwise its move pool along with its stats just leave a lot to be desired, especially with its late evolution. That'll be 2 stars in battle prowess. And you can't get it until after the 4th gym in Hoenn and Unova, and not until Ula Ula in Alola and as a version exclusive, but actually you can get it before the 1st gym in Galar, so that helps its average up to 3.5 stars. Its concept though is really cool. It's based on a spinning top toy, but with the look of a clay figurine of a spaceman from Japanese history, which is simple yet creative. Nice. 4 stars. Its design, I'll admit, I have literally zero feelings about. In no way is this a bad design, there's nothing negative about it, and yes, it does do a good job of conveying the odd little alien spinning top thing. It's fine, I suppose. Talk about a riveting review, I know, I'm sorry, but 3 stars. So that rounds out to give Baltoy the final score of 3.125 stars. Claydol feels like one of those Pokemon that feels totally mid when you use it, but then crushes you when you're against it. We're rating them all, and it's an odd one. Its defenses are both really good, and it is surprisingly fast, but its offenses aren't great, even though it destroys me with Earthquake every time in Tate and Lysa's battle. But yeah, Ground Psyching is a fun typing, but also just not great. It does have a diverse move pool though, with some nice offensive options, some setup moves, and a wide array of coverage. It's surprisingly decent, but it's not all that great. 3.5 stars. And its availability will stay the same as Baltoy, also at 3.5 stars. Then Claydol is similarly based on the Spaceman figurines or clay dolls from early Japanese history, as well as spinning top toys. Once again, 4 stars. Though the main difference between it and Baltoy is that Claydol's design really takes things to the next level. Firstly, I love the color scheme with the dark black contrasting with the white and red. Then the many rings and eyes almost feel like a callback to biblical angels' true appearances, but also somehow looking like it belongs on some ancient culture shrine. I don't know what it is about Claydol specifically, but this is a fantastic looking Pokemon. 5 stars, which will land Claydol a nice even 4 stars overall. I think fossils are the coolest subset of Pokemon. We're rating them all, and Lileep is a weird little guy for sure, but its stats are surprisingly decent. It's fairly bulky and has okay special attack. Rock Grass is a really unique typing that I actually like a lot, but holy crap, this thing's move pool in Gen 3 is atrocious. But hilariously, it's really good in the remakes, yet sadly by the time it evolves at level 40, it's just gonna be severely outclassed. 2 stars in battle prowess. You can only revive the root fossil in 2 regions, first of which is Hoenn, where you can't get it until after the 4th gym, but you have to make the binary choice, and in Alola, you can buy it on Akala, but as a version exclusive, so that will just barely average out to 3.5 stars. And the concept of reviving a Pokemon as a whole is amazing and so interesting. Frankly, I wish we got more, but Lileep is specifically based on extinct sea lilies, which interestingly enough are more like coral, so an animal, which makes it humorous that they gave this thing the grass type, but still, great concept. 4 stars. Its design does a great job of being a creepy little ancient sea creature that definitely appears like a plant, but isn't. Still to this day, I can't convince my brain that the false eyes are false eyes. This is one of those Pokemon that may not look amazing or cool or cute, but it somehow just works. 3.5 stars, so that will land Lileep the final score of 3.25 stars overall. Cradily is definitely the most interesting fossil Pokemon until we got those abominations in Gen 8. We're rating them all, and I'll admit I've never actually used one, but its stats are really akin to like a slower Altaria, which is cool. It's bulky and has decent attacks. Its rock grass typing is pretty good, and its move pool is also pretty solid. It may not get Dragon Dance like Altaria, but it is good with some coverage, some setup, and quite a few great TM options. 3.5 stars in battle prowess. Fossil's availability as a whole is weird. You have to factor in not only when you can revive the fossil, but also what level it revives at. But unlike the Gen 1 options, which were all over the place, you get the Hoenn fossils at a set level 20, which that 20 level grind up to level 40 is pretty rough, so that will dock its availability down to 3 stars. And as we went over with Lileep, fossils as a whole are really cool, and Cradily is based off of a handful of different extinct predatory marine animals, not including any plants, which is funny since it's a grass type, but still. 4 stars. Though I do think that Credilli's design is both really unique and really cool. It's such an odd, almost alien-looking creature, which is perfect for some extinct deep-sea coral-like animal. The false eyes look incredible along with the sea anemone frilly things. It even looks fairly intimidating. I think this is actually a fantastic design. 4.5 stars, which will give Credilli the final score of 3.875 stars overall. I always preferred Anorith over Lileep as a kid, for some reason. We're rating them all, and maybe that's just because Bug is my favorite type, and Rock Bug is a really cool and unique mix. Though this little guy hits surprisingly hard. It has 95 attack and 75 speed, which is pretty awesome, but its lack of defenses is really going to start to be a problem by the time it finally evolves level 40. I don't know what the older game's obsession with awful movesets was, but in Gen 6, its move pool was pretty awesome. Though it's still pretty bad in battle, but it's a bit better than Lileep, 2.5 stars. And as for availability, as we went over with Lileep, you can only revive it before the post-game in 2 regions, HOENN and Alola, so it does just barely average out to 3.5 stars. Though its concept I feel isn't quite as interesting. Don't get me wrong, I still just think the whole idea of fossil Pokemon being revived is amazing, but where Lileep and Credilli went pretty unique and creative, and I know you guys hate it when I say this, but Anorith is pretty much just literally an Anomalocaris.
3 stars.
You wanna see me do it again?
Its design is also a pretty literal translation of that creature, but I do think that it still looks good and Pokemon-y enough. The armor plating is really cool and plays into the forced rock type of early fossil Pokemon, and even though I preferred it as a kid, it's really not all that special. 2.5 stars, which will end up giving Anorith 2.875 stars overall. Armaldo is a huge step up from Anorith. We're rating them all, and it's actually kind of a monster in battle. Rock Bug is a really cool typing with not many weaknesses, and this thing has 120 attack, 100 defense, and solid special defense and HP. Sadly, back in Gen 3, they still just hated bug types and didn't give it any good moves, barring some TMs, but in the newer games, it's so awesome with plenty of offensive options as well as setup moves like Swords Dance and Rock Polish. Really underrated. 4 stars. Its availability will start at 3.5 like the other HOENN fossils, but similarly to Credilli, having to grind it up 20 or more levels to level 40 will drop it down to 3 stars. And its concept is actually pretty interesting. It still has the base inspiration drawing from the Anomalocaris, but now it seems to maybe even lean heavier towards battle armored dinosaurs or even kaiju aspects. So this may be my inner child speaking, but that's just outright cooler. 4 stars. I'll admit I've always had a soft spot for its design. I just think it's so cool. I like how the upper body is just kind of a bigger Anorith, but then the lower body opens up and extends into dinosaur legs and tail, which just makes it look so much more powerful and to me makes it feel more like a Pokemon, not just an anime style animal. 4 stars. So it actually gets the same final score as Credilli with a solid 3.75 stars overall. Feebas is HOENN's poor attempt at the Magikarp to Gyarados arc. We're rating them all, and I don't think we need to waste any time on its battle prowess. This is one of the worst Pokemon of all time in 4 out of the 6 stats, and it also has effectively 0 moves. That's 0 stars in battle prowess. Though availability is oddly the most interesting part of this one. If you look at just purely when you can get it, which is pretty much mid-game everywhere but Alola, it would average out to 3 stars. However, as I'm sure most of you know, it's not that simple with Feebas. In both HOENN and Sinnoh, you can only catch it on a few specific random tiles that also change every day. I did a poll for this issue and the majority of you voted for this thing to get a 1-star availability total, but that's a bit much. And a lot of you had the counter argument that I've never let encounter rate affect the availability before, and while yes, that is true, this, along with Munchlax, are very extreme examples that deserve a harsh penalty for being so astronomically difficult to find. I think that minus 1.5 stars is fair, so after the penalty to both Gens 3 and 4 specifically, it brings down the average to 2.5 stars, which isn't even as bad as some Johto Pokemon. And its concept is also just disappointingly weak. Where Magikarp had the legendary story of the carp jumping over the dragon gate and becoming a dragon, Feebas is just an ugly fish. It may be loosely based on the Ugly Duckling story, but Feebas isn't some shunned ugly outcast, it's just a kind of ugly fish that lives in clusters. Sadly, that's just a weak concept. 2 stars. And as for its design, I know a lot of you are ready to type your angry comments. It's supposed to be ugly, and it is. That should be 5 stars. First of all, no. And also, it isn't even that ugly. This is just an actual fish. Granted, it's a boring and plain one, but still. If they wanted it to be ugly, they didn't do much for it in that way. This monstrosity fits that bill much better. So not only does it not really fulfill its concept, but it's also just a literal boring fish. I don't see how this is good or appealing at all, and a lot of you agree, surprisingly. I'm sorry, but that's 1 star. So that gives Feebas the series low 1.375 stars overall, and I don't know if that'll ever be beat. Is Milotic really worth that 0 to hero title? We're rating them all, and is it Milotic? Melodic? I don't know, but Feebas got the worst score of any Pokemon so far, so let's see how far Milotic can rise. In battle, this thing is incredible, with awesome special defense and attack, great HP, and even some decent speed and defense. Then both of its abilities are amazing. Marvel Scale prior to Gen 6 makes the already thick Milotic even bulkier, then post post-Gen 6, competitive is just outright broken. And its move pool is also great, with plenty of offensive options along with some coverage, some utility, and even some recovery to boot. I think that's enough to get 5 stars with battle prowess. Its availability is so complicated. I went over it at length in Feebas's video, but long story short, in Gen 3 and 4, Feebas was outrageously ridiculous to find, but was fairly available otherwise, so it ended up getting 2.5 stars. However, Milotic adds yet another wrinkle in both HOENN and Sinnoh. You evolve it into Milotic by maxing out its beauty stat, which involves a ridiculous amount of berries and Pokeblocks, and I'll admit, I don't fully understand it. Then in the newer regions, you can just instead evolve it by trading while it holds the Prism scale. So I could probably nitpick and drag this thing's score even further, but I think just giving it the trade evo penalty is fair, so that will still drop its availability down to 2 stars. And as for its concept, I think that it actually would have been much better off without Feebas at all. The only thing that vaguely connects them is the ugly duckling story, but that's pretty thin. Feebas isn't some shunned ugly outcast, it's just a kind of ugly fish that lives in clusters. Other than that, I think Milotic would have been a better standalone Pokemon, kind of like Lapras. I think that it being based on a mix of a sea serpent and a mermaid while also having some very clear feminine or beauty style inspirations is really cool on its own, 4 stars. But its design, I mean, come on, unlike Feebas, Milotic absolutely pulls off what it's supposed to be. It is absolutely the picture of beauty in Pokemon, even though that feels really weird to say. It's a pretty vibrant, colorful, maybe even majestic looking sea serpent. I think this has to be one of the best designed Pokemon, arguably ever, even if most of us have never been able to use it, 5 stars. So that all adds up to give Milotic a really solid 4 stars overall, but not quite in the HOENN top 5. Castform is actually a pretty cool gimmick Pokemon. We're rating them all, and we really can't start anywhere other than its ability. Forecast changes its form and its type depending on the weather. You've got sun, rain, hail, sandstorm. Though fire and water are just better than ice, and its move pool is pretty fun and has some great coverage options, but just having 70 in every stat is gonna really prevent it from being very good, 2.5 stars. And as for availability, you can get it one way or another before the 6th gym in both HOENN and Unova, and as early as Lush Jungle and Alola, so that averages out to 3.5 stars. So sure, Castform may be mid in most ways, but its concept is actually amazing. It's based on the Japanese weather charm dolls that I can't pronounce, as well as also being a living cloud or even a water molecule that shows the changes in the weather, which is just such a cohesive and creative idea, 5 stars. Its design is a weird one to judge since there is multiple forms. The base form is supposed to look like a little molecule, but we'll just say it doesn't come off that way. I mean, come on guys, this is pretty awful. And I think both the sun and rain forms look really good actually. They changed just enough to demonstrate the idea, and they look pretty good as cutesy little weather report. The hail form is fine, hell yeah I guess, but it's a crime we didn't get sandstorm. So I think it feels more like a 3-star design overall, which will give Castform the final score of 3.5 stars overall. Kecleon is such a confusing Pokemon. We're rating them all, and I mean, just look at this thing's stat spread. It has good attack, great special defense, and otherwise is awful. But obviously you can't talk about Kecleon without its ability Color Change, which changes its typing to whatever move it was just hit by. Which, to be fair, that's a pretty cool ability and can be very useful defensively. Fittingly, it does get a crazy amount of coverage even back in Gen 3 and has a pretty solid move pool later on. It can be really nice against special attackers, but otherwise it's just a fun gimmick. 2.5 stars in battle prowess. It is of course most known for being available via a static encounter before the 6th gym in HOENN, but you can get it surprisingly early in both Kalos and Alola, so that averages out to 4 stars. And the idea of Kecleon, the way they spin the color changing aspects of the chameleons into the ability that changes types instead of color, is a really creative idea that makes perfect sense in a world like Pokemon. I think this is a really cool gimmick idea for a Pokemon, 4 stars. But its design, man, I really never thought this would become like my catchphrase, but this is literally just a chameleon. Do I need to get some merch for that? But for real, this is just an anime chameleon. Sure, chameleons look cool, but I don't understand what's supposed to be the positive or standout feature for this design. I guess 2 stars. So that does give Kecleon the final score of 3.125 stars overall. I never realized how shockingly awful Shuppet is. We're rating them all, and oh look, it's yet another slow, frail HOENN mixed attacker. I don't get it, guys. Yeah, sure, 75 attack is great and 63 special attack is good, but its other stats are awful. Don't even get me started on how Ghost was physical back in the day and Dark was special. It made no sense. But this is once again yet another Pokemon with a useless move pool in Gen 3. At least it got Will-O-Wisp, I guess. And then it's actually not even that much better in the new gens outside of getting Shadow Sneak. All of that on top of the fact that it doesn't even evolve until level 37. I'm genuinely shocked at how awful this thing is. 1.5 stars in battle prowess. And it's not even available until after the 6th gym in HOENN, Victory Road in Unova, and right before the 8th gym in Kalos and on Ula Ula in Alola, which averages out to a surprisingly low 2 2 stars. Though Shuppet is based on these really cool Japanese paper dolls that sound familiar, but also it's just a pretty stereotypical sheet pulled over your head Halloween costume ghost, which is simple and either really funny or just really boring. Ghost Pokemon usually have amazing concepts, but this one is weak. 2.5 stars. And its design may be simple, but I don't think that it's bad. It's actually a fairly cute little thing, all things considered. The eyes are really unique and pretty cool looking, though the overall picture is either a pretty boring plain ghost or something else entirely, depending on who you ask. Even though I think it's kinda cute, it's definitely not great. 2.5 stars, which means Shuppet is going to be haunted by its 2.125 stars overall and its spot on the bottom 5. Ghost-type Pokemon might have the best designs as a whole. We're rating them all, and in battle, Banette isn't bad, but it's not great. 115 attack is good, but its other stats are just pretty bad. Pure Ghost is a solid typing, and in Gen 3, its move pool was really lackluster for a fully evolved Pokemon, and it didn't have the stats to take advantage of the support moves. Though it does improve greatly in the newer gens with moves like Knock Off, Shadow Sneak, Sucker Punch, and Shadow Claw. It's sadly just too slow and frail to be reliable. 3 stars. As for its availability, I would normally say that not evolving until level 37 warrants a knock to its score, but since in so many games you either just can't even find a Shuppet before finding a Banette, or it's late game already anyway, so it'll stay 2 stars. Though where Shuppet's concept was sadly just empty, Banette's is incredible. It's a doll that becomes a Pokemon over its grudge from being thrown in the trash, and now it wanders around searching for the children who abandoned them and sticks pins into itself to create curses. Honestly makes me question why Shuppet exists in the first place, but that's not even mentioning all of the references to the Western and Japanese folklore. This just takes a huge step up. That's 5 stars. And its design does a fantastic job of portraying that. It really nails the creepy possessed doll look, and the zipper mouth is iconic. I do think that the Gens 4 and 5 sprites looked by far the best for it. Not that it looks bad in 3D, it just loses some of that menacing feel to it. It does have a great shiny though. This is a really good design. 4 stars, which gives it a much better score than Shuppet with 3.5 stars overall. Banette has one of the best looking Mega Evolutions. We're rating them all, and it's also pretty awesome in battle. Its prankster ability is amazing with moves like Will-O-Wisp and T-Wave, and otherwise its move pool is pretty great with Knock Off, Sucker Punch, Shadow Sneak, and more, especially with its whopping 165 base attack. However, its other stats are pretty lackluster. It really doesn't have the speed or bulk to be truly dominant, but it's still great. 4.5 stars in battle prowess. Now sadly, Banette's availability was already awful at 2 stars, but its Mega is compared to other Megas, and you can get its stone around the same time you get most of them at about the 6th gym or so, and sadly that's just not enough to bump it up or down. 2 stars. Though its concept is once again incredible. Banette's story of being a vengeful, discarded children's doll that holds back its power with its zipper was already great. Then upon Mega Evolution, that power becomes so great that it begins spilling out and even curses its own trainer. Such an awesome Mega Evolution. 5 stars. And its design, as I said at the start, is absolutely incredible. Having whatever its inner demons are spilling out from its zippers, doubling as both mouths and or hands and feet, along with the same menace that Banette already portrayed. Ghost types as a whole usually have amazing designs, and this is no exception. Great Ghost, great Mega, 5 stars, which will unleash Mega Banette up to 4.125 stars overall. Duskull is such an amazing first stage Ghost type. We're rating them all, and in battle it's not gonna wow you with offense, but holy crap, 90 in both defenses is nuts. Granted, its HP is awful though, so I don't know how great it really is, but it does have 3 immunities thanks to its ability to levitate. And once again, it might not do much offensively, but bulky support is never a bad thing to have, and it's of course going to be even better in Gen 6 with earlier Will-O-Wisp and Hex. But having to deal with those stats until level 37 is pretty brutal, and it'll be outclassed. 2.5 stars in battle prowess. You sadly can't get it until after the 6th gym in HOENN, but you can before the 4th in both Platinum and in Galar, so that will average out to a decent 3.5 stars. And at first glance, it appears to be based on more or less just a mix of the undead, some skeletons, some ghosts, sure, but it also seems to draw from the boogeyman, which may seem loose, but even its dex entries talk about how it spirits away misbehaving children, and it's also pretty clearly based on the Hitatsume yokai creatures. Easy 5 stars. And its design is once again incredible. It's just the perfect stylized little first stage ghost Pokemon. It's as creepy as can be with the ghostly body, the single floating red eye, and the skull mask, yet it still manages to land that kind of cute feeling for a first stage Pokemon, with the big round eyes too big for its body and the 3 goofy teeth. I don't think this is particularly close, that's easily 5 stars, which will land Duskull the final score of 4 4 stars overall. Dusclops is easily the worst looking in its incredible evolution line. We're rating them all, and in battle, however, this thing is a monster. 130 in both defenses is insane, though I'll admit I don't fully understand how bad that HP stat is alongside those defenses, and sadly I don't count held items in this series, so sorry Eviolite. But even without it, Dusclops gets some great support moves and actually has an insane amount of coverage. Defensive Pokemon are tough to judge in this fashion, but this is a really good one. 4 stars in battle prowess. And its availability will stay the same as Duskull at 3.5 stars, though its concept seems to deviate from Duskull a bit. It seems to lean heavier into the Hitatsume theme, as this is definitely a humanoid Cyclops-like ghost, though it does sadly seem to lose the whole boogeyman spiriting people away idea, which did add a lot of character to Duskull. 4 stars. Its design, though, as I said at the start, is at least in my opinion clearly the worst in its line. Duskull is the perfect mix of creepy and oddly cute, then Dusknoir nails the imposing, powerful ghost creature thing, and Dusclops is weird. I understand why it went more in the mummy direction, cool idea that ties into the concept well, but it just looks bad. And Duskull's cute little teeth are now huge floppy things. It's still a cool looking Pokemon, but sadly I think this is a massive downgrade. 3 stars. So that means Dusclops' final score is 3.625 stars overall. Tropius might just be my favorite bad Pokemon.
We're rating them all, and today we're looking at Tropius, the little dinosaur that could. I think Tropius is one of the coolest Pokemon we've ever gotten. It's just a shame we can't say the same about his battle prowess. Tropius is cursed with the Generation 3 trend of trying to make him a mixed attacker. This would be fine considering his grass flying typing, but when Gust is his only flying move in Generation 3, it's entirely pointless. On top of that, his attack and special attack aren't even good, his speed, abysmal, and his defense and special defense are average at best, and ultimately has 2 of the worst defensive typings in the game.
To be fair, its move pool does get much better in the newer games, and it's crazy how easy you could fix this Pokemon just by giving it thick fat like so many ROM hacks do. And I guess Chlorophyll does patch up the speed issue, but still, this is 3 stars at best. And sadly, it isn't very available either. It's mid-game in both Hoenn and Sinnoh, but really late game in Alola, so that will average out to 2.5 stars. Though its concept may be pretty simple, I love it. It's a sauropod dinosaur that has become part of the tropical forest, and that's pretty awesome. It also may have some link to this Congo River legend also, but still, 4 stars. And I just love its design so much. As I said at the start, this is probably my favorite Pokemon that I can't stand using. First off, dinosaurs are just really cool, then you throw on giant leaf wings and a banana beard. In 2D, it looked absolutely incredible and majestic, but it is a shame that they gave it that stupid gliding 3D animation that makes so many flyers look bland. And it even manages to make the helmet look dumb. But regardless, this is an amazing looking Pokemon, and it needs some love in the games. 4.5 stars. So thankfully, Tropius still does get 3.5 stars overall. Is Chimecho actually good? We're rating them all, and I promise that isn't just rage bait. I had no idea this thing had 95 special attack and is actually pretty bulky. Oh, it's because it was just worse until it got buffed until Gen 7. That makes more sense. It does get a pretty good amount of offensive options though, and quite a bit of support. Its moveset is obviously much worse back in Gen 3, but I feel like you guys are probably pretty used to that sentence by now. Even pre-buffs, I'm pleasantly surprised. 3 stars in battle prowess. And as for availability, you can't get it until after the 6th gym in Hoenn, but before the 3rd in X and Y, and thanks to Chingling before the 2nd in Sinnoh. So that will average out to a surprising 4 stars. With Chimecho being the wind chime Pokemon, it shouldn't be a surprise what it's based on, but it does go a little bit deeper. It seems to draw more inspiration from specific chimes that Shinto shrines used to repel spirits. 3.5 stars. Its design is then super simple, yet really charming and pretty adorable. I like the touch of using the colors from the actual shrine maidens, but other than that, it's fine, I suppose. It's pretty good, but that's about it. 3.5 stars, which will land Chimecho, you guessed it, 3.5 stars overall. So yeah, it's mid, but that might be exceeding expectation. Absol is one of the most iconic and edgy Pokemon ever. I just wish it was better. We're rating them all, and yeah, sadly, it's just not as good as you would expect, considering it has a whopping 130 attack. But otherwise, it's fairly frail and not that fast. Yet that wasn't even its biggest problem back in Gen 3. Before the physical special split, all dark moves being special was heartbreaking in the worst way, having to rely on non-stab moves. But it just takes some time, everything will be just fine in the newer gens where its move pool is pretty insane actually, with Swords Dance fairly early and with plenty of offensive options to take advantage of its super luck ability. 4 stars in battle prowess. But its availability isn't great, you can't get it until mid to late game in most regions other than in Kalos, where you can actually get it before the 2nd gym, so that will save its average and give it 3 stars. Oh, but its concept is just incredible, even just its dex entries tell an amazing story. The people of the world viewed it as the disaster Pokemon because it would appear just before natural disasters, But really, these people should know that it's much better to face these kinds of things with some poise and rationality and realize that this sweet boy was just trying to warn them and keep them safe. But because of this, he walks a lonely street. And all of that doesn't even dip into the book of real-world mythological and historical references Absol is based off of. If I could give it higher than 5 stars here, I would. 5 stars. And its design is also just absolutely incredible. The scythe on its head both represents the disaster or bringer of doom thing, and also the yin and yang. Its face being even somewhat human-like fits into the Sphinx idea. The asymmetry is super unique and just looks cool. The contrasting color scheme looks great. I mean, I don't need to waste your time on the polls. You're already the voice inside my head. This is easily a 5-star design, which will land Absol the final score of 4.25 stars overall. Absol's Mega Evolution fixes every problem it has and somehow makes it even cooler. We're rating them all, and I'll try to make less 2000s music references this time, but in battle, this thing is just ridiculous. 150 attack, then 115 in both speed and the special attack, and I don't even mind that it's kind of frail. Magic Bounce is also an amazing ability, even if it is a bit niche, and its move pool packs a punch. Swords Dance, Night Slash, Sucker Punch, and an insane amount of coverage. Easily 5 stars. Its Mega Stone is available around the 6th gym, which is typical for a Mega, so sadly that won't constitute any change for its availability. 3 stars. And Absol's concept of the misunderstood disaster Pokemon is amazing and already pretty well known, as we went over in its video. But then upon Mega Evolution, it seems to be more inspired by angels or seraphim, maybe even the infamous Angel of Death. Which, side note, back 12 years ago when Fairy type came out, I was so pissed that it wasn't the Light type to counteract with the Dark type, and Mega Absol would be the perfect fit for the first Dark and Light type Pokemon. But over the last decade, Fairy type has grown on me a lot, and yeah, that's clearly a 5-star concept even just as Dark type. Its design is just impeccable though. Yes, it goes full-blown edgelord, but it looks so good. The additional black horn coming out from the asymmetrical white hair, the jagged tail, the angel wings that hilariously aren't even for flight. This guy is just literally aura farming over here, and it's working. One of the coolest and most bad looking Pokemon, period. 5 stars, which will land Mega Absol 4.5 stars overall and a spot on the Mega's top 5. Oh, this is such a complicated Pokemon. Oh well, why not? We're rating them all, and in battle it's basically the exact same thing as Wobbuffet, of course, but just worse in every way. Now, Wobbuffet was really difficult to judge, but admittedly to my surprise, Wynot is not. I thought it got the Wobba set of reflecting moves, but no, it doesn't even get those until the level it evolves, which means this is pretty much literally useless. This makes Feebas's 0 stars look incredible. This is definitely 0 stars. And its availability is even more confusing. The only place you can just straight up catch a Wynot is on Mirage Island in the original Hoenn games, which by the way, the island's spawn chances are comparable to finding a full-on shiny Pokemon, so yeah, that's atrocious. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I totally forgot about the gift egg before the 4th gym in Hoenn, but that was pretty interesting, so I'm keeping it in. But in all of its other regions, you can just breed a Wobbuffet pretty early on, surprisingly, so that will give it a shocking 4.5 stars. Wobbuffet was based on a mix of living punching bag and one of those little wobble dolls. Wynot, though, is pretty much just literally one of those little dolls. 3 stars. And you guys were real mad that I gave Wobbuffet 2 stars in design, and I guess looking back on it, that was a bit harsh. At least it is mildly iconic, but that's entirely due to the anime. Then poor little Wynot, not only does it lose any and all recognition, but it's also just so much worse looking. The laughable punching bag is at least somewhat endearing, but this is a baby. I don't want this little baby getting pushed over and bouncing back up. That's awful. And all jokes aside, it's just weird and not appealing. 1 star. So that will land Wynot 2.125 stars overall and a spot on the bottom 5. I can't stand how every ice type is forced to be a late game Pokemon. We're rating them all, and Snorunt just gets royally screwed over by that stereotype. The ice type in general is pretty good and fun offensively, but it is arguably the worst type defensively. So then you take its equally mid stats across the board on top of that, and this would then make for a pretty interesting early game Pokemon, but no, this is like mid to late game, where it is effectively useless. And it doesn't even evolve until level 42. Its move pool is actually pretty awesome, even in Gen 3, but that just doesn't matter, sadly. 1.5 stars in battle prowess. And so now its availability is no surprise. It's mid to late game in every other region it's in, other than Galar, where it's pretty much immediately catchable, so that does bring its average up to 3 stars. Then Snorunt is pretty directly inspired by these Japanese snow spirits that take the form of a child, which are also said to be the children of another spirit of a snowy princess said to be found on the frigid peaks, which is great foreshadowing for its future evolution and is a really cool concept. 4 stars. Its design, however, is kind of difficult to judge. On one hand, it kind of fails the eye test. It isn't cool or cute or awe-inspiring or even very interesting. Though on the other hand, it does do a fantastic job of portraying the concept of a freezing little spirit child. This little guy 100% looks very cold, with the little blue eyes, the shivering teeth, how it's grabbing at its coat. This is really well done, even if it doesn't look very good. 3.5 stars, which will land Snorunt the final score of 3 stars overall. Glalie is one of the more forgettable Hoenn Pokemon, but we're rating them all, and it's fairly decent in battle. It's not gonna wow you, but it's fairly pretty bulky, fast, and strong. 80s and everything isn't bad at all, but it's not that good either. It being pure ice type is probably its bigger downfall for sure. Its move pool is actually pretty good though, especially compared to most of Gen 3, and it of course gets much better later on. Glalie is surprisingly not bad. 3 stars in battle prowess. Its availability starts off with the 3 stars of Snorunt, but we have to look at its evolution level. 42 is ridiculously late to drag the weakling Snorunt. Sure, when you catch Snorunt, it's only gonna be like 20 levels away in most games, other than Galar, where it's way worse. But dragging that little blob is gonna be such a grind, and at that point Glalie's availability has to drop down to 2.5 stars. However, where Snorunt was based on these really interesting snowy Japanese spirits, Glalie seems to abandon all of that entirely and leaves it to Frostlass to pick up the slack. Then it instead seems to be an ice creature based on facial expressions or different masks. Sadly, it's just nowhere near as interesting as the rest of its line. 2.5 stars. I do think that it looks pretty cool though, even if a bit weird. The color scheme is incredible, and the hockey mask-esque ice armor and giant horns do make it look interesting, albeit a bit goofy. Design is subjective, sure, but I agree with this comment. You guys voting 5 stars on this thing is just insane. 3 stars in design. So that will give Glalie 2.75 stars overall. Glalie has a mega evolution, in case you forgot. We're rating them all, and it's actually a pretty cool one. It may not be game-breaking like most megas, but it is still really awesome. 120 in both attacks, 100 speed, and 80s for bulk. If this wasn't a mega, we'd be talking about how amazing it is, especially with its ability Refrigerate, giving it a boost to moves like Hyper Beam and Return, along with its otherwise pretty solid move pool. Too bad it's just a pure ice type with all of those weaknesses, which along with not having any form of setup moves, definitely holds it back. 4 stars in battle prowess. Its availability will once again be 2.5 stars like Glalie, since you get the Glalatite before the 7th gym, which is pretty average for a mega. My main issue with Glalie is that it just abandons the whole concept behind Snorunt and eventually Frostlass to just become a face with ice armor. And sadly, Mega Glalie doesn't do anything to fix that. It just gets split apart by the mega energy, and it probably should have been steel type due to how metal these dex entries are. But sadly, once again, it's a letdown in the evolution line. 2.5 stars. I do think that ended up looking pretty cool though. I love the color scheme, and my dude even grew a beard. 5 stars, no notes. Okay, I'm just kidding. It actually does manage to become a pretty terrifying creature. Imagine this thing jumping out at you in a blizzard, but I don't think that this is some incredible design or anything. It still has the same goofiness issue of Glalie, but it is cooler. 3.5 stars, which will land Mega Glalie 3.125 stars and a spot on the Mega's bottom 5. I think Spheo might just be a fan favorite, but I don't know, I can't tell. We're rating them all, but our little boy here would be a lot better off if it wasn't for Game Freak's obsession over ice types being late game. Its stats aren't even that bad. It's pretty bulky and can hit decently hard, but not for when you would be using it. Even with its actually pretty solid move pool, if you use it at all before it evolves, it's gonna be really rough. Which is too bad, because especially with its ability, this would be a really compelling early game Pokemon. 2 stars in battle prowess. Now, if you had a full tactical team of 6 of them though, but its availability, like most ice types, is disappointing. You can't get it until right before the 7th gym in both Hoenn and Unova, and that's actually it, not including post-game, DLC, or island scan shenanigans. So sadly, that's 2.5 stars in availability. And wait, you're telling me this is a water ice type Pokemon based off of an almost literally named after a seal?
I've seen this one, this is a classic.
Though I do think that it being the ball that seals balance on their nose, along with it being the clap Pokemon, does make it at least more interesting than Seal, even if that hurts my Gen 1 heart. 3 stars. However, its design, I think, is genuinely among the best. Its adorable little eyes, along with the tusks underneath, the cute little smirk, all on the almost perfect little round boy beach ball seal. I would even argue this is one of the best 3D models. The way it just flaps its little flippers happily without a care in the world. I don't know how you could not love Spheo. This is absolutely peak cute Pokemon design. 5 stars. Which, hey, at least that rounds its final score up to 3.125 stars overall. Celio is, I have mixed feelings. We're rating them all, and for starters, it's fairly decent in battle. 75 special attack isn't bad at all, and its HP helps a lot with how bulky it is, especially paired with, well, either of its abilities actually. And its move pool in Gen 3 is actually really good, which isn't something we can say often. It's gonna be a bit outclassed by the time it hits level 44, but it's not bad by any means. 3 stars in battle prowess. Though its availability will stay the same 2.5 stars of Spheal, since Game Freak hates ice types, and its concept I'm kind of torn on, because at face value it's just a mix of seal, walrus, and sea lions, where Spheal was at least actually a seal ball. But that does seem to tie into Celio as well, since most of its dex entries talk about how it balances Spheals on its nose, which is cute and a nice nod to circus tricks, 3 stars. But its design is where it starts to lose me. It just has a major case of middle evolution syndrome and definitely seems like it was the last one in the line to be designed, specifically to bridge the gap. It's nowhere near as cute as Spheal, though it does still have the cute eyes and general squishiness, nor is it nearly as imposing as Walrein. Instead, it gets a funny mustache. All jokes aside, it does manage to connect the two really well. It's a nice halfway point, it just isn't nearly as appealing as either, 3 stars. So that will land Celio the final score of 2.875 stars overall. You can't think about Hoenn without thinking of Walrein. We're rating them all, and honestly it reminds me of almost the Gen 1 Pokemon with its stat spread. It's super balanced across the board, but it is really bulky, and 95 special attack is nothing to scoff at, so it works. Ice Water is a great type combination, both offensively and defensively, especially with its 2 abilities helping it become even bulkier. So along with its actually pretty solid move pool even back in Gen 3, I think Walrein is really underrated, 4 stars in battle prowess. Its availability though, I could see taking a bit of a hit for being a later evolution, but Celio is fine and isn't some horrible Pokemon you have to drag along until then, so it will just stay 2.5 stars. And where Spheal and Celio at least had the whole ball and circus trick thing going for it to make it more interesting, Walrein is just a literal walrus. Even all of its dex entries just describe a walrus, which I guess at least makes sense for a water-ice type, but I don't know how that's more than 2 stars for concept. And its design is pretty good. It is a fairly imposing big walrus with the giant tusks and the rings that could be seen as battle scars. I do like that the hair seems to be going for the crashing waves look, which is pretty cool. I think it looks a bit better than Celio, but just falls well short of Spheal. Sadly, I think it's only so memorable because of its E4 spot. That's a 3.5 star design, which means Walrein's final score is an even 3 stars overall. Clamperl and its whole evolution line are really weird and give us a lot to unpack. We're rating them all, and in battle, little Clamperl is surprisingly not as bad as I thought. 85 defense is nice, and 74 special attack is fine. Too bad its speed and HP really hold it back. I'll be honest, I had no idea this thing didn't learn any new moves at all. That's hilarious. But you can still give it the only 2 moves a water type ever really needs anyway, so it's fine. However, when you would be using it varies pretty drastically between the regions, so it is hard to judge, but I don't think it can get over 2.5 stars in battle prowess. And to further explain the when part, you can't get it in Hoenn until after the 7th gym, but then before the 4th in Kalos and as early as like the 2nd trial in Alola, so that will help bring its availability up to 3.5 stars. Though Clamperl's concept is deceiving, it appears to just be a clam, or maybe more specifically the pearl, but I don't think that tells the full story. Now I'll admit, neither the Pokedex entries or Bulbapedia really references this much at all, but considering it evolves into a fish, I like to think that Clamperl is actually a fish egg that was laid there in an attempt to hide it and keep it safe until it evolves, which is better, but still not amazing. 2.5 stars. Okay, and for its design, I have a bone to pick. You guys get so mad whenever I say something is forgettable, but I got so many replies like this about Clamperl, and you're right, it is an extremely forgettable Pokemon. The little fish egg thing itself is pretty cute, but there's just really nothing going on for Clamperl. It's fine, I guess, but it's a bit boring. 2.5 stars, which will give Clamperl the final score of 2.75 stars overall. I had no idea Huntail and Gorbis were this strong. We're rating them all, and I mean, look at this thing's stats, right around 100 in both attacks and in defense. That's surprisingly awesome. Sure, it has low HP and speed, but its ability Swift Swim takes care of the latter. Now yes, in Gen 3 before the physical special split, its water stab moves weren't as good, but they're still solid. And in the newer gens, with the addition of moves like Ice Fang, Sucker Punch, Coil, and some physical water moves, and this thing is way better than I thought. 4 stars in battle prowess, which does make me realize that I didn't give Walrein enough credit, so it'll get boosted to 4.5. Its availability though is awful, well at least in Hoenn, where Clamperl's was already awful, and then the only way to get Huntail is by trading while holding the Deep Sea Tooth. Though in Kalos you can fish for it after the 4th gym, even as a version exclusive, but in Alola you can just straight up fish for it as soon as you get the rod, so that averages out to 3 stars. Then Huntail seems to be based on a mix of a few different really cool deep sea hunters, but somehow isn't a dark type. It learns all these dark type moves, it lives in the deep dark ocean as an ambush predator, but nope, pure water, 2.5 stars. And its design is real goofy. To be fair, most deep sea creatures are really weird, but still. I do think that the bioluminescent tail that's shaped like Gorbis and it uses for hunting is really clever, but as a whole, its design is really nothing too special or memorable. 2.5 stars, which will land Huntail the final score of 3 stars overall. Gorbis may be a pretty pink Pokemon, but it's terrifying. We're rating them all, and its stats are a bit more min-maxed than Huntail, pushing a bit more into special attack instead of being a mixed attacker, which definitely makes it a better option pre-physical special split, but then Gorbis just pulls away a bit further in the newer gens with the addition of both Amnesia and Healing with Draining Kiss, not to mention all of the great TM options as well. Though even with all of that said, they're still both so close and so similar that Gorbis will also get 4 stars in battle prowess. Its availability though is once again hurt a lot by Hoenn, where it was already locked behind Dive, but now is a trade evolution with an item requirement. Though thankfully it does become available just to fish up in Kalos and Alola, which will help bring up its average to 3 stars. Gorbis' concept, however, is much deeper than that of Huntail. Its starts more or less the same, with being based on a few different marine animals like eels and fish, but also has some pretty clear mermaid inspirations, which you'd think, just like Huntail, who clearly should have been dark type, Gorbis should have been a fairy type. Except no, Gorbis is terrifying and arguably more deserving of the evil type than Huntail. Its dex entries really put the gore in Gorbis, which is a really nice surprise of duality. 4 stars. And I usually prefer simplistic designs, but I think Gorbis may be a bit too plain. I feel like it needs more texture or pattern and less bra. I'm sorry, but that's weird. Please don't put bras on Pokemon. They made Gorbis so much more interesting than Huntail, but its design is just nothing special, which I suppose is maybe the point with it being this unassuming deep-sea vampire thing. It's fine, I suppose, but not great. 2.5 stars, which still gives it the best score in the line with 3.375 stars overall. Relicanth is a really fascinating and surprising Pokemon. We're rating them all, and Relicanth is definitely not something that I've ever used, but holy crap, maybe I should. It has 130 defense, 100 HP, and 90 attack. Sure, its special defense and speed aren't great, but it does have Swift Swim to kind of help with speed, and in general, Water Rock is quite the double-edged sword of a typing. It's nice offensively, but not great defensively with its weaknesses. Yet sadly, back in Gen 3, its water moves were awful since they're all special attacks, and there just weren't any good rock moves either. Thankfully in the remakes that gets fixed, and it has a solid move pool with plenty of coverage, setup, and moves to take advantage of its new rock head ability. Of course, you have to be careful with matchups, but I think that's about a 3.5 stars of battle prowess. But its availability, just like the Clamperl line, is locked behind Dive and Hoenn, but this time the Super Rod and Kalos, and sadly way later in Alola. So that will average out to 2.5 stars. Though its concept is somewhat difficult to judge. On one hand, it's pretty much directly based off of the coelacanth, a fish that was thought to be extinct but is now called the living fossil. Which, you guys know how I feel about the just an animal concepts, but there is a bit of a fun fact. It has most of the same characteristics of all the other fossil Pokemon, which there's no way that's coincidence and makes it a bit cooler. 2.5 stars. But this is like literally almost just that fish. It looks almost identical, but it does have 2 distinguishable features that are fairly cool. The less obvious of the 2 being the rocky skull fitting the fossil Pokemon idea, and the more well-known of the 2 is of course the almost map-like pattern on its sides, headed off by the red X marks the spots dot as well. Considering how shockingly simple this design is, it's subtly pretty good. 3 stars, which will give Relicanth the final score of 2.875 stars overall. Hey, pretend this is a catchy intro about Luvdisc, cause I got nothing. We're rating them all, and in battle, this thing is horrible. It's fast, I guess, but that's pretty much all it has going for it. Its move pool, even in the newer games, is shockingly bland, and giving Swift Swim to a Pokemon whose only redeeming quality was already speed is hilariously cruel. I don't know how this is above 1 star in battle prowess. Though it is technically available right after the 6th gym in Hoenn, and you can actually get it shockingly early in both Kalos and Alola, so that will shoot its average up to 4 stars. Its concept, however, is surprisingly weak. I was really expecting some sort of Cupid or love-based mythology or something, but no. Even the Pokedex entries just talk about how it's basically seen as a relationship good luck charm, but not that it like actually has any power there. And otherwise, this is pretty much just a fish. Sure, a few different fish, but still, 1.5 stars. And for its design, this comment said it best. At least it's not evolution. Alomomola, who also looks rough, at least fills the whole love and romance feel, which it's not even meant to do, but we'll get there. I'm sorry, but Luvdisc is just such a boring and bland nothing burger of a fish design that just looks like a children's drawing, which we even actually agree on this time. 1 star, which will land Luvdisc the final score of 1.875 stars overall and a spot on the bottom 5. The pseudo-legendary lines of Hoenn. I can't believe we're here already. We're rating them all, and little Bagon here is actually not bad in battle for our first stage pseudo-legend. Its physical attack and defense are actually pretty solid, and its speed isn't terrible, but yeah, you need to be careful with that special defense. In Gen 3, you're really never gonna actually use it before it evolves, so we can just look at the newer gens where you would. And in those games, its moveset is fine, it's nothing special, and sadly doesn't even get anything to take advantage of its rock head ability. It is gonna be a bit rough before it finally evolves at level 30 though, 2.5 stars battle prowess. And as for availability, you can't get it in Hoenn until after you get Waterfall and the 8th badge, so that's awful, but it is saved by the fact that you can get it insanely early in both Kalos and Alola, so it actually averages out to 3.5 stars. The story of this line is pretty cool. We start off with the little Bagon, who is a dinosaur-like baby dragon with the dream of flying, and therefore hurls itself off of cliffs before it eventually achieves that dream through spontaneous cellular mutation. That's an incredibly creative and fun idea for a first stage dragon type. 5 stars. Its design is a bit tough though. I suppose it does have that look of an adorable yet angry little puppy dog who's absolutely gonna yap and bite at your ankles, and the teeny little dinosaur arms are adorable, but the weird mullet shell has always thrown me off, even if it's there for a reason. And why doesn't this thing have a tail? It would instantly look better with just a tail. But either way, it's a pretty successful design. 3.5 stars. So that will land back on the final score of 3.625 stars overall, which hey, that is quite a bit higher than the pseudos before it. Shelgon is probably the worst middle stage pseudo legend. We're rating them all, and at least that's how I've always felt. I even put it last in my pseudo legends ranking a year ago, but it has grown on me. And in battle, it's actually surprisingly decent. Its physical attack and defense are awesome, so long as you have avoid special attackers, it can be a pretty effective physical tank even into the later levels before it evolves. Except for in Gen 3, where its move pool was disrespectfully bad. And it surprisingly doesn't add too much in the newer gens, but it did at least make Dragon and Dark moves physical, which is a huge upgrade in and of itself. It would score much higher if not for Gen 3, which will keep that 3 stars in battle prowess. And its availability starts off at Bagon's 3.5 stars thanks to Kalos and Alola, but I don't think that getting to level 30 is really bad enough to deserve a penalty, so it'll stay 3.5. Though its concept is a lot better than I originally realized. All I had to do was read its dex entries, and the whole idea of the little dino Bagon leaping off of cliffs so much that it develops this shell to protect itself while it undergoes cellular metamorphosis to grow wings and become a dragon is so creative. 5 stars. Though this is a very good example of why design is such a subjective and difficult category. Does it portray the concept well? Yes, absolutely. This is very clearly some sort of cocoon-like stage of a little dragon-like creature. But does it look good? No, not even a little bit. I wish you could at least still see its mouth or something to give it some more character instead of just being a ball with legs and eyes. Just don't think that this design is very appealing at all, so I think we'll meet close to the middle and go with 3 stars, which will give Shelgon the final score of 3.625 stars overall. Salamence is one of the most popular HOENN Pokemon by far, but something about it has always bothered me. We're rating them all, and no, it's not its battle prowess. This monster is of course a pseudo-legendary Pokemon, meaning it has a 600 base stat total, mostly put into its offenses and speed, but also is respectfully bulky. Sure, dragon flying has its downsides like the quad weakness, but it doesn't really matter with those stats. And sure, in Gen 3 its dragon moves were special, but its special attack is still good, so along with its other coverage moves, it was still insane. And it of course does nothing but get exponentially better in the newer gens with physical dragon moves and more insane coverage. One of the easiest 5 stars yet. For availability, Shelgon had 3.5 stars, and while it isn't bad by any means, grinding anything to level 50 is rough. I mean, that's past the first Elite Four member levels, and I know a lot of you want the SOS encounter that is absurdly early in Alola to save it, but that's just one game, so it'll still get a small penalty down to 3 stars. Though as we went over with its first 2 stages, even just its Pokedex entry lore is incredible, with the story of Bagon leaping from cliffs in hopes of flying, then undergoing a butterfly-like metamorphosis, and finally growing wings and becoming a dragon. Which is already great even without taking in its mythological inspirations like the salamander being akin to a fire-breathing dragon. Once again, this is an easy 5 stars. Its design is where I feel the issue lies. Okay, if you just look at the head itself, that is a super cool looking dragon creature, but the wings may be unique, but both look odd and too small to carry this thing's flat, chunky body and huge tail. It just doesn't feel like it's all that cohesive of a design, yet it still ends up looking really awesome as a whole, even with those pretty clear flaws. It's still a really cool looking dragon, and dragons are awesome. 4 stars, which means Salamence lands the final score of 4.25 stars overall, not quite in the top 5, but it is the best pseudo score for now. How broken can you make a single Pokemon? We're rating them all, and Mega Salamence really does its best to push that limit. It has a 700 base stat total with 145 attack, 120 speed, and great defenses. Oh, and I almost forgot about Aerialate, giving this monster a huge power boost to both normal and flying moves, which along with the rest of its great move pool full of offensive options, coverage, and even recovery, Mega Salamence just breaks the scale. 5 stars of battle prowess. But they had to nerf it somehow. Its Mega Stone is locked not just until post-game, but until after post-game, which is a really hard one to put a score on, but I think that that's half a star at best. It might even be a 0. And I know you guys have heard me rant about how good this line's concept is for 3 videos now, but the Mega just takes it to a whole new and really brutal level. I'll just leave these dex entries here for you to read. Yeah, so that's 5 stars. Its design though, as much as I've always thought it was somewhat goofy, I think it does try to fix my main issues that I had with base Salamence. The new giant crescent moon wings still don't make much sense, but look a lot cooler, and it does seem to have slimmed out a bit to try to fix the flight issue and even becomes more of a terrifying glider or even fighter jet, along with just being a really cool dragon. 4.5 stars, which will give Mega Salamence the final score of 3.75 stars overall, which is a bit better than Mega T-Tar. Why do they have to stop giving us non-dragon pseudo-legends? They're so much more interesting. We're rating them all, and Beldum is really cool, but it's not great in battle in the very few places you can actually use it. Its only move is Takedown, which, yeah, isn't great, but its typing really just carries it. Steel Psychic has 9 resistances and an immunity, and that's after Steel type's nerf. It used to only have 2 weaknesses. Considering it evolved really early, its stats are fine, but even without moves, just its defenses on top of that insane typing is enough to warrant 2 stars of battle prowess. But this little magnet creature can't escape the big metal elephant in the room, availability. It is famously locked behind the postgame in its own home region. It's just doing its best Johto Dark-type impression. And sadly, no, we won't count the shiny event Beldum and Oras, even though that was amazing to use, but thankfully Alola comes to the rescue again. And since it is available in the mid-game there, that will bring its score up to 2 stars at least, though its concept we really can't judge without looking at the whole line, since it's pretty much just the little arm that combines over and over to eventually become this machine overlord supercomputer. But even on its own, it was fueled and weaponized by magnetism, and yeah, I'm sorry, that's easily 5 stars. And I think that its design is also also really well done. Sure, it's not all that impressive or amazing, but that's okay, it's an unevolved Pokemon. And it somehow manages to even be kind of cute in its own little way, while also being a bit eerie like it's some alien drone or spy camera reporting back to its leaders. All while just being a literal Metagross arm. It may be unassuming, but it is really well done. 4.5 stars, landing Beldum the final score of 3.375 stars overall, which is pretty good for a first stage pseudo. Metang is arguably the best middle stage pseudo legend. We're rating them all, and in battle it's actually really awesome. It has all of the great upsides that Beldum did, like it's amazing typing with its insane amount of resistances, and its stats are of course even better with amazing defense for how early you can get it and really solid attack as well. But it also solves its biggest flaw by actually learning moves now. In the only game that you can actually use it before the post game, it gets a great move pool with good offensive stab options and a way to get yet another immunity, along with plenty of TMs to take advantage of. Sure, it'll start to fall off by the time it's about to evolve, but it'll be really solid for quite a while. 4 stars in battle prowess. Its availability is of course awful though, just like Beldum who got 2 stars, though I will admit I was tempted to give Metang a boost for its early evolution, but I don't think that it's quite at that point of disproportionate strength at that point in the game to warrant that boost. 2 stars. And Metang being a new creature that is created by 2 Beldums fusing together is a really cool idea, albeit not a necessarily new one. But where this line does it better is the fact that it's consistent from base form all the way to Mega, not to mention the fact that it's part of this psychic, magnetically fueled supercomputer UFO monster. It's so awesome. 5 stars. And therefore, it is the perfect middle ground between Beldum and Metagross, while also looking really unique and cool on its own. I love that it isn't just literally 2 Beldums, but instead it forms this cool new robotic creature using the Beldums as its arms, and thankfully, unlike most middle evolutions, it completely avoids that forced, awkward middle stage syndrome. I think it's an incredibly cohesive and creative design, just not quite as good as the rest of its line. 4 stars. So that will give Metang the final score of 3.75 stars overall, which is really good for a pseudo. Metagross is one of the coolest, strongest, most popular Pokemon ever, but can it be the first pseudo legend to break into its own region's top 5? We're rating them all, and its battle prowess obviously isn't the issue here. It's incredible. Steel Psychic is an amazing type combination with an outrageous amount of resistances, and believe it or not, it used to have even less weaknesses. And where Metagross lacks in speed, it makes up for in, well, everything else. 130s in physical stats and 90s in its special stats is insane, and allows it to be really versatile with its move pool, which already is great with plenty of offensive options along with setup moves and some coverage. I don't think anyone questioned that Metagross would be 5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability though does raise some questions. Beldum and Metang only got 2 stars here, but a few of you have brought up the idea that Metagross should get a boost in its score since it's the earliest pseudo legend final evolution. So while yes, that's true and Metang can hold its own up until then, it's still pretty late game and a bit of a grind, so it's not going to get a boost, but it also won't get a penalty like the others who are past E4 levels. 2 stars. And as we went over with its prevos, the concept of Beldums coming together and fusing again and again until it becomes a Metagross is already a really cool idea on its own, but then you factor in that it's a psychically powered, magnetism-fueled supercomputer spider that is also inspired by UFOs and this specific ancient gear, and that's easily 5 stars. I've always loved its design, and clearly I'm not alone here. I think this might actually be the highest voted design in the series. And while I mean it is absolutely imposing and monstrous while maintaining that eerie mystery, I would argue this is the quintessential steel type, and one of, if not the coolest looking pseudo legend. It's at the very least in the top 3, so yeah, that's clearly a 5-star design, which means Metagross maxes out at 4.25 stars overall, just shy of the HOENN top 5, but atop the pseudos. Mega Metagross is a great example of how some megas can be polarizing. We're rating them all, and that's mostly due to how insanely broken it is. Alongside its HOENN pseudo buddies, Salamence, they are the poster childs of the argument against strong Pokemon getting megas. I mean, Mega Metagross has 145 attack, 150 defense, and great special stats and speed. So you put that on a Steel Psychic type with its abundance of resistances, and then give it the ability Tough Claws, which powers up the majority of its physical moves, of which it gets plenty, and once again, Metagross kind of just breaks the scale. 5 stars, hands down. Yet sadly, just like Salamence, they locked Metagross's Megastone deep into the post-game, and sadly, we don't even count the Beldum that already came holding it, so that is gonna wreck its availability score down to half a star. We've already went over in depth how incredible the entire Metagross line's concept is as a psychic magnetism supercomputer robot overlord, and the Mega plays further into that because apparently the Mega is formed by 1 Metagross, 1 Metang, and 2 Beldum fusing together. Who needs a Megastone, I guess? Oh, and it's pretty terrifying as well in the Dex entries, so it'll stay 5 stars. And its design keeps all of the positive aspects of Metagross, and sure, maybe it pushes them a bit far, but that's kind of the whole idea of Mega Evolution. But I do really like how this time, instead of fusing into a whole new creature when combined, if you look at its back sprite, you can see that it just throws the Beldums on like little booster packs and sticks the Metang underneath, hence the nose horn now being on the bottom. It may look a tad goofy, but that is pretty heavily outweighed by the rule of cool. I mean, look at this thing. It is an absolutely terrifying monstrosity in the best way. Really a well done Mega Evolution. 5 stars. So that will give Mega Metagross the final score of 3.875 stars overall, which doesn't get it into the Mega's top 5, but it is really good for a pseudo. I wonder what the record is for the most comments on one video. We're rating them all, and Regirock here is such an awesome Pokemon. Battle prowess, I'll be honest, I've never even once looked at this thing's stats until now, and wow, I'm shocked. The 200 defense tracks for sure, but 100 in attack and special defense? That's incredible. But sadly, Pure Rock definitely isn't the best typing out there, and its move pool is also odd. In Gen 3, it gets Superpower, Curse, and Iron defense, but otherwise its level up moves aren't great, and its TMs are oddly mixed with a lot of electric attacks. It does get much better in the remakes though, with the addition of moves like Stone Edge and Hammer Arm. This is such a hard Pokemon to judge, and I've never actually used it, but I think this is about 4 stars in battle prowess. And the reason why I, and probably most of you, never have used it is because it is famously annoyingly unavailable. In order to get Regirock and Hoenn, you have to complete arguably the most convoluted and mysterious venture in Pokemon history. First, you have to learn Braille, then you need to have both Wailord and Relicanth specifically in certain spots in your party. You need like 5 different HMs and traverse all over Hoenn before you even get a shot at catching this thing. But to be fair, we do judge legends compared to other legends, and that would give this thing a really solid score since you can technically get it before the 8th gym. But we do also make exceptions for extreme examples of difficulty, and this is probably the most extreme example there is of just being horrible to catch. I'm honestly at a loss of what to do here, so I put up a poll, and after seeing the results, I think I'll go with 1.5 stars, but I'm open to change. And at face value, Regirock seems to be a pretty direct translation of the golems from Hebrew legend, even down to the writings on their heads, which may be a tad direct, but is still really cool, though each of the Regis may also be based on different historical eras, Regirock being that of the Stone Age, which definitely gives it a boost, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem quite top tier. 4.5 stars. Though I do think that its design is really well done. The Braille writings for a face are super unique and give it that air of mystery and legend. And even just in general, this is a giant rock golem monster, which is definitely imposing, and the asymmetry along with the patchy color scheme looks so good and so unique. It may be the most basic idea for a Regi, but I would argue that it's by far the best looking, and most of you agree. Just don't give this thing a handbag. 4.5 stars, which will land Regirock the final score of 3.65 stars overall and just short of the Legends top 5. Is it Regice or Regiice? I have no idea, but we're rating them all, and the Ice Regi here is pretty awesome. It has a similar stat spread as Regirock, but this time focusing on special defense and special attack. It also similarly does not have a very good typing. Pure Ice is awful defensively, but pretty awesome offensively. The main difference between the two is that Regice here isn't crippled by the bad Gen 3 move pools, really just thanks entirely to Ice Beam, where Regirock's best stab move was Rock Tomb. They both do get much better in the remakes, of course, but I think that Ice being a bit worse, but its move pool being a bit better will result in the same score. But I do think that I was too low on Regirock. These two stats alone deserve more, so I'm giving both of them 4.5 stars now. Though availability we went over at length in Regirock's video, but to summarize, availability is just a measure of how much of the game it's available for and typically doesn't take difficulty into account at all. But the Regis are one of the most extreme examples in Pokemon and therefore got knocked down to 1.5 stars. And the Regis as a whole are pretty directly based on golems from Hebrew legend, but with Braille as the writing that gives them power, as well as each of them representing a different historical age, Regice pretty obviously representing the Ice Age, which is an awesome concept for sure. 4.5 stars. However, I don't think that the design is quite as good. I agree with you guys that Regirock has the best design of the three, I think mostly due to its asymmetry and unique patterns, but that's not to say that Regice looks bad at all, other than it's shiny. It's still a really cool and mysterious Pokemon as well that does a really great job of portraying that mysterious and powerful being idea. 4 stars, which still gives Regice a cool 3.625 stars overall. I've always seen Registeel as the leader of the original Regi trio, but I don't know if it's actually any better. We're rating them all, and in battle it's close. Being pure steel with an insane amount of resistances gives it an immediate edge over the others who are pure ice and rock, which are both pretty awful. But I think that its stats are arguably worse. It isn't as physically bulky or strong as Regirock, and isn't as specially bulky or strong as Regice. It does suffer from the lack of any good steel moves in Gen 3, even though it does get the same great TMs, but in the newer gens, getting Flash Cannon or Iron Head immediately saves it, and I think that it ends up being about the same as the others. 4.5 stars. And we've explained why the Regi's availability is awful, even compared to other legends in the last 2 videos, so we'll just move on and give it 1.5 stars. Then each of the Regis represents different eras in history, Registeel representing the Iron Age. Though with how robotic it feels, I don't know if it's quite as strong there. I feel like Future would be better, but either way, the Regis are all pretty directly made in the image of Hebrew golems, with the writing on their heads giving them power and everything, which is really cool, even if its dex entries are confusing, one saying it's alien and the rest of them all saying it was formed in the Earth's mantle. Either way though, 4.5 stars. And its design somehow both feels the most legendary of its trio, while also looking the least impressive or mysterious. I don't know how to explain, but either way, it's still a really cool design with the Braille style writing on its face really playing up the fact that it looks like a robotic iron golem. But at least its hips don't lie, 4 stars, which will give Registeel 3.625 stars overall. Latias and Latios are both such iconic legendary Pokemon, so let's see how they do as we rate them all. They're both way more similar to each other than they are different, so we'll look at them both together. And in battle, they're pretty great. Dragon Psychic is a really fun offensive typing, but it does have a surprising amount of weaknesses. I personally lean more towards using Latios just because it has the more offensive stat line, but even Latias has a very respectable 110 speed and special attack, which coupled with its diverse and powerful array of TM options as well as a great learn set including Recover and Calm Mind pushes them so close to 5 stars, yet every time that I use them, they're good, but they really aren't dominant, especially into the HOENN Elite Four. 4.5 stars in battle prowess, though I won't lie, Latios almost got the push to 5. Their availability though is really split between the two generations. Back in Gen 3, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a long time ago, but they're locked behind the post-game in their version and are practically unattainable in the other since it's locked behind an event. Though in the remakes, they are conversely just handed to you for free in the mid-game, yet once again, they are effectively a version exclusive nowadays thanks to events, so their score compared to other legends will average out to 3.5 stars. Their concept though, holy crap. Firstly, they're of course pretty clearly based off of modern jet planes, but if they were a dragon like griffin or bird, which on its own is a really cool and interesting idea for a Pokemon. So why are they psychic type and why are they the Eon Pokemon? Well, there are a handful of answers, most of which go way over my head, like the Aeons in Gnosticism, which are emanations of God, and in Valentinianism, said Aeons form male-female pairs, which seems like a lot, but it does fit perfectly. And you can even throw in some Chinese philosophy and Greek mythology in there too, and I mean, come on, that's clearly 5 stars. Their designs are both incredible for sure, but are they equal? Sure, they both hold 5 stars, but Latios pulled away by a pretty large margin, all things considered, which to be fair, Latios is much cooler looking, but Latias is of course much cuter looking. So I think that poll just shows more of my viewers' demographic than it does the design. They're so unique and full of character. 5 stars for both of them, which means they both get 4.5 stars overall, earning them a spot on Legends top 5 by kicking out Lugia. Mega Latias and Latios are some of the very few megas that are direct downgrades. We're rating them all, and said megas are even more similar than their base forms, to the point where they are genuinely indistinguishable. Though in battle, they're quite a bit different. Latias has a really solid stat spread with really crazy defenses and still a terrifying 140 special attack. Then Mega Latios just doubles down into attack with 130 and 160 respectively, while still being really bulky. Dragon Psychic is a really cool type stylistically, but I don't think that it's actually very good. It doesn't have great offensive or defensive matchups, but both Latias and Latios overcome that with their amazing move pools with strong stab options, setup, recovery, and a host of great TMs on top of it. 5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability is interesting since it is famously handed to you kind of annoyingly easily and early to the point where it's a bit ridiculous and breaks the game, but it's also a lot different per version. In its version, it's clearly 5 stars for a Mega, but in its other's version, it's locked behind quite a bit of the post-game, so I could average out those 2 scores, but I feel like that's a bit unfair, as every other Pokemon who are version exclusives just get a small penalty, so they will too. 4.5 stars. And as for their concept, as we went over last time, it is outrageously deep and convoluted, but to summarize, they're jet plane dragon bird griffin creatures with loads of religious, philosophical, and mythological inspiration and references, and therefore 5 stars. And wow, these guys could really get some of the best scores yet, except, as I said at the start, they're pretty direct and rough downgrades from their base forms and design, where Latias was the cute and playful, enigmatic legendary creature, and Latios was the stoic, intimidating older brother who also just looks absolutely iconic and incredible. Their megas don't. We can even ignore the fact that they are identical, which really sucks, but even on their own, they just don't look anywhere near as good. I'm not a fan of the new face fur, the new bulkier body, and especially how they merged their arms and wings into one rigid object. Now sure, they still have the same general look and feel to them, but even the polls were all over the place and unsure with this one, and I'm with ya. 2.5 stars. Landing both of these megas 4.25 stars overall, falling just short of both the Legends top 5 and the Megas top 5. Kyogre is a prime example of an iconic legendary Pokemon. We're rating them all, and I don't think that anyone would be surprised to hear that Kyogre is an absolute monster in battle. It of course has a 670 base stat total where it shines with incredible special stats and still really good everywhere else. Then what arguably makes it one of the best legends of all time is its ability Drizzle, which of course sets the rain and boosts its great water moves like Surf, Origin Pulse, and even Water Spout, even though you'll never see that in a playthrough. Not to mention it gives great coverage moves in setup with Calm Mind, Ice Beam, Thunder, and Thunderbolt. Easily and obviously 5 stars. Its Its availability, remember, is compared to other legends, and in that case, being able to capture it before the 8th gym is really nice, but not quite as early as some, but a lot earlier than others, though it of course does get the version exclusive penalties that will bring it down to 3.5 stars. Kyogre physically resembles an orca-like creature, but takes its inspiration from biblical references like the Battle of Leviathan and Behemoth to monstrous entities heavily tied to the sea and the land, which you then tie into its in-game lore of being capable of flooding the land, and that's an incredible concept for the Ruler of Seas legendary Pokemon. 5 stars. Then its design really does a great job of capturing that powerful being feel while still being a fairly simple and Pokemon-like creature. It takes the basic look of an orca, even down to the false eye patterns, but with its slimmer build, dual dorsal fins, and massive hand-like fins, it definitely looks like it's powerful and fast. I think the red geometric patterns are an incredible detail that makes it look more ancient and ties it into its counterpart Groudon. Incredible design, easily 5 stars, which will rise Kyogre to 4.65 stars overall and a spot on the Legends top 5. Primal Kyogre is the face of making a Pokemon just utterly broken. We're hitting them all, and in battle, this may not be about competitive, but it is worth mentioning that it absolutely dominated while it was legal, and that is not only thanks to its insane 770 base stat total with 180 special attack, but mainly due to its broken ability Primordial Sea, which not only boosts its water move's power, but also completely nullifies fire moves. So obviously it then absolutely crushes the rest of your playthrough to the point where it's just silly. Of course this is 5 stars from Battle Prowess. Its availability is a bit weird, since we compare Legends to Legends and Megas to Megas, but this is kind of both. So while Kyogre got 3.5 stars, I think getting what is basically a Mega Legendary Pokemon before the 8th gym is worthy of at least a little boost, 4 stars. Kyogre itself is more or less an orca-like creature with heavy biblical inspiration, with the battle between Behemoth and Leviathan. Kyogre, of course, representing Leviathan, but its primal form even takes it a step further.
I'm the alpha, lady! I'm the Omega, baby!
By now signifying the alpha part of the Alpha and Omega symbol of God, which further plays into the fact that this is the Pokemon God of the Sea, easily 5 stars. Kyogre's design was already near perfect, and many Megas make the failed attempt at adding to or improving on already great designs. I know this isn't technically a Mega, but Primal Kyogre does just little enough to maybe even improve it a little bit. At the very least, it doesn't make it worse. It still keeps all of the good aspects of Kyogre design, and I do think that having the geometric patterns glowing is a really cool idea, especially with giving it the alpha pattern on its fins. 5-star design, which does give Primal Kyogre 4.75 stars overall and a spot high up on the Legends top 5. The Weather Trio is probably the best legendary trio, but Groudon feels like the weakest link. We're hitting them all, and in battle, well, it's not really. It's still an absolute menace. 150 attack, 140 defense, all while being shockingly fast and well-rounded otherwise. On top of its pure ground typing, which sure, normally would put it at a disadvantage against the abundant water types of Hoenn, but thanks to its ability Drought, that's much less of an issue. Its moveset is of course nuts, even back in Gen 3 with just bulk up Earthquake and plenty of coverage, including 1-turn Solar Beams. It's obviously gonna crush the rest of your playthrough. This is once again easily 5 stars in Battle Prowess. Its availability is pretty good compared to other Legends. Being able to get it before the 8th gym is really nice, so after the version exclusive penalty, it'll still get a solid 3.5 stars. Then Groudon is more or less the dinosaur kaiju version of the biblical legend Behemoth, who faces off with Leviathan in another cataclysmic land versus sea battle. So you tie that in with all of its in-game lore of drying up the sea with its intense sunlight and heat, and that's an incredible concept for a legend. Even though it is still weird that this is a pure ground type and bro really needs to learn about home field advantage, but 5 stars. Okay, but its design is where I feel like it really differs from Kyogre. First off, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend this isn't still an amazing looking Pokemon. I know that it's an iconic and imposing design fit for a legend, and has a lot of the same pluses that Kyogre does with the geometric patterns in its armor and all that, but it has just always felt goofy to me. I don't know if it's the weird flat claw-shaped tail or the once again kind of flat and clunky hands. I'm really not sure what it is, but I know that I'm just nitpicking here, and even I wouldn't give it any less than 4 stars. So after looking at the polls, which were actually pretty interesting, it of course polled well on its own, but it even barely lost to Kyogre straight up. So I think I'll be fair and meet you guys in the middle and go with 4.5 stars, since it's for sure the worst looking in the trio, but it's still amazing, which will still give it 4.5 stars overall and a spot on the Legends top 5. Groudon may not be as good as Kyogre, but it absolutely does have the better primal form. We're hitting them all, and in battle, well, they're actually pretty even. They both just absolutely dominate anywhere and everywhere that you use them. Primal Groudon has a 770 base stat total with 180 attack, 160 defense, and even 150 special attack. It's just stupid strong. Then you throw on its game-breaking ability Desolate Land, which not only gives you strong sunlight to boost fire moves, but also completely nullifies water moves, which is insane considering with its new form, Groudon not gained the fire type, which means it would be quad weak to water, but thanks to its ability, it now has 2 immunities, 5 resistances, and only 1 weakness. Absolutely insane and obviously 5 stars. Its availability, as we went over with Primal Kyogre, is both compared to other legends, but also kind of to other megas, and in both cases, you can get it fairly early, so after the version exclusive penalty, it will get 4 stars. Then Groudon is the behemoth to Kyogre's Leviathan, and the Omega to Kyogre's Alpha. So you add multiple biblical, historical, and mythological references to an already awesome idea of a dinosaur kaiju monster with flowing lava in its body that dries up the oceans, and yeah, that's 5 stars. Its design admittedly doesn't fix any of the issues that I had with base Groudon. It's still kind of clunky and misproportioned, especially its tail and hands, but it just ramped up the cool factor all the way up to the point where those flaws are very much easy to ignore. Having the geometric patterns or cracks in the armor now be aglow with lava, including the Omega symbol on its limbs, and I would go as far to say that this is a much better primal look than Kyogre. Sure, Kyogre may look better on its own, but Groudon's primal form looks, well, more primal. 5 stars for sure, which will land Primal Groudon the final score of 4.75 stars overall and the spot on the Legends top 5. The long-awaited legend among legends is finally here, but can Rayquaza top the scores of the other 2 in its trio? We're rating them all, and Rayquaza is arguably the most popular Pokemon ever, partly due to how dominant it is in battle. It has a whopping 680 base stat total with 150 in both attacks, and is shockingly bulky for a Sky Noodle, though it is not as fast as you would expect. Its Dragon Flying typing is far from unique and of course has its weaknesses, but as a whole it's still awesome. And even back in Gen 3, its move pool was busted with D-Dance, Dragon Claw, E-Speed, Fly, Crunch, or even a number of great TM options. Then in Gen 6 it doesn't change too much, but Dragon Claw becoming physical is really nice to go with Dragon Dance, all the while getting it at level 70 in your playthrough, and that's clearly getting 5 stars in battle prowess. Though its availability isn't quite as simple as the others. In Emerald it is similarly available right before the 8th gym and even avoids the version exclusive penalty, but then in Ruby and Sapphire it is locked behind the Elite Four even if it is pretty much immediately after. Then sadly in the remakes it's towards the end of the post game, so that will hurt a bit and bring its average compared to other legends, cue your get rid of availability comments, down to 3 stars. And Rayquaza's in-game lore is obviously great, being the one to end the great feud between Groudon and Kyogre, which does tie it in further into the biblical Behemoth versus Leviathan story of those two, as there was also a third, a flying creature called Z's, who was the ruler of the skies. While physically it seems to take its design inspiration from a few places, like the typical Eastern dragons, lindworms, and most notably the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl, which is a flying serpent that creates the boundary between the land and skies. One of the coolest Pokemon ever, 5 stars for sure. And you guys may think I'm a Hoenn hater for my Groudon take, but Rayquaza is not bound to the same fate. This is one of the coolest, most majestic, most powerful, and awe-inspiring Pokemon designs, period. And it is for good reason one of the most popular Pokemon overall. Its sleek body lined with the missile-like features and interesting patterns all on a great color scheme, and one of, if not the best shinies ever. Gen 5 may be my least favorite generation, but their sprite work was just impeccable, especially for Rayquaza. This is one of the easiest 5 stars, which will soar Rayquaza's final score up to 4.5 stars overall and onto the Legends top 5, even if I wish it was higher. Mega Rayquaza is arguably the most over-the-top and insane-looking Pokemon, yet it still absolutely nails it and remains one of the best. We're rating them all, and I don't even know where to begin with battle prowess. I mean, this is the second strongest Pokemon ever in terms of base stat total and is 60 points higher than God. I mean, 180 in both attacks is absolutely insane, especially along with its really solid bulk, though it is weird that it's not faster. Its ability is another reason why Mega Ray here is just completely broken. Delta Stream not only negates whatever weather is up, but also negates all of Flying type's weaknesses, so you can say bye-bye to its quad weakness to Ice, and it still keeps the stab bonuses on its Flying type moves like, oh, you know, Dragon Ascent, which is 120 base power, and it gets Dragon Dance, E-Speed, and whatever other crazy coverage you want. I can't do higher than 5 stars in battle prowess, but this has one of the strongest arguments for that out there, 5 stars. Its availability sadly is its downfall, as even compared to other legends and other megas, it's very late game. Sure, you don't actually need Megastone for it, but it's still locked behind the post game, so that will bring its score down to 2 stars. And the concept behind Rayquaza as a whole was already incredible, with biblical ties to the story of Behemoth and Leviathan, as well as design inspiration from Eastern dragons and the Quetzalcoatl. So then you throw on the fact that it doesn't even need a Megastone, it just eats meteors to gain the energy required for Mega Evolution, and that's once again 5 stars. And as I said at the start, Mega Rayquaza really pushes the limits limits on how intense and over the top you can make a Pokemon. The geometric patterns on its body now extending from its horns, jaw, and tail to become these energy tassels add so much incredible detail, along with the additional black patterns on the face and body looking amazing against the orange and yellow and green accents. And the new sharp jaw facial crest makes it look so much more intimidating and powerful, all while taking the shape of Delta to tie into Kyogre and Groudon's Alpha and Omega. Yet they somehow do all of this without breaking said limits and making it look ridiculous. This is one of, if not the coolest looking Pokemon ever, 5 stars. So that will end up giving Mega Rayquaza 4.25 stars overall, which feels awful because that leaves it off of both the Legends top 5 and the Mega's top 5. Jirachi is the third and arguably best installment of the Mew mythical archetype. We're rating them all, and just like Mew and Celebi, Jirachi has a clean 100 in every stat across the board, which is of course really good, but not quite game-breaking. Though its typing really helps it out there, adding the Steel type along with its abundant resistances makes it much better than the other two just based off of typing alone. But it also has the best ability of the three by far. Serene Grace is incredible of course, and will help bring it up to 5 stars. Okay, I know it's been a while since we've had to deal with Mythical's availability, but if you were around for Mew, you'll remember that you guys voted not to give them special treatment and to still compare them to other legends. But just like Mew, Jirachi isn't available to capture anywhere in any game for decades, until in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl you can get it, but only if you have save data from Sword and Shield. So just like Mew, that will give it at most half a star in availability, and you can't even get this one under a truck. And its concept is admittedly a lot cooler than I realized. I thought it was more or less just a shooting star Pokemon, and while sure, that is part of it, it has a lot cooler ideas behind it. Especially with the amount of detail that comes specifically from this Japanese Star Festival, which takes place on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, and Jirachi is only awake for 7 days out of 1,000 years, which also plays perfectly into the shooting star or comet aspect, since most comets are only visible at most once or twice in a human lifetime. There are also some loose reasons as to why it's a psychic type, but we'll get there. 5 stars. Its design may be iconic and memorable, but I think that's mostly due to just how sought after it was back in my day, but I don't think it's a bad design by any means. The almost Mario Galaxy looking star head, the comet tails, and the little notes attached to it further play into the aforementioned festival, but I will be completely honest here, I literally just now, while doing research for this video, realized that Jirachi has a third eye, and a big one at that, that's in the middle of its stomach, which is interesting and makes sense for a psychic type, but wholly uncanny, and also really kind of out of nowhere and seemingly out of place on this tiny little cute chibi star child. Regardless of that, it's still a really cool design, just not quite top tier. 4 stars. So that will grant Jirachi the final score of 3.625 stars overall. Deoxys is an anomaly of a Pokemon and is going to be really difficult to judge. We're rating them all, and in battle its 4 forms are drastically different. Now I'll admit, I've never once used any of them, so we're guessing here, and to start, its base form is for sure a glass cannon, with 150 in both attacks and speed, so it will probably one-shot most things you send it in against, but due to shaking in its space boots over a sucker punch, and all of those exact same things can be said for its attack form, but turned up a notch since it's stronger but laughably squishy defensively. Then you turn to its defense form, which has a similar stat spread to Registeel. It's insanely bulky, but it's pretty average on offense, though finally its speed form, at least how I see it, looks like it is by far the best of them. It obviously has insane speed, but it otherwise is really solid across the board and can do just about anything. If I had to rank them individually, I would probably give them 4.5, 4.5, 4, and then speed would get the 5, so we'll just give Deoxys the average, which is 4.5 stars. Though its availability isn't as bad as most mythicals, thanks entirely to the Delta episode in Oras, though it is still entirely unavailable in its original games, and said Delta episode encounter is at the very end of the post-game, so even that will only give it a max of 1 star availability. And I don't think I need to convince you guys how cool its concept is. It's pretty clearly inspired by aliens or sci-fi space viruses, but it also has much more grounded inspirations, like its namesake deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, which is of course further supported by its splitting in additional forms, just like cellular division. So cool, easily 5 stars. Its design is then once again really difficult to nail down a score due to its multiple forms. I would say that its normal form is by far the best and obviously most balanced, but specifically I think the literal DNA arms may be a bit obvious, but do look really cool and show off its mutative abilities. The attack form's head and legs look awesome and aggressive as they should, but I'm not a fan of the straightened out arms or the weird torso. I think its defense form is actually the second best. Sure, it's a bit clunky or goofy, but that works perfectly for its bulky defensive form. Though conversely, its speed form also makes perfect sense, being super slim and all, but just doesn't look as good in the process. I'm really not a fan of it at all, so I'll try to find the middle ground for Deoxys and give it 4 stars. So that forms Deoxys the final score of 3.625 stars overall, which is apparently just mythical default score.